Today we've got a real treat for all you Canadians out there, the life and times of Wolverine. If you're not Canadian, you're allowed to enjoy this too, but it's not too often that Marvel heroes hail from the North, so we celebrate when we can. Well, I guess Deadpool's also technically Canadian. Thanks, Ryan Reynolds. Welcome back to Stan Lee Presents. Before we get started, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more like it. Without further ado, let's get started. Early life. James, also known as Jimmy Howlett, was born in 1832 in what would later become the Northwest Territories of Canada. In 1845, during a period of illness, James was visited by Victor while his father attended to him. In an unfortunate turn of events, Thomas Logan, the groundskeeper who was engaged in an affair with James's mother, arrived at the Howlett residence intoxicated. This led to a confrontation with James's father, John, ultimately resulting in Thomas shooting John. Upon hearing the gunfire, James investigated and discovered his father's lifeless body. In the wake of this tragic event, James's latent mutation was triggered, causing bone claws to protrude from his fists and knuckles in a manifestation of his grief-fueled vengeance. Enraged, he impaled Thomas with these newfound claws. In his final moments, Thomas shattered James's understanding of his identity by revealing himself as James's biological father. Following Thomas's death, Elizabeth, horrified by James's transformation, rejected him, branding him a freak and forcing him out. Confused and overwhelmed, James fled into the wilderness, with Victor, also a mutant, trailing behind. Victor, recognizing their shared heritage, declared them brothers and pledged to stand by each other through thick and thin, leading James to adopt the name Logan. Over the ensuing 128 years, Logan and Victor fought side by side in various wars, including the American Civil War, World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War, utilizing their mutant abilities. However, Victor's temperament grew increasingly volatile and uncontrollable over time. Meeting Ichiro Yashida. In 1945, Logan relocated from the European front to the Pacific Theater, where he was taken captive by Japanese forces before August 9th and transported to a POW camp close to Nagasaki. Amidst the Nagasaki bombing on August 9th, 1945, Logan rescues Ichiro Yashida, a youthful officer in the Imperial Japanese Army. Following the rescue, Yashida expresses his gratitude and extends a Japanese samurai sword as a gesture of thanks. Logan declines the offer but suggests Yashida keep it safe for him, assuring that he'll retrieve it at a later date. Meeting Charles and Eric. During their global quest in 1962 to recruit mutants for combat against the Hellfire Club, a youthful Charles Xavier and Eric Lensher encountered Logan at a bar. Despite their introduction, Logan promptly brushes them off before they can proceed any further. Affair with Gwen. In January 1973, Wolverine is employed as a bodyguard for a young woman, but violates protocol by engaging in a sexual relationship with her. His indiscretion is uncovered the following morning. Original timeline. X-Men: Days of Future Past. In the original timeline, Wolverine remained largely inactive during this period, steering clear of mutant matters altogether. He either remained indifferent or unaware when Mystique carried out the assassination of Bolivar Trask. During the Vietnam War in the 70s, which marked the final conflict Logan and Victor participated in, Victor perpetrated a heinous act, attempting to rape and murder a young Vietnamese village woman. When soldiers from their platoon and their commanding officer intervened, Victor's violence escalated. He killed a senior officer and viciously attacked those who tried to restrain him. Reluctantly, Logan came to his brother's aid, unleashing his claws and preparing to defend Victor, showcasing their extraordinary abilities to their fellow soldiers. Their insubordination led to a death sentence, and they faced execution by firing squad after decapitating a senior officer. However, their unparalleled regenerative powers ensured their survival, sparing them from death. Following the failed execution, Logan and Victor found themselves imprisoned, their unique healing abilities rendering conventional means of execution futile. Major William Stryker took notice of them and offered them a way out of their confinement by recruiting them for his special mutant team, Team X. Both Logan and Victor accepted the offer, joining forces with mutants like Wade Wilson, Agent Zero, Chris Bradley, Fred Dukes, and John Wraith to embark on covert missions around the globe. During one of their missions under Stryker's command, Team X is dispatched to locate and secure a mysterious meteorite, later revealed to be adamantium, from a diamond smuggling operation in Lagos, Nigeria. Upon assaulting the compound, they defeat its security forces and acquire a peculiar rock, later identified as a fragment of a meteor that had fallen from the sky. Upon reaching a remote village where the meteorite originated, Stryker and the team interrogate the locals to uncover more meteorites. Learning that the rock was indeed from a meteor, Stryker delegates Wade Wilson to interrogate further due to his language skills. Despite threats, the village chief refuses to disclose more, citing the sacredness of the meteorites. Frustrated, Stryker orders Victor to kill the chief and initiates an attack on the villagers when they remain reticent. As chaos erupts and civilians are slain, Logan intervenes, preventing the mutants from attacking another nearby village. One evening, Kayla shares with Logan a tale from her Native American heritage about a spirit named Quequachu. In the story, Quequachu, enamored with the moon, is deceived by the trickster into leaving the spirit realm for the mortal world, where he is forever separated from his beloved. Forced to gaze at the moon for all eternity, he can never reunite with her, lamenting her presence with eternal howls. While Logan is away, Kayla falls victim to an attack by Victor. Sensing Victor's involvement, Logan rushes to Kayla's deserted car but arrives too late. Understanding Victor's hand in her demise, Logan is consumed by grief and anger. As a result of his rage, he lunges at Victor in a bar that evening. After a brutal fight, Victor snaps off Logan's bone claws on his left hand and leaves. The next morning, Logan wakes up in the emergency room where Stryker happens to be present. Stryker explains to Logan that he can help him exact revenge on Victor by implementing an experimental procedure. Logan agrees, but warns him he will only do it for revenge. Before undergoing the adamantium procedure, Logan requests new dog tags bearing the name Wolverine, a nod to the tale Kayla shared with him. Stryker proceeds to encase Logan's bones in adamantium, resulting in Logan flatlining. However, he miraculously resuscitates after a brief period. Upon overhearing Stryker's directive to erase his memories for an undisclosed project, Logan escapes the facility. He flees until finding refuge in a nearby barn, where he seeks temporary shelter. The elderly couple who owns the barn extend hospitality to Logan, offering him food and shelter despite initial wariness. They even gift him a jacket belonging to their son and allow him to take their motorcycle for a ride. However, their kindness is abruptly shattered when Agent Zero arrives and murders the couple just before breakfast. As Logan escapes on the motorcycle, the barn is obliterated in a bombing. Engaging in a daring pursuit, Logan eventually confronts and destroys Zero's helicopter. Following Zero's demise, Logan sets out to locate the remaining members of Team X, finding John Wraith and Fred Dukes in Las Vegas. Driven by a desire for revenge against Victor and Stryker, Logan presses Dukes for information on Stryker's activities, resulting in a misunderstanding that escalates into a boxing match between the two. Despite Dukes' formidable size, Logan emerges victorious and interrogates him. Learning about a mutant named Remy LeBeau, also known as Gambit, Logan and Wraith travel to New Orleans to find him. They approach Gambit seeking information about Stryker's island, where mutants are held captive for Stryker's new project, Weapon 11. Gambit, misinterpreting Logan's intentions, launches an attack, prompting a brief skirmish. As Logan regains his bearings, he stumbles upon Wraith's lifeless body, with Victor looming nearby, harvesting samples of Wraith's DNA. Fueled by rage, Logan incapacitates Gambit and confronts Victor in a ferocious battle. Despite gaining the upper hand and nearly besting Victor, Gambit, who regained consciousness, intervenes from a rooftop, allowing Victor to slip away. After subduing Gambit, Logan clarifies his true motives and persuades him to guide him to the island. With Gambit's guidance, Logan arrives at the island, revealed to be 3 Mile Island. There he confronts Stryker, who unveils the truth about Deadpool and reveals that Kayla, presumed dead, is actually alive and collaborating with Stryker under duress. Victor, observing from a nearby room, watches as Stryker discloses their collaboration in manipulating mutants, including tricking Logan into consenting to the adamantium procedure by fabricating Kayla's death. She had been coerced into seducing Logan and orchestrating an incident that would lead to his involvement in the Weapon X program and the adamantium infusion. Her supposed demise merely a ruse. Deeply wounded by the betrayal, Logan equates Kayla to the trickster who deceived him. Stricken by betrayal, Logan opts to depart the facility, determined to forge a new path. Hearing Kayla's cries for help, Wolverine rushes back to her aid, ready to confront Victor once more. Engaging in another intense battle, Wolverine and Victor clash fiercely, with Wolverine ultimately gaining the advantage. As he prepares to deliver the finishing blow, Kayla intervenes, pleading with Wolverine to spare Victor and not to succumb to the darkness within, reminding him of his humanity, in contrast to Victor's taunts. Touched by her words, Wolverine chooses to spare his brother's life, knocking him unconscious instead of delivering a fatal blow. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Kayla reveals that she only cooperated with Stryker's schemes because her sister, Emma Frost, was being held captive on the island. She explains that she faked her death to aid in freeing Emma but was betrayed by Stryker, who reneged on his promise. Despite her involvement in the deception, Kayla assures Wolverine that her feelings for him were genuine and that their love was real. She discloses Stryker's true agenda, including his experimentation on mutants for the Deadpool project, and implores Wolverine to help her rescue the mutant prisoners. Moved by her sincerity and determined to right the wrongs perpetrated by Stryker, Wolverine agrees to assist her in freeing the captive mutants. Together, they embark on a mission to liberate the imprisoned mutants and put an end to Stryker's nefarious schemes. Leading the mutants to safety, Logan faces off against Weapon 11, now under Stryker's control. Instructing the others to find an alternative escape route, Logan prepares to confront the deadly adversary alone. They clash fiercely as the remaining mutants flee to safety. Empowered by a combination of mutant abilities, Weapon 11 poses a formidable threat, armed with Cyclops' optic beams, Wolverine's healing factor, John Wraith's teleportation, Chris Bradley's technopathy, and Wade Wilson's retractable arm blades. Amidst the chaos, Stryker manipulates Chris Bradley to attack Logan. Despite the onslaught, Logan puts up a valiant fight but finds himself overpowered and pinned down. Just as Weapon 11 is poised to deliver a fatal blow at Stryker's command, Victor intervenes, saving Logan from certain death. Catching Logan, Victor reveals his true intentions, expressing his desire to be the one to end Logan's life, affirming, "Nobody kills you but me." Their uneasy alliance is short-lived as both Victor and Weapon 11 plummet into the reactor below, leaving Logan to contemplate the gravity of Victor's words amidst the chaos. Eventually, Logan and Victor tag team, leading Deadpool to teleport between them back and forth, eventually stabbing him and capturing him. However, Deadpool manages to teleport to the other side of the reactor. When Deadpool fires his optic blasts at Logan and Victor, Victor attacks Deadpool as he fires his optic blasts on Logan. In addition to Deadpool firing optic blasts, Victor attacks Deadpool. While Victor jumps at Weapon 11 and is shot back, Logan falls over the edge of the reactor. When Weapon 11 blasts Victor into the ground, Logan climbs back on the reactor. Logan decapitates Weapon 11 before Deadpool can kill him by running, jumping, and slashing him through the neck. As Logan kicks him into the cooling tower of the nuclear reactor, Weapon 11 holds his neck, allowing his head to fall off as he tumbles below with the lasers of his optic blast still active. After the intense battle, Logan assists Victor out of the hole, but their exchange is tense and distant. Logan bluntly informs Victor that their relationship is irreparably damaged, despite his assistance, stating that he wants nothing to do with him anymore. In response, Victor insists that their bond as brothers can never truly be severed, emphasizing the importance of looking out for each other. Despite Victor's plea, he ultimately jumps off the side of the reactor cooling tower, leaving Logan to contemplate their fractured relationship. Logan follows the reactor as it tumbles, collapsing as he lands. A piece of the reactor falls on Logan, but Gambit breaks it up, saving him. After a brief split, Gambit and Logan split up, with Gambit helping the children and Logan caring for Kayla. In a feral rage, Logan sprints at Stryker, eventually jumping him as he carries her a few steps before Stryker shoots him in the back. In a sudden twist, while mid-leap, Logan is struck in the head by Stryker with adamantium bullets, causing him to collapse unconscious, his brain damaged and much of his long-term memory lost. As Stryker prepares to end Kayla's life, she defiantly grabs his ankle and, utilizing her power, compels him to depart before succumbing to death herself. When Logan regains consciousness, he finds himself disoriented and with no recollection of his past or the people around him, including Gambit and Kayla. However, upon discovering Kayla's lifeless body, a sense of respect prompts him to gently close her eyes. Eventually, Logan and Gambit part ways, each embarking on their own journey. In a poignant final scene, Wolverine is depicted sitting at a bar in Japan, immersed in his solitude. When the bartender questions if he's drinking to forget, Wolverine offers a cryptic response, stating that he's actually drinking to remember, hinting at his ongoing struggle to piece together his shattered memories and find solace in the fragments of his past. X-Men. Years later, Logan is seen as a cigar-smoking loner who wanders from place to place in Canada. He participates in cage fights to make money, taking advantage of the enhanced durability that his adamantium skeleton and healing factor grant him. In a gritty underground arena, a crowd roars as a caged wrestling match concludes, the victor celebrating amidst the cheers. Among the spectators stands Marie, now known as Rogue, who observes the spectacle with a mix of curiosity and admiration. As a new challenger enters the cage, anticipation fills the air. Initially, the newcomer appears to gain the upper hand, but to the audience's astonishment, the reigning champ swiftly regains his footing, launching a ferocious counterattack that swiftly dispatches his opponent. With the announcer declaring him the undefeated champion, Wolverine emerges victorious once more, his prowess in combat earning him the adulation of the crowd. Watching him in awe, Rogue witnesses the relentless spirit and indomitable strength of the man known as Wolverine. As the night wears on and the crowd dissipates, Rogue sits alone at the bar, lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, Wolverine joins her, offering a beer and casting a curious glance in her direction. As they share a quiet moment, a news report in the background highlights the impending gathering of world leaders in New York, with discussions slated to include the mutant phenomenon. Their conversation is interrupted by the wrestler from earlier, who approaches Wolverine and demands payment for his defeat, convinced that only a mutant could endure such punishment unscathed. Refusing to be intimidated, Wolverine remains steadfast, but the wrestler's demeanor quickly turns hostile as he brandishes a knife and lunges at Wolverine. Reacting swiftly to Rogue's warning cry, Wolverine springs into action, leaping from his seat and unsheathing his razor-sharp metal claws in defense. As tension escalates, the situation takes a dangerous turn when the bartender brandishes a gun, prompting Wolverine to confront him as well. After the altercation, Wolverine decides to leave the bar, and Marie, realizing Wolverine is a mutant, follows him outside. Desperate for his assistance, she seeks refuge in his truck, hiding in the trailer as he drives away. Sometime later, Wolverine notices movement in the back and pulls over to investigate. Discovering Marie hiding in the trailer, she apologizes, explaining that she really needed a ride. Initially, Wolverine is adamant about her leaving, ordering her out into the cold before attempting to continue his journey alone. However, as guilt gnaws at him, he eventually relents and allows her back into the truck, albeit reluctantly. As they journey together, Wolverine and Marie gradually develop a bond resembling that of a father and daughter. After offering her food, Marie introduces herself as Rogue, sparking a conversation about their respective lives. Despite Wolverine's initial reticence to share, Marie's curiosity persists. Sensing Marie's discomfort, Wolverine activates the heater and encourages her to warm her hands, but she recoils from his touch. Misinterpreting her reaction as fear, Wolverine is surprised when she explains her ability to harm others through skin-to-skin contact. Intrigued, Wolverine candidly admits the pain he endures when his claws emerge. Curious about their chosen aliases, Rogue questions Wolverine's moniker, prompting him to reveal his true name, Logan. In turn, Wolverine queries the origin of Rogue, leading to a playful exchange about their respective identities. Through their conversation, a tentative connection forms. As they continue their journey, Marie reveals her true name to Logan, prompting a brief exchange before she advises him to buckle up. Brushing off her suggestion, Logan asserts his confidence in his driving skills. However, their conversation is abruptly interrupted when the truck collides with a tree branch, hurling Logan through the front windshield and into the snow several meters away. Regaining consciousness, Logan rises from the snow as the truck begins to engulf in flames. Concerned for Marie's safety, he rushes back to check on her. As she awakens, Marie witnesses in awe as Logan's wounds rapidly heal. With a mixture of shock and amazement, she confirms her well-being. Just as Logan moves to assist Marie, his heightened senses detect a familiar scent in the air, the presence of a formidable adversary, Sabretooth. Prepared for the impending confrontation, Logan braces himself for the impending battle against his longtime nemesis. Abruptly, Sabretooth emerges from the woods, hurling Wolverine through the air with tremendous force. With savage determination, he throws Wolverine once more onto the flaming truck before advancing towards him. Meanwhile, Rogue, already terrified by the inferno engulfing the vehicle, watches in horror. In a dramatic turn of events, two figures materialize behind Sabretooth, Cyclops and Storm. With unwavering resolve, Cyclops unleashes a powerful optic blast, striking Sabretooth and momentarily incapacitating him. Utilizing his beams, Cyclops frees Rogue from her perilous predicament, and together they swiftly retrieve both her and Wolverine. narrowly escaping the imminent explosion of the truck. As the flames erupt behind them, Cyclops and Storm lead Wolverine and Rogue to safety, rescuing them from the clutches of danger. With their rescue mission accomplished, they transport the rescued pair to the sanctuary of the X-Mansion, where they can find refuge and aid in recovering from the harrowing ordeal. Lying unconscious in the X-Men's base, Wolverine is tended to by Jean Grey. As she attempts to administer an injection, Wolverine suddenly awakens, mistaking her for an adversary. Swiftly evading her grasp, he escapes and navigates through the labyrinthine tunnels of Xavier's mansion. Amidst the disorientation, Wolverine begins to hear telepathic voices in his head, Charles Xavier guiding him through the maze. Following his instructions, Wolverine discovers a closet and dons a shirt before encountering an elevator which transports him to the upper floors. Navigating through the corridors, Wolverine encounters mutant children whom he evades before stumbling into a classroom where Xavier is teaching. Xavier warmly welcomes him and concludes the lesson as the students depart. Witnessing Kitty's remarkable ability to phase through solid objects, Wolverine is visibly perplexed. Introducing himself as Charles Xavier, the professor invites Wolverine to join him for breakfast. Confused about his surroundings, Wolverine inquires about his location, to which Xavier responds that they are in Westchester, New York, Wolverine having been brought there for medical attention following an attack. Dismissing any need for medical aid, Wolverine instead queries about Rogue's whereabouts. Xavier reassures him that Rogue is also present and safe. As Logan's rescuers enter, Xavier introduces them as Ororo Monroe, also known as Storm, and Scott Summers, known as Cyclops. Scott extends his hand for a handshake, but Logan remains unresponsive. Xavier acknowledges that they saved Logan's life, and Jean Grey joins them shortly after. After introducing Jean, Xavier explains that Logan is in a school for mutants, known as the Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters, where he is safe from Magneto. Perplexed, Logan questions, "What's a Magneto?" Xavier elucidates that Magneto is a formidable mutant and that Sabretooth, the assailant who attacked Logan, is one of his associates. Feeling incredulous, Logan prepares to leave, brushing off Scott's attempt to impede him. However, Xavier interjects, offering assistance in unlocking Logan's lost memories. Telepathically, Xavier communicates with Logan, revealing that it's been 15 years since he lost his memory, and suggests that his telepathic abilities can aid in recollecting his past. Intrigued by the prospect, Logan inquires further about their location and purpose. Xavier continues to elucidate the nature of the school, persuading Logan of its suitability as a refuge for Rogue. However, he reveals that beneath the facade lies a complex organization, with lower levels housing the true operations of the X-Men. Guiding Logan through the facility, Xavier unveils the hangar housing the X-Men's advanced aircraft, the Blackbird. Delving into his own history, Xavier recounts his childhood discovery of his telepathic abilities and his encounter with Eric Lensher, a fellow mutant with the power to manipulate magnetism. Tragically, Eric's disillusionment with humanity led him to embrace a darker path, assuming the mantle of Magneto. Offering Logan a proposition, Xavier proposes a 48-hour window to uncover the reasons behind Magneto's pursuit of him, in exchange for assistance in unraveling Logan's enigmatic past. With this offer on the table, Logan is faced with a crucial decision, one that could provide answers to his forgotten history and shed light on his connection to the enigmatic figure of Magneto. In the confines of the X-Mansion, Jean conducts tests on Logan, who expresses remorse for his earlier outburst and attempts to charm her. Jean responds with a pointed look before swiftly ushering him into the scanning machine. Later that evening, Logan appears to have acquiesced to Xavier's proposal. Jean guides him to his room for the night, where Logan resumes his flirtatious banter. Expressing jealousy over Jean's relationship with Scott, he teasingly questions her ability to tolerate Scott's presence. Jean reveals her telekinetic abilities and demonstrates by closing the closet door with her mind. She also mentions her limited telepathic capabilities, prompting Logan to implore her to read his mind. Initially hesitant, Jean eventually complies, delving into Logan's memories of fire and the traumatic operation he endured. As Logan eagerly awaits Jean's revelations, their moment is interrupted by Scott's entrance. Jean, feeling slightly embarrassed, excuses herself, leaving Scott and Logan to engage in playful taunts about Jean and their respective roles in Logan's rescue. Before departing, Scott issues a warning to Logan to steer clear of Jean. In the dead of night, Logan is consumed by a haunting nightmare of his traumatic past, reliving the agonizing moment when adamantium was bonded to his skeleton. Suddenly, Rogue enters his room, attempting to rouse him from his restless slumber. Startled awake and still gripped by the remnants of his terrifying dream, Logan lets out a terrified scream, his claws instinctively unsheathing and piercing Rogue's chest. The shock of his actions jolts Logan back to reality, and he quickly retracts his claws, leaving 3 puncture wounds in Rogue's body. Trembling with shock and pain, Rogue struggles to regain her composure as Logan's hysterical cries for help fill the room. Just in time, Ororo, Jean, Scott, and a group of children, including Bobby, rush into the room, witnessing the aftermath of the alarming incident. As Rogue's wounds begin to miraculously heal before their eyes, Logan loses consciousness, prompting Jean and Scott to rush to his aid. Meanwhile, Rogue apologizes profusely, insisting that the injury was purely accidental. Distressed by the unfolding events, Rogue retreats from the room, leaving the other children to recoil in fear and uncertainty. While some regard her with apprehension, Iceman's expression reflects genuine concern for her well-being amid the chaos. After some time, Logan regains consciousness to find Xavier by his side. Inquiring about Rogue's condition, he learns from the professor that she's expected to recover. Wolverine seeks clarification on the events, prompting Xavier to explain Rogue's abilities. When she makes physical contact, she absorbs others' energies, including mutant abilities. In Logan's case, she absorbed his healing power. Expressing the severity of his experience, Logan remarks he felt as though she nearly ended his life, to which Xavier confirms that prolonged contact could have indeed been fatal. In the subterranean chamber, Xavier and Cyclops endeavored to decipher Magneto's intentions concerning Wolverine. Xavier senses Scott's disapproval of Logan. At that moment, Logan and Ororo enter, inquiring about Rogue's whereabouts. Following a brief mental scan, Xavier reveals Rogue's absence. Shortly after, Xavier, Scott, Jean, Ororo, and Logan convene in a secure chamber, where Xavier introduces Logan to Cerebro. Cerebro, a vast spherical chamber with a bridge leading to the apparatus, enhances Xavier's abilities, enabling him to track mutants over great distances, an essential tool in locating Rogue. When Logan suggests using Cerebro to track Magneto, Xavier explains Magneto's ability to shield himself from the device, revealing Logan's past involvement in its creation. Donning the Cerebro helmet and dismissing the others, Xavier initiates the search. Outside, Logan questions Jean about her experience with Cerebro, learning of its inherent danger for individuals lacking sufficient control, such as herself. Meanwhile, Xavier successfully pinpoints Rogue's location at the train station. Despite Logan's impulse to pursue her, Xavier cautions against leaving the mansion, fearing Magneto's capture. Instead, he dispatches Cyclops and Storm on the mission. As Scott and Ororo prepare to depart, Scott discovers his motorcycle missing from the garage. On the road, Logan speeds along on Scott's motorcycle. Meanwhile, at the train station, Rogue sits aboard a train, observing people interact without inhibition, longing for the touch she can never experience again. Logan locates her and takes a seat beside her. They exchange apologies for the events of the previous night, and Logan inquires if she's fleeing once more. Rogue confides that she's heard rumors at school about Xavier's displeasure toward her. While aboard the train, Rogue seeks Wolverine's counsel on whether she should return. His response is to encourage her to trust her instincts. After a moment of contemplation, she opens up about a poignant memory, her first kiss with David, which tragically left him in a coma for 3 weeks, leaving an indelible imprint on her consciousness alongside Logan's presence. Moved by her vulnerability, Logan offers solace, embracing her through her shirt. He persuades Rogue to remain under Xavier's care, assuring her that Xavier empathizes with her plight and genuinely desires to aid her, pledging his own support. As the train sets into motion, Logan convinces her to give Xavier and his team another chance. As the Brotherhood descends upon the train station, Rogue's train grinds to a halt and darkness envelops the scene. Amidst the chaos, Wolverine witnesses in horror as Magneto unleashes his powers, tearing the train apart and levitating its fragments. With his claws bared, Wolverine confronts Magneto, who identifies him as the man infused with metal. Using his abilities, Magneto suspends Logan in the air and inflicts pain upon him, prompting Rogue's desperate pleas for mercy. Logan demands to know why Magneto is targeting him, only to realize with dread that Rogue is the true target. Helpless, Wolverine is flung aside by Magneto before the latter subdues Rogue with a tranquilizer dart, swiftly capturing her. She soon becomes a vital component in Magneto's grand scheme atop the Statue of Liberty. Back at the mansion, Logan stands at the sink, his expression wrought with anger. He resents the professor's assertion that he was the desired target, and Xavier offers a sincere apology, admitting to a grave error as Magneto's helmet disrupts his telepathic abilities. Fueled by frustration, Logan storms off in search of Rogue, determined to confront the situation alone. However, Storm intervenes, urging him to join their cause and fight alongside them. Dismissing her plea, Logan expresses his reluctance to aid a world that harbors animosity towards him. He acknowledges Magneto's ominous warning of an impending war and questions Storm's allegiance. She reaffirms her commitment to their cause, prompting Logan to open the door and unexpectedly find Senator Kelly awaiting Dr. Jean Grey's assistance. In the underground facility, Senator Kelly lies on a medical table with Logan and Jean by his side. Xavier approaches, introducing himself. Kelly explains his aversion to conventional hospitals, fearing mistreatment due to his mutant status. A sentiment Xavier finishes, reassuring him they're not all as he perceives. Kelly, embittered by his ordeal, challenges Xavier to convey that message to those responsible. Xavier urges Kelly to relax as he delves into his memories. In Kelly's recollection, he witnesses Magneto's transformation process, aided by Mystique, leaving Magneto visibly fatigued and weakened. Back in the present, Xavier, Scott, Jean, and Logan convene in an upstairs room. Xavier elucidates Magneto's utilization of a machine emitting radiation to induce mutation in non-mutants. Jean adds that this mutation is unnatural, resulting in Kelly's body rejecting it, causing cellular breakdown. Scott queries the effects of the radiation on mutants, to which Xavier replies it poses no threat to them but could prove detrimental to humans. Logan presses for insight into Magneto's interest in Rogue, to which Xavier admits uncertainty. Frustrated, Logan moves to depart, but Scott interjects with a revelation. The machine derived its power from Magneto, nearly costing him his life. Scott theorizes that Magneto intends for Rogue to absorb his powers, sparing him. Storm interrupts their discussion as she enters Xavier's study, announcing Senator Kelly's demise. Xavier resolves to locate Rogue himself and instructs the men to resolve their differences. Cyclops, Jean, Storm, and Wolverine huddle together, mapping out their strategy. Armed with a deep understanding of Magneto's objectives, they grasp the perilous reality. Magneto remains oblivious to the lethal nature of his machine. Acknowledging the potential devastation if Rogue absorbs excessive power, they craft a plan to disrupt Magneto's designs on Liberty Island. Logan voices concern about Harbor Patrol, prompting Scott to assert that any entity capable of detecting their jet would merit interception. With resolve, they board the Blackbird and depart, leaving the students awestruck. Scott takes the helm, guiding the jet toward their destination. As they near the bridge, they make a controlled landing on the water's surface, with Storm enveloping them in fog to conceal their approach. The Blackbird touches down and the X-Men disembark, gazing up at the machine perched atop the torch. As they pass through a metal detector, it alarms at Logan, who defiantly extends his claws into it. Cyclops shoots him a disapproving glance, prompting Wolverine to retract the outer two claws in a gesture of defiance. Scott's smirk is met with an eye roll from Jean. Proceeding cautiously down the corridor, they are unaware that Toad and Mystique lie in wait. Logan's heightened senses detect their presence, prompting him to warn the others to stay vigilant, sardonically jabbing at Scott's expense. Suddenly, a second Wolverine emerges, launching into a fierce battle with the original. The ensuing chaos leaves the team uncertain of who is genuine and who is the imposter. Both Wolverines unleash their claws, tearing through their surroundings. Eventually, Mystique reveals her true form, outmaneuvering Wolverine in a surprising turn of events. Later, Storm cautiously approaches Logan, questioning his identity. He gestures for silence, relying on his heightened sense of smell to detect the presence of the other Wolverine nearby. Urging the need to regroup, Storm is abruptly silenced as Logan unsheaths his claws, revealing Mystique's deception as she morphs upon being impaled. After dispatching the imposter, Logan locates Scott and Jean, who demand proof of his identity. Logan's curt response, "You're a dick," satisfies Scott, confirming his authenticity. As they ascend the stairs, Logan abruptly warns them to evacuate. Confused, Cyclops queries the issue, only for Logan to find himself immobilized and pinned to the wall, along with the others as Magneto descends. Despite Cyclops' attempts to use his optic blasts, metal fragments ensnare them, leaving him unable to target Magneto without endangering Jean. Sabretooth joins them, disarming Cyclops and rendering him unable to use his powers. In a tense standoff, Scott urges Storm to unleash a lightning bolt, but Magneto warns against it, citing the danger posed by the conductive surroundings. As Magneto explains his motivations, they're startled by Rogue's distressing cries for help. Wolverine confronts Magneto, questioning the righteousness of his actions and suggesting that he should have been the one in the machine. Unfazed, Magneto ascends towards the machine, ignoring Rogue's pleas. In a desperate bid for freedom, Logan strains against his restraints, pushing himself to the limit and causing Jean to cry out in concern. Sabretooth moves closer to Logan's immobilized form, but Logan suddenly springs into action, impaling Sabretooth with his claws. Despite Sabretooth's regenerative abilities mirroring Wolverine's own, they engage in a fierce battle atop the statue's head. During the intense battle, Wolverine retrieves his dog tags, a poignant symbol of his identity. Sabretooth hurls Wolverine off the statue, but he manages to cling on and leap back into action. In a fierce showdown, Wolverine overpowers Sabretooth, but his victory is short-lived as he hears Rogue's agonizing scream. Losing his grip, Wolverine falls, but deftly embeds his claws into the wall to break his fall, inadvertently endangering Scott and Jean on the other side. Mistaking him for dead, Sabretooth approaches Storm, only for Wolverine to leap back into the fray, wielding Cyclops' visor. Sensing the pivotal moment, Jean instructs Scott to prepare to open his eyes. With precise timing, Jean places the visor over Scott's eyes and commands, "Now!" Cyclops unleashes a powerful blast, propelling Sabretooth through the wall and into a boat anchored off Liberty Island. With the threat neutralized, Wolverine releases the others from their restraints. Wolverine proposes to Cyclops the idea of blasting the machine, but Scott is hesitant, fearing it could harm Rogue. Turning to Storm for assistance, Cyclops asks if she can elevate him, but she admits she lacks precise control, risking him soaring past the torch. Undeterred, Logan suggests Storm carry him, reasoning that if he falls short, Cyclops could still execute the plan. Reluctantly agreeing, Cyclops directs Jean to use her telekinesis to stabilize Logan during their ascent. With their combined efforts, they guide Logan towards the apex of the machine. As the energy field intensifies, Wolverine leaps inside, intent on freeing Rogue from her restraints. However, Magneto thwarts his efforts with his magnetic powers. Ready to unleash his optic blast, Cyclops hesitates as Jean urges caution. As Cyclops sees his chance, he takes it, blasting Magneto, saving her before the machine can stretch her power any further. After freeing Rogue, Wolverine slashes the machine, stopping it from mutating people. He cuts Rogue's chain and holds her tightly. She's not moving and notices the white streak in her hair. He touches her cheek, trying to give her his regenerative powers so it can save her life. At first, it doesn't seem to work, and Logan begins to despair, thinking Rogue is dead. A multitude of wounds begin to appear on Logan's face, and blood begins to drip from several stab wounds. As Rogue wakes up, Logan falls to the ground, unconscious with gashes all over his body. Back at the mansion, Logan awakens to find Jean watching over him. Anxious for news, he inquires about their mission's outcome. With a somber expression, Jean gestures towards Xavier lying on a nearby table. Later, Jean returns to check on Logan, revealing that his wounds have miraculously healed. Expressing admiration for his bravery, she confirms that his intervention saved Rogue. As Logan begins to open up about his feelings for her, Jean's response makes it clear that while Logan may hold affection for her, her heart belongs to Scott. Sensing the shift in mood, Logan changes the subject, inquiring about Xavier's condition. Jean reassures him that the professor is recovering well. The professor discloses to Logan the existence of an abandoned military compound in the Canadian Rockies, suggesting it may hold answers to his past. Before departing, Xavier asks if Logan intends to bid farewell to the students. As Logan prepares to leave, Rogue notices his departure and hurries to intercept him. Expressing her reluctance to see him go, she pleads for his return. Logan reassures her, promising he'll come back, leaving her with his dog tags as a memento until his return. With a sense of resolve, Wolverine departs the mansion, riding Cyclops' motorcycle towards Alkali Lake, his destination shrouded in mystery and possibility. X2, X-Men United, the movie prequel Wolverine. Logan halts to refuel Cyclops' motorcycle and discovers that Sabretooth has been trailing him. A fierce battle ensues, culminating in Logan emerging victorious. However, before delivering a final blow, Logan notices that Sabretooth bears identical dog tags. Intrigued by this revelation, they set aside their differences and engage in conversation over drinks. Their interaction is abruptly interrupted when Stryker's men storm in, armed with orders from Stryker himself. In a surprising turn of events, Logan and Sabretooth join forces to combat Stryker's soldiers with remarkable teamwork, unaware of their familial connection. Despite their valiant efforts, they're eventually overwhelmed and subdued. Regaining consciousness aboard a helicopter, Sabretooth sacrifices himself by hurling Wolverine off, allowing Logan to escape. Tragically, Stryker discovers that the adamantium bonding procedure failed with Victor and orders his men to execute him with adamantium bullets, resulting in Victor's demise. Meanwhile, undeterred by the chaos, Logan presses on with his quest to uncover the mysteries of Alkali Lake. X2, X-Men United. In the desolate landscape of Alkali Lake, Wolverine trudges through the snow, eyes fixed on the military compound mentioned by Professor X. As he approaches the gate, he encounters a solitary white wolf, a silent sentinel of the barren terrain. Crossing the threshold, he discovers only remnants of what once stood, an empty shell of the fortified structure. Disheartened by the lack of answers, Wolverine reluctantly retreats, his search yielding nothing but disappointment. With a heavy heart, he makes his way back to the X-Mansion, the weight of unfulfilled expectations lingering in the frigid air. Rogue's excitement swells as she hears the familiar rumble of Cyclops' motorcycle, signaling Logan's return. Rushing to the entrance, she embraces him warmly, exchanging greetings and introductions. Bobby, known as Iceman, playfully freezes Logan's hand during their handshake, eliciting teasing remarks from Logan about their physical compatibility. Bobby retorts that they're still figuring it out. Their reunion is interrupted by Ororo's arrival, who extends a warm welcome to Logan, informing him of an immediate need for a babysitter. As Storm departs to prepare the jet, Bobby and Rogue follow suit. Jean descends the stairs, greeting Logan before explaining that she and Storm are bound for Boston at the professor's behest, to track down a mutant involved in an attack on the president. As Logan playfully flirts with Jean, Scott enters, questioning if Logan found what he sought. After their brief exchange, Jean bids farewell to Scott with a kiss before departing. Left alone, Logan jokes about needing gas for his bike, tossing the keys to Scott, who responds in kind before tossing them back, indicating Logan's responsibility to refuel. In Cerebro, Professor Xavier prepares to locate the mutant attacker, welcoming Wolverine back while admonishing him to extinguish his cigar. Logan, momentarily stumped, eventually opts to stub out the cigar in his palm, the wound swiftly healing. Inquiring if he should depart, Logan is instructed to remain still by Xavier. As the room darkens, myriad lights emerge, each representing a living person, white for humans, red for mutants. Xavier elucidates that Cerebro connects him to every individual and vice versa. Logan shifts the conversation to his discovery at Alkali Lake, but Xavier, seemingly disregarding the topic, focuses on the broken line representing the elusive mutant. Logan suggests intensifying concentration, but Xavier cautions against it, warning of potential harm to the target. Suddenly, the mutant ceases running, his voice echoing prayers in German. Xavier exits Cerebro, prompting Logan to request another mind reading. Xavier explains the futility, emphasizing the complexity of the mind and the need for self-discovery. Before departing, he entrusts Logan with overseeing the children for the night, as he and Scott embark for a visit with an old friend. In the quiet of the Institute, Logan wrestles with the haunting nightmares of his past, roused from fitful sleep by sweat-soaked sheets. Descending the stairs, he's greeted by the glow of the television, where Jones, a mutant with unique abilities, effortlessly changes channels with a blink. Jones remarks on Logan's restlessness, to which Wolverine quips in response, prompting a simple observation from the perceptive student. Making his way to the kitchen, Logan encounters Bobby, indulging in a late-night snack of ice cream. Expressing a desire for beer, Logan is reminded of the school's rules by Bobby. Undeterred, Logan queries about alternatives, settling on soda. Bobby employs his own abilities, gently cooling the beverage with a frosty touch before offering it to Logan, fostering a sense of camaraderie. Curiously, Logan inquires about Bobby's tenure at the mansion, to which Bobby responds, a couple of years. Surprised, Logan questions if his parents simply shipped him off to a mutant school, to which Bobby reveals that his parents believe he's enrolled in a prep school. Shifting gears, Logan broaches the topic of Bobby's relationship with Rogue. Bobby confesses the complexities of their dynamic, expressing a desire for closeness while grappling with the barriers between them. In the midst of their conversation, Logan's heightened senses detect the approach of intruders. Urgently, he rises and signals Bobby to remain silent. Logan swiftly exits the kitchen just as a soldier lurks in, poised to ambush Bobby. Reacting instinctively, Logan intervenes, thwarting the soldier's attack in the nick of time. The sudden appearance of soldiers triggers a powerful sonic scream from Siren, reverberating throughout the school, shattering windows and jolting the others awake. As chaos erupts, Logan confronts the soldier in the kitchen, who unleashes gunfire indiscriminately. Bobby narrowly avoids the onslaught as Logan, consumed by a berserker rage, unsheathes his claws, swiftly dispatching the assailant before Bobby's wide eyes. In the wake of the confrontation, Logan and Bobby hastily depart the kitchen, encountering more soldiers in their path. Instructing Bobby to stay put, Logan engages the soldiers head-on, clearing a path for Bobby to seek out Rogue. With determination, Bobby rushes toward the elevator, intent on finding and protecting her amidst the escalating turmoil. In the heat of the chaos, Logan locates Colossus and entrusts him with Jones, whom he found unconscious. Despite Peter's offer to assist him, Logan urges him to prioritize the safety of the children. As Peter and Jones disappear into the passage, Logan encounters more soldiers, swiftly neutralizing them with his razor-sharp claws. Soldiers surge forward as Iceman, Rogue, and Pyro appear, but Logan springs into action, swiftly dispatching the threats. Racing to evade pursuing soldiers, they pile into an elevator, seeking refuge. However, just as the doors begin to close, Logan abruptly exits, opting to confront the soldiers head-on, ensuring his companions escape. As tension thickens, Stryker's voice breaks through, halting the soldiers' aggression. Addressing Logan by his codename, Stryker expresses astonishment at finding him in the mansion after over 15 years of absence. He reminisces about their past association, detailing his knowledge of Logan's history, including their prior collaboration and the extensive experimentation and injuries inflicted upon him. Logan, grappling with fragmented memories, demands Stryker to identify himself. Before Stryker can respond, a barrier of ice materializes, separating him from Logan. Despite Logan's insistence that the others depart to safety, Rogue adamantly refuses, determined to stand by him. As Stryker moves to attack, Logan urges the group to flee, assuring them of his ability to handle the situation. With Rogue and Bobby at his side, they race towards the garage, seeking refuge in Cyclops' car. In the frantic scramble to escape, Logan takes the wheel, igniting the engine with a swipe of his claws. With Pyro's desire to drive overridden by Logan's decision, they speed away just as the soldiers converge on the underground tunnels, the chase escalating into a perilous pursuit. As they speed down the road, Pyro seeks clarity on the recent events, prompting Logan to identify their adversary as Stryker, though admitting his memory of the man remains fragmented. An unexpected twist occurs when Pyro activates the CD player, revealing a hidden communicator instead. Recognizing the urgency of their situation, Logan suggests they head to Boston, surmising it to be the destination of Storm and Jean. Bobby interjects, revealing that his parents reside in Boston, offering a potential refuge to regroup and recover. Amidst the tension, Rogue returns Wolverine's dog tags. Upon arriving at the Drake residence, Bobby leads the group inside, calling out for his family. With no response, he instructs Pyro to refrain from causing any mischief as he retrieves clothing for everyone. Meanwhile, Logan attempts to use Scott's communicator to contact Jean, without success. Seeking solace in the kitchen, Logan helps himself to a bottle of beer from the fridge. Sensing a presence nearby, he instinctively unsheathes his claws, only to discover the Drake's cat curiously investigating. Surprisingly unfazed, the cat proceeds to lick Logan's claws as he relaxes his guard. As the door opens, Logan retracts his claws just in time to greet Bobby's parents and brother. William Drake queries Logan's identity, prompting Bobby to rush downstairs and introduce him as Professor Logan, signaling an imminent revelation. With tension mounting, Logan prepares to disclose the truth to Bobby's family. In the solemn ambiance of the Drake's living room, Bobby bravely concludes his revelation about his mutation to his parents and brother. Amidst the tension, Pyro idly flicks his lighter, a restless energy palpable in the air. Madeline Drake tentatively broaches the subject, struggling to articulate her thoughts, only for Pyro to interject and complete her sentence with a touch of irreverence. William Drake earnestly implores his son to understand their initial misunderstanding, emphasizing their belief that Bobby was attending a school for gifted individuals. In a moment of solidarity, Rogue affirms Bobby's inherent worth, prompting Logan to interject, challenging the notion of mutant problems and advocating for acceptance. Curiosity piqued, William queries Logan about his profession, receiving a surprising response of art. As tensions simmer, Rogue suggests a demonstration of Bobby's abilities, leading to Bobby freezing his mother's coffee cup, a display that both shocks and awes Madeline. Meanwhile, Pyro's amusement borders on mockery, exacerbating the family's turmoil. Overwhelmed by the revelation, Bobby's brother, Ronnie, storms out of the room in frustration. Madeline, grappling with guilt, shoulders the blame, but Pyro's callous remarks only serve to further exacerbate the situation. Feeling betrayed, Ronnie takes drastic action, making a fateful call to the authorities, escalating the already tense situation. As Cyclops' communicator emits a persistent beep, Logan retrieves it from the porch, connecting with Jean. With a heavy heart, he relays the grim news. The Institute has been overrun by soldiers. Concern mounts for the safety of the children, prompting Storm to inquire about their status. Logan's response is tinged with uncertainty, acknowledging that some manage to flee but others remain unaccounted for. The gravity of the situation weighs heavily as Jean reveals their inability to contact Professor Xavier or Scott. In a bid to regroup and strategize, Logan discloses his current location in Boston with Bobby Drake's family. With a sense of urgency, Jean and Storm set their course for Boston, determined to join forces and confront the unfolding crisis. With a terse instruction to expedite their arrival, Logan terminates the call, bracing for the challenges that lie ahead. As Logan urgently ushers the group outside, tension mounts when they discover the house encircled by police cars. A commanding officer demands Logan relinquish his claws and raise his hands. Confounded by the sudden escalation, Logan seeks clarification, only to realize with frustration that Bobby's brother, Ronnie, had summoned the authorities. From his vantage point in the bedroom window, Ronnie observes the unfolding confrontation. Meanwhile, on the porch, Bobby's parents are directed to comply with police orders as 2 officers enter the fray. Despite Logan's attempts to defuse the situation, tensions remain high. As he raises his arm in a futile attempt to reason with the officers, tragedy strikes. A frightened officer opens fire, striking Logan in the forehead, and he crumples to the ground, the echoes of the gunshot reverberating through the air. As Wolverine lies unconscious, the tension escalates further when John's fiery outburst threatens to engulf Bobby's home entirely. In a desperate bid to prevent further destruction, Rogue unleashes her powers, extinguishing the flames that had threatened to consume them all. As the smoke clears, John sinks to his knees, the gravity of his actions sinking in. Bobby watches in awe as Logan's forehead wound miraculously heals, the bullet dislodging itself from his flesh. The arrival of the jet landing in the yard with precision marks a pivotal moment of relief. With a collective resolve, the mutants stride towards the aircraft. Hindered by fear and awe, the officers stand down, powerless to impede their departure. Seated within the confines of the jet, the 4 mutants settle in, their collective gaze resting upon the newcomer. Wolverine breaks the silence with a query, prompting Kurt to introduce himself as the enigmatic Nightcrawler, renowned in the Munich circus for his remarkable abilities. With a sense of urgency pervading the air, the jet accelerates skyward, leaving behind the tumultuous scene at Bobby's home. As they soar through the air, Bobby remains somber, his thoughts consumed by the profound impact of his family's reactions, a poignant reminder of the challenges faced by mutants in a world fraught with prejudice and misunderstanding. As the jet approaches the mansion, Jean alerts Wolverine to the presence of incoming signals. Storm confirms the ominous news. 2 military jets are rapidly closing in on their position, demanding their immediate descent. Logan attributes their pursuit to John's actions, a sentiment echoed by the tension in the air. Despite Storm's attempts to evade, the military jets persist in their pursuit, escalating the situation to a critical juncture. With a determined gaze, Storm unleashes her powers, conjuring a tempestuous display of swirling winds and darkened skies. The turbulent atmosphere proves effective, downing one of the jets, but the other persists, launching torpedoes in their direction. In a desperate bid to avert disaster, Jean's telekinetic powers spring into action, diverting one of the torpedoes off course. Yet despite their efforts, one torpedo finds its mark, tearing through the jet's fuselage and threatening to plunge them into the ground. Amidst the chaos, Rogue's precarious position becomes a focal point of distress. Without hesitation, Kurt springs into action, teleporting to her side and whisking her to safety before she could be lost to the open sky. But just as all seems lost, a miraculous turn of events unfolds. The gaping hole in the jet inexplicably seals shut, halting their descent just meters above the ground. Bewildered, Storm and Jean exchange incredulous glances, realizing that this turn of events was not their doing. Meanwhile, on the ground, Magneto and Mystique revel in the chaos they've wrought, their laughter punctuating the surreal spectacle. With a wry quip, Magneto reflects on the folly of their adversaries' attempt to defy gravity, their machinations unfolding with a malevolent sense of amusement. As the night wears on, the mutants gather around a crackling fire, enveloped by the shadows of the forest. Magneto breaks the tension with a solemn revelation, disclosing the identity of their adversary, Colonel William Stryker. His intrusion into the mansion was driven by a singular objective, to seize control of Cerebro, or enough of its technology to fashion his own. Jean and Storm grapple with the implications, recognizing the catastrophic potential should Stryker harness the power of Cerebro unchecked. Perplexed by their concern, Wolverine presses for clarity, prompting Magneto to unveil the dire truth of Cerebro's capabilities. With Charles Xavier's mind linked to every living being on the planet, the potential for mass destruction looms large. Storm probes deeper, questioning how Stryker acquired knowledge of Cerebro's whereabouts. Magneto reveals a chilling reality. Xavier's formidable psychic defenses were breached by Stryker's potent methods of coercion. Jean seeks further insight into Stryker's motivations, prompting Magneto to paint a portrait of a military science consumed by the quest to eradicate what he perceives as the mutant problem. As the weight of this revelation settles, Wolverine grapples with the shock of discovering Stryker's pivotal role in his own tortured past. Storm voices the pressing question: what does Magneto require of them in this perilous moment? Magneto unveils a tantalizing lead. Mystique has uncovered intelligence regarding a covert base where Stryker is constructing a second Cerebro. However, the location remains elusive, prompting Magneto to turn his gaze towards an unexpected ally perched above them. With a steely glint in his eye, Magneto fixes his attention on Nightcrawler, whose presence offers a glimmer of hope in their quest for salvation. As Jean delves into Nightcrawler's memories, she recoils at the harrowing images mirrored from Wolverine's own tortured past, including scenes of invasive surgeries and unspeakable horrors. The revelation sends a shiver down her spine as she grapples with the gravity of Stryker's atrocities. Upon concluding her telepathic probe, Jean's voice trembles with dread as she confirms Stryker's whereabouts, Alkali Lake. Logan's skepticism flares at the notion, citing his recent expedition to the desolate location. Jean offers a chilling clarification. While the surface may bear the scars of destruction, the true heart of Stryker's operations lies concealed beneath the Earth's surface. The revelation casts a pall over the assembled mutants, underscoring the urgent need for decisive action. With the specter of Stryker's malevolence looming ever larger, they steel themselves for the perilous journey ahead, determined to confront the darkness lurking beneath the shadows of Alkali Lake. Afterwards, Logan and Jean find themselves in a private moment. Logan inquires about her well-being, and she expresses concern for Scott. Acknowledging her abilities displayed aboard the jet, Logan offers admiration, but Jean remains unconvinced of its adequacy. He makes a physical gesture of comfort, yet she reaffirms her commitment to Scott, explaining the allure of dangerous men for temporary excitement while stability is sought in marriage. Despite his advances, she halts Logan's kiss, requesting him not to compel her, then exits. Kurt engages in conversation with Mystique, questioning the truth behind her ability as a shapeshifter. Mystique confirms her shapeshifting capability, but admits a preference for maintaining her neutral form whenever feasible. Meanwhile, Logan's attention is fixed on his dog tag until Jean unexpectedly enters and kisses him. His expression shifts to suspicion when he notices scars he inflicted on Mystique during a previous encounter. Revealed as Mystique, Jean remarks, "No one's ever left a scar quite like you," prompting Logan's sarcastic response, "What do you want, an apology?" As Mystique morphs between Jean, Rogue, and Aurora, Logan reacts angrily, kicking her upon realizing her awareness of his attraction to Jean. Transforming briefly into Stryker, Mystique departs. The following morning, they all fly in the jet. There, they all take their uniforms. The kids complain that they don't get uniforms, and Logan says that theirs are on order. They'll arrive in a few years. Out by the jet, the X-Men assemble to strategize the mission, utilizing a holographic, topographic map of the base. They observe that Stryker possesses the capability to flood the spillway should they infiltrate. Storm inquires of Nightcrawler if he can teleport them in, but he explains the necessity of visualizing the destination to avoid materializing within solid objects. Wolverine volunteers, suspecting Stryker's preference for his capture. Magneto emphasizes the need for someone familiar with the base's operation, directing his gaze toward Mystique. At Alkali Lake, Jean makes a startling revelation that Stryker's base lies beneath the surface. Taking on the guise of Wolverine, Mystique infiltrates the base, deceiving Stryker's forces into unwittingly facilitating the X-Men's entry. Inside the control room, Mystique observes as the doors are breached not by soldiers but by the mutants who swiftly advance. Presenting them with a map of the facility, she highlights a crucial area, Cerebro, a large round chamber. Meanwhile, Logan, standing apart from the group, glimpses Stryker on a monitor. As the others strategize their next moves, with Storm and Nightcrawler tasked with rescuing the children and Jean, Magneto, and Mystique aiming to deactivate Cerebro, Storm notices Logan's absence. Descending a staircase, Wolverine is confronted by the chilling sight of what appears to be a surgical chamber, evoking memories of his darkest experiences. Positioned at the center is a conspicuous green tube containing an enigmatic liquid. Adorning the walls are X-ray images depicting skulls and claws, further intensifying Logan's unsettling recollections. Another haunting flashback grips him as he envisions himself submerged within the tube. His exploration leads him to a small pool containing liquid adamantium, accompanied by needles that trigger yet another painful memory of his past operation. Fixating on the tube, he recalls the moment of his emergence, naked and bewildered, witnessing his claws for the first time. The arrival of Stryker and Lady Deathstrike interrupts his introspection. Stryker elaborates on the necessity of maintaining adamantium in its molten state, emphasizing its near indestructible nature once cooled. With a cryptic remark about Wolverine's uniqueness, Stryker departs, leaving Logan to contemplate his unsettling revelations. He chases him, but Yuriko blocks his escape and throws him across the room, popping his claws and then watching in shock as she pulls out her own adamantium claws, 5 from each fingertip. She leaps at him and slices him across the face, and they fight, slicing each other. When she throws him at a wall and runs to him, he surprises her and brings his claws to her stomach, earning him the opportunity to strike her a few more times before she can react. She has just as good healing factor as his own though and recovers quickly. She throws him across the room and stabs him several times in the back before dropping him on an iron net platform above the tube. Standing beneath him, she continues stabbing him with her claws until he uses his claws to snap the poles that hold the platform in place, causing it to fall on her. Lady Deathstrike suddenly jumps at Wolverine from below and stabs him again as he is still recovering from his injuries. When he sees the needles, he grabs one, injects it with molten liquefied adamantium metal, and injects it into her. Although she was impaled by Wolverine, she managed to escape Stryker's control while she was still impaled, but there was no way for her to save herself now. He watched in horror as adamantium leaked out of her eyes, nose, and ears until she fell backward into the water tank with a thud as the metal hardened in her body. He takes the cable that keeps the helicopter on the ground off outside, but Wolverine arrives, punches him, and pops his claws into his arm as a result. Stryker tells Logan that he volunteered for the procedure willingly, while Logan yells at him for experimenting on him and stealing his life. When Logan asks Stryker who he is, he finds out that he's nothing more than a failed experiment, prompting him to dig his claws deeper into Stryker's arm in order to get answers. In order for Stryker to make sure the mutant doesn't remember the work they did together, he just gave him claws. He was an animal then, and he's an animal now. As soon as they heard the alarm, water burst out of the dam. As Logan asks Stryker what's happening, Stryker tells him that the spillway is about to flood because he was trying to relieve pressure. It's too late for anyone inside to escape, Stryker says, in an attempt to get out alive. He offers him to come with him and get all the answers he wants. He's a survivor. Wolverine repeats Stryker's previous words, saying he's only an animal with claws. If they die, he dies. He then pops his claws into Stryker's neck and ties him to the helicopter's leg with the cable before running back into the helicopter. As the dam continues to rupture, sending tremors throughout the entire structure, Jean frantically scans for the sole missing member, Logan. Meanwhile, Logan dashes through the corridors, driven by an urgent need to rescue his comrades. After successfully retrieving Cyclops and Professor X, the mutants hasten through the halls toward what they believe to be their only means of escape, the spillway. Arriving at the doors, they're startled as Logan emerges from a tunnel and swiftly disables the mechanism by plunging his claws into a fuse box, sealing the entrance before the impending deluge ensnares them. With conviction, Logan warns them against proceeding in that direction, and their fears are confirmed as water bursts through the cracks. Taking charge, Logan leads his friends down an alternate path to safety, guiding them away from the imminent danger of the flooding spillway. Outside, the water leakage from the dam ceases as it is diverted elsewhere. The mutants emerge onto snowy terrain, their relief short-lived as they realize the helicopter has vanished, commandeered by Magneto. Their attention is then drawn to the jet, careening erratically in the sky. Amidst the chaos, Rogue struggles to maintain control, ultimately crash-landing the aircraft into the snow. Both she and Bobby appear shaken, their heavy breaths betraying their fear as their companions rush to board the jet. As Xavier is teleported inside by Kurt, Logan, still carrying Artie, gazes toward the woods, a determined expression on his face. Ignoring the jet, he heads towards the forest, perhaps driven by a sense of purpose or a need for solitude amidst the tumultuous events. In the heart of the woods, Logan confronts Stryker one final time, finding him bound to a concrete wall by chains. Stryker's taunts about the truth and the creature in Logan's arms prompt Wolverine to set Artie down. Discarding the dog tag Stryker once bestowed upon him, Logan asserts his choice to face the uncertainty of the future rather than linger in the torment of the past. Leaving Stryker to his fate, Logan strides away, deaf to Stryker's desperate cries of vengeance echoing behind him. As the woods swallow them, Artie responds with a defiant gesture, sticking out his blue tongue. In that moment, Wolverine and Artie Maddox become the last witnesses to Stryker's downfall, leaving the once powerful antagonist to his solitary end. In a harrowing scene, Jean valiantly battles the forces of nature, using one hand to stave off the encroaching water while simultaneously working to free the jet's leg from the snow. Scott, consumed by anguish, can only watch helplessly as Logan commands Kurt to rescue her, but Kurt laments that she refuses his aid. In a moment of heartbreaking farewell, Jean speaks through Xavier's telepathy, assuring them that she understands the sacrifice she's making, emphasizing that it's the only way. Despite Scott's desperate pleas, Jean remains resolute, bidding her farewells. With her body and eyes ablaze with an orange glow, she miraculously frees the jet and lifts it into the air. With her last act, she relinquishes her telekinetic hold, allowing the water to engulf her as her companions look on in grief. Scott's devastation is palpable as he collapses into Logan's arms, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the tragedy. Every member of the team is overcome with sorrow as the jet soars above what has now become a vast expanse of water, a solemn testament to Jean's sacrifice. In the heart of Washington, a dramatic scene unfolds as Professor X utilizes his telepathic abilities to freeze everyone in President McKenna's office, allowing the X-Men to infiltrate unnoticed. Darkened skies and lightning strikes add an ominous backdrop as the mutants confront the president, Storm's eyes radiating with an otherworldly glow illuminated by the lightning. President McKenna, visibly shaken by the sight of the mutants, particularly Nightcrawler, is greeted with a calm good morning from Professor X, who assures him they mean no harm. In response to the president's inquiry about their identity, Xavier introduces himself and explains that they are mutants. Rogue places incriminating documents on the president's desk, revealing they were obtained from the private office of William Stryker. Curious about how they acquired such sensitive information, the president is met with Xavier's cryptic response about a girl who can pass through walls. Expressing skepticism, the president warns against threats, prompting Xavier to clarify that this is an opportunity, not a threat. He highlights the looming specter of conflict, emphasizing the casualties suffered by both humans and mutants in previous confrontations. Xavier implores the president to consider the gravity of the moment, presenting it as a choice between repeating past mistakes or forging a path toward a better future. Asserting their presence and vigilance, Logan underscores their commitment to monitoring the situation closely. With a final flash of lightning illuminating their faces, the mutants vanish, leaving the president to grapple with the weight of their message and the sudden return to normalcy. As the president faces the awaiting cameras, his mind undoubtedly churns with uncertainty, unsure of how to navigate the delicate balance of power and responsibility in the wake of this encounter. In Xavier's study, Scott gazes out the window, his thoughts consumed by the recent loss of Jean. Xavier reflects on Jean's lifelong struggle with her powers, noting her tendency to doubt herself and seek validation from others, fearing she was somehow falling behind. With a choked voice, Scott questions whether they could have done more to save her, to which Xavier gently suggests that perhaps in the past, Jean might have allowed them to. Logan, unable to comprehend Jean's decision to leave the plane, seeks clarity from Xavier, who simply states that Jean made a choice. As students begin to enter the classroom, including Artie, Jones, Bobby, Moonstar, and Jubilee, Logan and Scott depart, continuing their conversation outside. Logan remarks that Jean's choice was clear, it was Scott. However, Scott, while acknowledging the truth in Logan's words, finds little solace in them as he walks away, still grappling with the weight of Jean's sacrifice and the complex emotions it evoked. X-Men: The Last Stand. In the midst of an apocalyptic battle, X-Men and students alike find themselves engulfed in chaos as enemy fire rains down, decimating buildings and igniting flames all around. Amidst the pandemonium, students scramble through the turmoil while Storm takes to the air, skillfully evading the onslaught. As danger looms, Rogue and Colossus find themselves in the path of a colossal flying rock hurtling toward them. Reacting with instinctive valor, Peter transforms into Steel, intercepting the projectile and diverting its trajectory toward Wolverine. The rock collides with Logan's head, but he simply shrugs off the blow, swiftly regenerating any damage. Disappointed by the passive response of his students in the face of such dire circumstances, Logan implores them to follow him, his voice laced with urgency. Recognizing the need for action in a world descending into chaos, Logan leads the charge, his students rallying behind them as they surge forward into the fray. In a moment of casual defiance, Logan ignites his cigar with a burning log, displaying his trademark nonchalance even in the face of impending danger. However, his demeanor shifts when Aurora rushes to him in a panic, alerting him to the peril faced by the students. Logan grimly acknowledges their lack of readiness, a sentiment shared by Aurora, who anxiously pushes him away just in time to avoid an incoming blast, much to Logan's annoyance at losing his cigar. As they brace for the imminent threat hurtling toward them from the sky, Logan resigns himself to the reality that his students are not yet equipped to handle such dire situations. With a decisive action, he activates his claws and calls upon Colossus, instructing him to launch him toward the oncoming enemy. Despite Storm's objections, Colossus, once again transforming into Steel, hurls Wolverine towards the enemy with incredible force. Amidst the resounding clash, a destroyed Sentinel head crashes to the ground, with Logan perched triumphantly upon it. As the enemy retreats, Wolverine dismisses the impromptu lesson, signaling the end of simulation. With the Danger Room returning to its tranquil state, Logan offers a nod of approval to Colossus for his impressive throw, a rare compliment from the grizzled mentor. Exiting the Danger Room, Storm confronts Wolverine with simmering anger, admonishing him for unilaterally altering the rules of the training session. She emphasizes the importance of imparting specific lessons to the students. Logan, however, defends his actions, arguing that he did indeed teach them something valuable, asserting that the best defense is a strong offense. Or was it the other way around? Unmoved by his flippant attitude, Storm reiterates that their training is not a game. Frustrated by his dismissiveness, she suggests taking up the matter with Scott if there's an issue. With tension simmering between them, Logan's brusque response signals the end of the conversation, leaving Storm to contemplate her next course of action. In the hallway, Scott passes by Logan, who remarks that they were waiting for him downstairs, but he didn't appear. Cyclops responds curtly, questioning why Logan cares. Wolverine explains that he had to cover for Scott, prompting Cyclops to insist that he didn't ask him to. However, Logan reveals that it was the professor's request. Attempting to distance himself from the conversation, Scott tries to walk away, but Logan grabs his arm. urging him to acknowledge his feelings about Jean's death and consider moving forward. Scott, however, remains resolute, asserting that not everyone heals as quickly as Logan does, before turning and leaving Logan behind. As Beast arrives at the X Mansion and is greeted by Storm and Professor X, Logan enters the scene and casually inquires, "Who's the furball?" Hank introduces himself as the Secretary of Mutant Affairs, prompting Logan to offer a sarcastic compliment on his attire. Xavier proceeds to introduce Logan to Hank, but Beast interjects, revealing that he's already heard of Wolverine, indicating the legendary reputation that precedes him in mutant circles. As Storm interrupts, voicing her certainty that Magneto will seek to retrieve Mystique, Beast interjects, asserting that Magneto isn't the most imminent threat. He reveals that a prominent pharmaceutical company has developed a mutant antibody, a supposed cure intended to permanently suppress the mutant X gene. The news hangs heavily in the air, momentarily silencing the room as the gravity of the revelation sinks in. Storm is the first to react, rejecting the notion of curing being a mutant, questioning when they became viewed as a disease. Xavier intervenes, sensing the significance of the moment, indicating that the announcement is imminent. The tension in the room palpable, the X-Men grapple with the implications of this newfound threat to their identity and existence. In the midst of heated discussion, Storm questions who would willingly opt for this supposed cure, denouncing the act as cowardly conformity. Beast counters, suggesting that seeking refuge from persecution doesn't necessarily equate to cowardice, reminding her that not all mutants can seamlessly assimilate into society. Wolverine posits that the government may have played a role in orchestrating the cure, but Beast refutes this notion, asserting his long-standing dedication to mutant rights. Angrily, he points out that he's been advocating for their cause long before Logan even had claws. Their argument is abruptly halted as Rogue enters the room, seeking clarity on the matter at hand. An unsettling aura permeates the air as Professor Xavier senses Cyclops' distress. Throughout the school, Scott's name echoes telepathically, signaling that something has gone terribly awry. Reacting swiftly to the palpable tension, Wolverine and Storm race through the corridors in a state of hysteria, their minds racing with apprehension about the unknown crisis unfolding. Upon reaching Xavier's office, they burst through the door, their expressions wrought with concern as they inquire about his well-being. Xavier, his demeanor grave, instructs them urgently to all make their way to Alkali Lake, the urgency in his voice underscoring the severity of the situation. With a sense of foreboding hanging heavy in the air, Wolverine and Storm waste no time in heeding their mentor's directive, knowing that the fate of their comrades hangs in the balance. Back at Alkali Lake, the Blackbird descends through the dense fog, landing with cautious precision. Wolverine and Storm emerge, their apprehension palpable as they navigate the eerie surroundings. Logan grumbles about the thick fog obscuring their vision, but Aurora assures him that she can remedy that. With a determined focus, her eyes begin to radiate a brilliant white light, dispersing the fog and revealing the surreal sight before them. Small rocks, leaves, and droplets of water suspended in midair. Amidst the astonishment of this phenomenon, the two X-Men decide to split up to explore the area. As Logan ventures forth, he stumbles upon a startling discovery, a pair of ruby glasses suspended among the floating debris. Recognizing them as Scott's, he grasps them tightly, his heart heavy with concern for his friend. Before he can dwell any further, a piercing scream rends the air, prompting Logan to swiftly rush to Aurora's side. There, amidst the surreal tableau, he finds Storm kneeling beside Jean Grey's still yet miraculously alive body. The gravity of the situation weighs heavily upon them as they confront the inexplicable sight before them, unsure of what lies ahead. In the solemn confines of the school's infirmary, Logan and Professor X stand vigil at Jean's bedside. Xavier reveals to Logan the improbable survival of Jean, explaining that the overwhelming force of the collapsing water should have utterly destroyed her. Yet her innate powers manifested in a remarkable display, encasing her in a protective cocoon of telekinetic energy. Concern etched in his features, Logan inquires about Jean's prognosis. Xavier acknowledges the gravity of the situation, describing Jean as a Class 5 mutant, a designation reserved for individuals with incomprehensible potential. However, he underscores the inherent danger posed by Jean's powers, which reside in the depths of her unconscious mind. Xavier elucidates Jean's unique predicament, recounting how in her youth he constructed psychic barriers within her mind to partition her formidable abilities from her conscious awareness. Consequently, she developed a dual personality, the conscious Jean, whose powers remained under control, and a dormant persona that identified itself as the Phoenix, a primal, instinctual entity lying dormant within her psyche. As Logan absorbs this revelation, the weight of the situation becomes even more profound, with the fate of Jean Grey hanging precariously in the balance. He turns to Xavier with a probing question, inquiring whether Jean was aware of her dual nature. Xavier responds with uncertainty, acknowledging the ambiguity surrounding Jean's awareness. However, he emphasizes that their immediate concern lies in discerning whether the human lying before them is the Jean Grey they recognize or the volatile force of the Phoenix, fervently seeking liberation. Expressing his observation that Jean appears tranquil, Logan suggests that she seems at peace. However, Xavier offers a sobering insight, explaining that her apparent calmness is a result of his efforts to maintain it. He discloses his ongoing endeavor to reinstate these psychic barriers, endeavoring to confine the Phoenix within its mental prison once more. As Logan processes this revelation, the weight of their predicament becomes increasingly apparent, with the delicate balance between Jean's humanity and the unfathomable power of the Phoenix hanging precariously in the balance. Frustrated and incensed by the gravity of the situation, Logan directs his anger towards Xavier, questioning the ethics of his actions. He angrily demands to know what he's done to Jean, emphasizing the sanctity of her mind and identity. Xavier, attempting to justify his actions, implores Logan to understand the necessity of controlling Jean's formidable powers. However, Logan counters, warning of the repercussions of suppressing the primal instincts within her. He cautions that confining the beast may only serve to stoke its fury. In a moment of vulnerability, Xavier admits to the agonizing choice he was forced to make, defending his decisions as the lesser of two evils. However, Logan remains unconvinced, asserting that it appears Jean had no say in the matter at all. The tension between them reaches a breaking point as Xavier, feeling the weight of Logan's accusations, concedes defeat, refusing to justify his actions any further. With a sense of resignation, he returns the focus to Jean's mind, while Logan, consumed by anger and disillusionment, storms out of the room, leaving the weight of their conflict hanging heavy. In the somber atmosphere of the school's infirmary, Logan stands vigil by Jean's bedside, his concern etched across his features. Observing the intricate mental helmet attached to her head, he reaches out to tenderly touch her shoulder. Suddenly, Jean's hand darts forward, grasping his firmly, a sign of her returning consciousness. With a surge of telekinetic power, Jean effortlessly removes the helmet, her eyes fluttering open to meet Logan's gaze. He greets her with a soft utterance of her name, extending a warm welcome back. Jean, her voice filled with a hint of nostalgia, remarks on the irony of their current situation, reminiscent of their initial encounter when their roles were reversed. Logan, sensing the weight of the moment, gently inquires about her well-being. With a reassuring smile, Jean affirms that she's more than okay. Slowly, she rises from her prone position, her movements deliberate as she liberates herself from the array of medical instruments, signaling her return to strength and autonomy. As Jean playfully remarks about Logan making her blush, he jests back, asking if she's delving into his thoughts. Drawing closer to each other, they share a tender moment, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. However, the intimacy is short-lived as Jean's demeanor abruptly shifts, her expression taking on a forceful intensity. Without warning, inexplicable wounds begin to manifest on Logan's body, causing him excruciating pain. Jean's actions become increasingly aggressive, her telekinetic powers inflicting harm upon him. Struggling against the agony, Logan attempts to interfere, pleading for her to stop. With a sense of urgency, Logan realizes that this isn't the Jean he knows. As he tries to reason with her, Jean remains steadfast, insisting that her actions are indeed her own. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Logan retreats cautiously, urging Jean to exercise restraint and reminding her of the professor's warning about potential changes in her demeanor. The atmosphere crackles with tension as Logan grapples with the unsettling realization that Jean's newfound power may pose a grave threat to them all. Hearing Xavier's name, Jean turns cold and sarcastically says the professor would know, suggesting he's in their heads all the time. She tells Logan that Xavier tamed him, but Logan realizes that the professor was right and that the woman in front of him is not the Jean he knows. Now very worried about Cyclops' safety, Logan asks Jean, "Where's Scott?" As Jean briefly regains her usual composure, she expresses confusion, inquiring about her whereabouts. Logan swiftly informs her that she's back at the mansion and presses for information about Scott's whereabouts. However, Jean's confusion persists and she remains silent, her gaze drifting around the room. In an effort to jog her memory, Logan presents Scott's glasses, prompting Jean's recollection of her emergence from the water and her encounter with Scott. With a sense of distress, she closes her eyes, and an ominous tremor ripples through the room. Suddenly, the glasses shatter into fragments in Logan's hand, a manifestation of the turmoil brewing within Jean's mind. As the room quakes with intensity, Logan braces himself for the tumultuous events yet to unfold. Jean's expression remains trapped in a haze of confusion and disorientation. Logan, desperate to anchor her in reality, grasps her shoulders firmly, urging her to focus and maintain contact with him. Despite his pleas, Jean's inner turmoil intensifies, her mind besieged by the relentless struggle for control. In a moment of heartbreaking vulnerability, Jean's anguish spills forth in tears as she implores Logan to end her suffering before she inflicts harm upon others. Refusing to entertain the notion of Jean's demise, Logan reassures her that they can find a solution, urging her to seek help from Professor Xavier. However, Jean's inner conflict erupts once more, rejecting the prospect of redemption. With a surge of telekinetic force, she hurls Logan against the wall, rendering him unconscious. As Wolverine lies incapacitated, the formidable presence of the Phoenix asserts itself, shattering the confines of the room with effortless telekinetic power. With a single determined stride, the Phoenix, embodying Jean's darkest fears and desires, tears open the imposing steel door, poised to confront the world outside. As the dust settles, the weight of Jean's internal struggle hangs heavy in the air. As Storm and Professor X enter the room to find Wolverine still lying unconscious on the floor, Ororo immediately attends to Logan, gently rousing him from his stupor. Concern etched on her features, she inquires about what transpired, but Logan's focus remains fixated on the whereabouts of Jean. With a sinking feeling of dread, Xavier confronts Logan, his worst fears looming large. Logan recounts his harrowing suspicion that Jean may have been responsible for Scott's disappearance, a revelation that sends shockwaves through the room. Storm protests the notion, refusing to accept such a grim possibility. Furious and distraught, Xavier admonishes Logan, his warnings echoing in the aftermath of this dire turn of events. Desperate to ascertain Jean's whereabouts, Xavier attempts to reach out to her telepathically, only to encounter formidable resistance. Her strength and resolve are staggering, casting a shadow of uncertainty over their hopes of finding her in time. Xavier solemnly acknowledges the grim reality that they may be facing a threat beyond their control. With Jean's powers spiraling out of bounds, the stakes have never been higher, leaving them to confront the chilling possibility that it may already be too late to save her. As the car comes to a halt outside the Grey residence, the trio of X-Men emerges, accompanied by a tense aura of apprehension. Xavier, bearing a solemn expression, instructs Logan and Ororo to remain outside while he confronts Jean alone, recognizing the delicate nature of their situation. Their arrival, however, is met with an unexpected and mutual understanding. Magneto extends an invitation to proceed inside, signaling a tentative truce as they venture toward the heart of the Grey residence, their shared purpose overshadowed by the looming specter of uncertainty and apprehension. Outside, the X-Men and the Brotherhood watch as the White Gate shuts itself. Logan says he's going in, but Ororo stops him, reminding him that the Professor told them to wait outside. As the tension outside the Grey residence escalates, Logan's resolve crystallizes into action, his instincts urging him to confront the looming threat head-on. With a resolute snick, his adamantium claws extend. He extends his adamantium claws. In response, Juggernaut, embodying brute strength, dons his imposing helmet, a harbinger of the impending clash. With thundering footsteps reverberating through the air, the two adversaries charge towards each other, their paths converging in a collision course of raw power. Despite Logan's ferocious tenacity, Juggernaut asserts his overwhelming might, effortlessly overpowering Wolverine and sending him crashing to the ground. With a forceful grasp, Juggernaut seizes Logan and hurls him through the front window of the residence, shattering glass and splintering wood. Storm takes to the skies, her mastery over the elements poised to tip the scales of battle. Logan crashes into the dining table, splintering its sturdy frame. Juggernaut's relentless assault against Wolverine continues unabated, each blow and strike propelling Logan through the house with unyielding force. Furniture shatters, walls crumble, and the once tranquil surroundings are reduced to a scene of devastation. Despite Wolverine's efforts to retaliate, his adamantium claws find purchase against Juggernaut's formidable defenses, inflicting a fleeting distraction but failing to stem the tide of the Juggernaut's onslaught. Amidst the chaos, Callisto adds her own formidable prowess to the fray, further complicating the X-Men's desperate struggle to fend off the relentless assault. Wolverine resorts to utilizing his claws as makeshift anchors, driving them into the ceiling and leveraging their grip to propel himself through the chaotic environment. Despite the relentless force of Jean's telekinetic hold, Logan persists, each pull a testament to his unwavering resolve. Struggling against the invisible force that binds him, Wolverine navigates through the turmoil, inching closer to the living room where the heart of the conflict unfolds. With Herculean effort, he reaches the door, wrenching it open just in time to witness the harrowing spectacle unfolding within. He stands witness to the unimaginable, as Charles Xavier's form is ensnared by the tumultuous currents of Jean's unleashed power. Helplessly rooted to their respective positions, Logan and Eric watch in disbelief as Jean, consumed by the unfathomable depths of her abilities, unleashes her formidable powers upon her former mentor. A brief, fleeting moment of eerie silence descends upon the chaos, enveloping Jean and Xavier in a surreal stillness that seems to defy the chaos raging around them. In this suspended moment, time appears to slow to a crawl, granting them a precious few moments of poignant clarity amidst the turmoil. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Xavier offers his final words to Jean, his voice imbued with a sense of solemn resignation as he implores her to resist the overwhelming power threatening to consume her. With a gentle smile etched upon his features, he beseeches her to maintain control, his words carrying the weight of a final farewell. Then, in a flash of incomprehensible devastation, the unthinkable unfolds before their eyes. Xavier's form erupts in a blinding explosion of light and energy, his physical presence dissipating into the ether before their astonished gaze. Witnessing the unimaginable spectacle, Wolverine and Magneto stand in stunned disbelief, their hearts heavy with the realization that they have borne witness to the loss of a beloved mentor and friend. Following Magneto and Jean's departure, Logan and Aurora rush into what was once the living room, only to discover an empty wheelchair. With tears in their eyes and heavy breaths, they exchange glances, realizing their revered mentor is no more. Logan collapses to his knees, his cries of "no" echoing through the room, rendered helpless by the loss. Aurora succumbs to tears, collapsing onto his back, embracing him. The two formidable X-Men are left alone amidst the wreckage of the house, facing an empty wheelchair, their sobs filling the silence. In Xavier's mansion the following day, Xavier's study holds the wheelchair, now devoid of its usual occupant. Outside in the front yard, Aurora leads a memorial service for Charles Xavier, attended by all his students. Logan stands apart from the crowd, listening from a distance, solitary as ever. Rogue gazes at him while Aurora proceeds with her eulogy. At the end, Logan walks away, with all others present standing up. One walks to his memorial and puts a flower on it. Disheartened by her ongoing struggle to make physical contact with her boyfriend, Rogue gathers her belongings and exits her room. As she makes her way up, she encounters Logan, who offers her a ride. Politely declining, she braces herself for his potential attempt to dissuade her. However, instead of deterring her, Logan inquires about her destination. Perceiving his inquiry as a possible intervention, she begins to express her frustration, asserting that he couldn't possibly understand the fear of her own abilities, the fear of forming intimate connections. To her surprise, Logan counters, affirming that he does comprehend. She continues, articulating her desire to experience the sensation of touching others, longing for the warmth of a hug, the familiarity of a handshake, or the intimacy of a kiss. Logan expresses his hope that Rogue isn't making her decision for the sake of a boy. She stays silent, uncertain of how to respond. He reassures her that if she's truly set on leaving, then she has his blessing, as long as she's certain that it's what she truly wants. Confused by this unexpected response, Rogue questions whether he's supposed to instruct her to return upstairs and unpack. Logan clarifies he's not in a paternal role, he's her friend. He advises Rogue to ponder his words. She corrects him, reminding him that her name is Marie. With that, he walks away, and she continues on her journey out. Back at the school, Wolverine, Storm, Beast, Iceman, and Kitty convene to discuss the future of the institution. Hank reflects that Professor Xavier founded the school and suggests that perhaps it should conclude with his passing. He informs Bobby that they'll need to inform the students that they must depart, but Bobby counters, noting that many of them have no other place to call home. He advocates for fighting to preserve the school. Before anyone can respond, a newcomer enters the room. It's Warren Worthington III, the mutant known as Angel. He apologizes for arriving at an inopportune moment, but explains that he was informed that this is a haven for mutants. Beast sorrowfully informs him that it once was, but Aurora interjects, asserting that it still is. She assures Warren that they will arrange accommodation for him, and instructs Hank to inform the students that the school will remain open, much to Iceman's joy. Outside, Logan makes his way to Xavier's memorial. Suddenly, Jean's voice starts whispering his name repeatedly in his head. Startled, he turns around, searching for the source, but the voice only grows louder. He calls out her name, and images of the forest flood his mind alongside her voice. Overwhelmed, Logan collapses to his knees, clutching his stomach in anguish as Jean's voice persists. Then, as suddenly as it began, the voice ceases, and Logan gazes up at Xavier's visage sculpted in the memorial. Without delay, he departs to make preparations. Storm intercepts him, questioning his destination and informing him that Jean is gone. She won't return. Logan refutes this, insisting that Storm doesn't know for certain, but Aurora reminds him that Jean is responsible for the professor's death. Wolverine maintains that it wasn't Jean. The Jean he knows still exists within her. Storm challenges him to confront the truth and let go of Jean, suggesting that his reluctance stems from his love for her. She asserts that Jean made her decision and now it's time for them to make theirs. If he stands with them, she declares, then he should not be here. With her piece said, Storm exits the room. However, Wolverine chooses not to heed her words and departs the mansion on his motorcycle. Wolverine navigates through the forest where the Brotherhood is encamped, relying on his heightened senses to guide him. Using his acute sense of smell, he tracks down their exact location. Once he pinpoints a specific direction, he extends his claws and begins to sprint, only to be abruptly halted by two large spikes piercing his shoulders. Despite the injury, he swiftly rises to his feet to confront his assailant, a member of the Brotherhood known as Spike, poised for another attack. Logan retreats, evading a barrage of spikes hurled at him with remarkable agility. Nearby, another Brotherhood member with enhanced hearing detects the commotion and recognizes that trouble is afoot. Alongside several other mutants, he rushes to aid Spike. Spike relentlessly pursues Logan, continuing to launch projectiles at him. Logan seeks temporary refuge behind a tree, taking a moment to extract the spike embedded in his shoulder using his claws. He bides his time, anticipating Spike's next assault, then swiftly emerges from hiding, redirecting one of Spike's projectiles back at him with a precise strike of his claws. The attack connects, causing Spike to stumble and fall. However, Logan remains vigilant, aware of the imminent arrival of more mutants, sensing their approach through his heightened instincts. With urgency, Wolverine ascends the tree and lies in wait, poised for action. As the Brotherhood mutants draw near, he descends upon them with ferocious speed, catching them off guard and swiftly incapacitating them in a frenzied rage, his claws slashing through the defenses one by one. Despite Spike's attempts to retaliate, Wolverine deflects his projectiles with expert precision, closing the distance between them with each step. In a climactic confrontation, both mutants launch themselves at each other, resulting in a collision that leaves them both wounded. Wolverine rises to his feet, enduring the pain of the spikes embedded in his stomach, yet emerging victorious as Spike bears the brunt of his slashing claws. With determination, Wolverine retracts his claws and removes the spikes from his body before pressing on towards the Brotherhood's camp, undeterred by his injuries. A speech is being given by Magneto to the others in the camp. Logan arrives in the middle and steals a cloak from a tent to cover himself. Magneto tells his followers that humans wish to cure them, but he says that mutants are the cure. Everyone cheers and Magneto goes on, saying that they are the cure for that imperfect condition called Homo sapiens. Humans have their weapons, but mutants have theirs, he says as he looks at Phoenix. They'll strike with a vengeance and a fury this world has never witnessed, and if any mutants stand in their way, then they will use the cure against them. Logan stands in the crowd and listens as Magneto details his plan. They will go to Alcatraz Island, take control of the cure and destroy its source, and then nothing can stop them. As Phoenix catches sight of Wolverine amidst the crowd, he senses her gaze upon him and quickly moves to distance himself from the camp. Observing her departure, he calls out her name, prompting her to turn toward him. However, before she can respond, Magneto intervenes, hurling Logan forcefully into a nearby tree, inflicting injury upon him. Magneto confronts Wolverine, taunting him with the declaration that he can discern the distinctive scent of adamantium from a considerable distance. Logan asserts that he hasn't come to engage in combat with Magneto, he's there for Jean. Eric questions whether Wolverine believes he's holding Jean against her will, but when Logan remains silent, Eric asserts that Jean is present of her own volition. Exerting his magnetic powers, Eric suspends Wolverine in the air, prompting Logan to warn him about underestimating Jean's capabilities. Magneto retorts that he's well aware, having witnessed the devastation she wrought upon Charles. Undeterred, Wolverine insists he won't depart without Jean, but Magneto disagrees, using his powers to forcefully propel Logan far into the distance. Wolverine's trajectory is halted only when he collides with a towering tree, leaving him battered and wounded on the ground below. Frantically barging into the school, Wolverine urgently calls out for Storm. Rushing to his side, she inquires about his abrupt return. With palpable urgency, he divulges that he encountered Jean alongside Magneto, but they're on the move, with their destination known to him. Beast joins them, seeking confirmation from Logan about his sighting of Magneto. Logan affirms this, stressing the immediate need to act before the Brotherhood launches an attack on Alcatraz. Hank raises concerns about the government's military presence on the island, but Wolverine remains adamant that it won't be sufficient to deter Magneto. Hastening their preparations, Angel inadvertently overhears their conversation, realizing his father's peril and the urgent need for assistance. A few minutes later, Beast and Wolverine stand clad in uniforms within the mansion's tunnels. Wolverine stresses to Hank the dire consequences if Magneto obtains the cure, asserting that he would become an unstoppable force. Hank inquires about the size of Magneto's forces, prompting Logan to reveal that he commands an entire army. As they rendezvous with Storm, Iceman, Kitty, and Colossus, Bobby voices concern over their limited numbers. Wolverine pauses, addressing the young students directly. He acknowledges their outnumbered status, the losses they have suffered with Scott and the Professor, but he refuses to allow their legacy to perish. With resolve, he declares that they must confront the threat now or risk the annihilation of everything their mentors fought to uphold. Iceman nods in solidarity. Wolverine asserts their unity, proclaiming them all as X-Men. Bobby shares a glance with Kitty and Peter, receiving affirmations of readiness from both. He then reaffirms their commitment to Logan, declaring their readiness for the impending battle. With resolve, the X-Men march towards the awaiting Blackbird, prepared for the most significant confrontation of their lives. During the journey, Wolverine confides in Storm that the young recruits are prepared for the upcoming struggle. She acknowledges their readiness but questions whether he himself is prepared for what lies ahead. Without a definitive answer, they proceed to board the Blackbird, departing for San Francisco. In the rear of the aircraft, the trio of young mutants sit in silence, their apprehension palpable yet tempered by determination. Though fearful, they are resolute in their readiness to face whatever challenges await them. As the Blackbird hurtles toward the unfolding chaos at breakneck speed, the X-Men are awestruck by the sight of the Golden Gate Bridge and the escalating conflict below. It's far more dire than they had ever anticipated. Callisto senses an approaching presence, and as the Blackbird touches down on the rooftop, Storm descends from the heavens, unleashing bolts of lightning ground to evade danger before re-emerging unscathed. Colossus joins them, his metallic form providing formidable protection as he lands. Wolverine follows, using his claws to slow his descent by scratching against the walls. As Storm touches down beside him, Wolverine urges the humans to seek safety and secure the doors. Turning to his fellow X-Men, he commands them to stand together and form a unified front. In an instant, the 6 mutants align themselves in front of the Brotherhood, ready to defend against the onslaught, steeling themselves for the battle of their lives. Wolverine lashes out, slicing through a nearby light pole with his adamantium claws, sending it crashing down into the charging Brotherhood. Claiming several of their ranks, the skirmish erupts into full-blown combat, with Wolverine and Beast unleashing their ferocious animalistic assaults upon the advancing Brotherhood members. With lightning speed and unrelenting fury, they swiftly incapacitate their adversaries, paving the way for the X-Men's defense. From his elevated position on the hill, Magneto issues a chilling command to Juggernaut: infiltrate the building, locate the boy, and eliminate him without hesitation. With a sinister grin, Juggernaut easily accepts the task, expressing his anticipation for the deed ahead as he barrels toward the structure. Observing Juggernaut's charge, Wolverine swiftly comprehends the imminent threat, while Beast recognizes the urgency of the situation. Without hesitation, Kitty springs into action, effortlessly phasing through any obstacle obstructing her path. In the midst of the chaos, Wolverine finds himself confronted by a formidable adversary named Starfish, whose mutant ability allows him to regenerate his organs with astonishing speed. Logan attempts to employ his tried-and-true method of slashing his opponent, only to find his efforts futile as Starfish swiftly regenerates his severed limbs and retaliates with relentless strikes whenever Wolverine lowers his guard. Frustrated by his inability to gain the upper hand, Logan resorts to a more direct approach, delivering a swift and decisive kick to Starfish's groin, causing the mutant to crumple to the ground in pain. With a smirk of satisfaction, Logan quips, "Grow those back," before turning his attention to the next opponent, undeterred by the formidable challenges that lay ahead. Amidst the chaos of battle, both Beast and Wolverine succumb to berserker rages, unleashing their primal fury upon the ranks of the Brotherhood, swiftly incapacitating multiple adversaries with relentless ferocity. In the midst of the carnage, Wolverine jests to Beast about his diplomatic demeanor, expressing surprise at his current state. Hank begins to offer a response, suggesting that there comes a time when all men must, but his sentence is abruptly interrupted as he resumes pummeling more mutants with unrestrained vigor. With a frustrated exclamation, he halts mid-sentence and simply shouts to Logan, "Oh, you get the point," before diving back into the fray with renewed intensity. As a flaming car is launched towards them, Wolverine urgently shouts to his fellow X-Men, telling them to seek shelter from the impending onslaught. Seeking refuge behind a sturdy column, Storm narrowly avoids being struck by the flaming debris raining down around them. She gestures for Wolverine and their comrades to join her in seeking better cover. Amidst the chaos, they spot one of the cure guns lying nearby, a potent symbol of the tumultuous events unfolding. Surveying the apocalyptic scene surrounding them, the X-Men find themselves at a pivotal juncture, faced with a crucial decision. Wolverine invokes Storm's earlier counsel from their Danger Room session, reminding her of the importance of teamwork. In response, Storm recalls his own words, emphasizing the value of a proactive approach. The best defense is indeed a good offense. In this moment of uncertainty and peril, the X-Men must reconcile their differing philosophies and unite in a common purpose, drawing strength from their collective resolve to confront the challenges ahead. Logan turns to Bobby and asks him if he thinks that he can take down his old friend Pyro. Bobby nods and runs out of the cover, using his ice powers to freeze one of the flying cars in the air, turning off the flames before it explodes. Acknowledging the need for cover, Wolverine communicates his intentions to Storm, who swiftly comprehends his request. With a nod of understanding, she harnesses the power of the elements, conjuring a thick fog that shrouds the battlefield in obscurity. Meanwhile, atop the hill, Magneto and Phoenix find themselves at a disadvantage as they search for their adversaries amidst the swirling fog. Hindered by this, their attempts to locate the remaining X-Men are thwarted. Through the fog, Wolverine spotted Magneto and pointed him at Colossus. Colossus, just like in the Danger Room, grabbed Wolverine and spun him around, throwing him at Magneto. However, it failed as Magneto saw Wolverine and used his powers to stop Logan. Eric flips Logan on his back, telling him he never learns. Logan falls to the ground and slides on his stomach, stopping right before Magneto's legs. A moment later, Beast leaps at Magneto from behind and injects him with the cure that they took from the gun. Suddenly, Magneto drops to his knees, realizing he's now human, and falls back. As he rolls on the ground, he tells Jean that the other humans and X-Men wish them well. "Jean, it's over," Logan declares to his beloved, the final standing of the Brotherhood. The soldiers exploit the ensuing science to fire cure guns at her. Logan urgently implores them to stop, but it's too late. Jean intercepts the shots telekinetically and pivots, indicating that the situation is not yet resolved. Wolverine cries no as Phoenix ascends into the air and causes all the light poles to explode. Once more, a telekinetic storm begins to brew. Beast urgently shouts for everyone to evacuate the building, and in a panic, they all flee. Kitty and Leech manage to exit the building and encounter Iceman, and together they make their escape. Observing Phoenix's chaotic display, Eric whispers, "What have I done?" Terrified, he then joins the others in their rush toward the bridge. Storm rushes toward Wolverine, who confides in her that he's the sole individual capable of halting Phoenix. He instructs her to ensure everyone's safety and evacuate, prompting her to take flight. Despite his pleas to Jean, she remains unresponsive. Amidst the devastation surrounding them, Logan once more calls out Jean's name, expressing his belief that she remains someone within Phoenix entity. Determined, he begins advancing towards Phoenix, yet she restrains him with her formidable powers. Despite the resistance, he persists in his slow approach. With only a short distance separating them, Phoenix perched atop the hill and Wolverine slightly below, he perseveres, utilizing his claws to anchor himself to the ground and propel forward. After an arduous journey, he finally reaches her and stands before Phoenix. Astonished by his determination to reach her, Phoenix speaks for the first time since setting foot on Alcatraz Island, asking Logan if he's truly willing to sacrifice himself for them. "No," he responds resolutely, "not for them, for you." At these words, the essence of Jean Grey briefly resurfaces within Phoenix, tearfully pleading with him to save her. Professing his love, Logan fulfills what he knows he must do, and what she asked of him previously in the infirmary. He extends his claws into her abdomen, ending the life of the woman he adores. In her final moments, Jean gazes at him silently, a smile gracing her lips. It's over. Collapsing into his arms, he weeps. The following day, in a separate room, Logan observes the president delivering a televised speech from the White House. He introduces Dr. Hank McCoy as the new ambassador to the United Nations. As the president shakes Hank's hand, Logan silently congratulates him, thinking, "Way to go, furball." Exiting the room, he gazes upon the school now entrusted to him and Storm for its leadership. The Wolverine. After 2006, Logan retreated to the Canadian wilderness, where he also reclaimed the memories he lost in 1979. Residing in seclusion amidst the forest, he only ventures into town when necessary for supplies. Plagued with haunting guilt over Jean Grey's demise and tormented by memories of past wars and deaths, Logan endeavors once more to embrace a peaceful existence, striving to forsake his tumultuous life of violence. Following a skirmish in a bar, Yukio tracks him down and escorts him to Japan to reunite with Yashida, the man he had rescued from the Nagasaki bombing in 1945, now the head of the Yashida Corporation. Upon meeting him, Logan discovers that the elder man desires to reciprocate by transferring Logan's immortality to himself, as he is afflicted with cancer. Despite Yashida's plea, Logan declines the offer. He then encounters his son, Shingen Yashida, and his granddaughter, Mariko Yashida. In a pivotal moment, Logan saves Mariko's life, intervening during her attempted suicide. That night, while Logan dreams of Jean, Viper injects a robotic parasite into his body, affecting his healing ability. During the night, Yukio informs him of Yashida's death. The following morning, Logan attends Yashida's funeral, where he rescues Mariko from Yakuza assassins, aided by Kenichi Harada. Despite his efforts, Logan sustains multiple gunshot wounds and realizes that his healing abilities are not functioning as rapidly as before. After ensuring Mariko's safety, Wolverine boards a bullet train with her, encountering further Yakuza assassins whom he dispatches before they seek refuge in a nearby hotel. Standing watch in the rain while Mariko sleeps, Wolverine succumbs to his injuries, experiencing a hallucination of Jean. Upon regaining consciousness, he discovers Mariko seeking assistance from the motel owner's grandson, a veterinarian, to tend to his wounds and administer stitches. Logan and Mariko seek refuge in Yashida's house in southern Japan, where their bond deepens and Logan gradually opens up about pivotal moments from his past, including his experiences in war and his love for Jean. Meanwhile, Yukio experiences a chilling vision of Logan's demise, depicted with blood and his heart in his hand, lifeless. Despite her attempts to warn him, tragedy strikes as Mariko falls into the clutches of the Yakuza. Their true employer is revealed to be none other than Mariko's fiancé, the corrupt Chief of Justice, Noburo Mori. Logan and Yukio confront Noburo at his opulent apartment, where he reveals that Shingen orchestrated the kidnapping before Logan intervened, sending Noburo plummeting into a pool. Wolverine and Yukio reach Yashida's residence in Tokyo, where Wolverine discovers the parasite attached to his heart. As he begins to extract it, Shingen enters, prompting Yukio to defend Wolverine. Despite the perilous procedure, Wolverine succumbs, only to have his healing ability restored upon resurrection. In a vengeful act, he dispatches Shingen. Following this, Yukio and Wolverine trail Harada and Viper to the Yashida Research Center in northern Japan in search of Mariko. Here, Wolverine faces off against Harada and the Yashida family's ninja clan in a fierce battle for survival. Placed in a machine devised by Viper, Wolverine learns of her scheme to extract his immortality. Viper introduces her associate, the Silver Samurai, who severs Wolverine's claws. Meanwhile, Mariko eludes Harada and maneuvers the machine containing Logan into the path of the Silver Samurai's strike, shattering it and liberating him. As the Silver Samurai, revealed as Yashida, drills through Wolverine's adamantium claws to extract his immortality, Mariko impales him just as Wolverine's bone claws begin to regenerate. Yashida delivers a final blow to Wolverine before meeting his demise. Overwhelmed, Wolverine succumbs, experiencing one last hallucination of Jean, finally finding closure from her death. Logan bids farewell to Mariko, now appointed CEO of the Yashida Corporation by her late grandfather's decree. He then boards a plane alongside Yukio, who reassures him of her continued role as his bodyguard. As they embark on their journey, Yukio reminds Wolverine that they are free to go wherever they please. With their destination unknown, they depart to explore new horizons together. 2 years later, in 2015, Logan finds himself at an airport where he's approached by Magneto and Charles Xavier regarding a looming threat that threatens the existence of all mutants. At some point between 2015 and 2023, Logan's bone claws are once again coated in adamantium, presumably with the assistance of Magneto. X-Men: Days of Future Past. 8 years later, Wolverine, Storm, Professor X, and Magneto converge in China to reunite with their fellow Free Mutants. Their objective: to send Wolverine back to 1973 and prevent Mystique from assassinating Bolivar Trask, an event that catalyzed the Sentinel program. Due to his regenerative abilities, Wolverine is the sole candidate capable of enduring the physical and mental rigors of time travel. Utilizing Shadowcat's powers, they transport Wolverine's consciousness into his younger body, awakening him in 1973 amidst a confrontation with armed assailants. Reacting swiftly, Wolverine dispatches his attackers before embarking on his mission to locate Professor X. Upon arriving at the X-Mansion, Wolverine has a tense encounter with Hank McCoy. Eventually, Wolverine finds Charles and implores him for assistance, to which Charles reluctantly acquiesces. Their objective is to liberate Magneto from prison for the alleged assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The trio first seek out Peter Maximoff's aid. Together, they infiltrate the Pentagon, with Charles, Wolverine, Quicksilver, and Hank successfully navigating the facility and securing Eric's release. While in pursuit of Mystique, Wolverine's encounter with William Stryker triggers traumatic flashbacks. In 2023, Wolverine experiences violent tremors, accidentally injuring Shadowcat with his claws. Back in 1973, he initially struggles to comprehend his purpose and the identity of the young Charles Xavier. However, as Charles grapples with despair over his inability to locate Mystique using Cerebro, Wolverine facilitates communication between the two Charleses, acting as a bridge between their mind. The future Charles Xavier encourages his past self not to lose hope, ultimately empowering him to regain control and successfully utilize Cerebro once more. As Wolverine, Professor X, and Hank attend the unveiling of the Sentinels in search of Mystique, chaos erupts as the Sentinels turn hostile toward the public. In a bid to thwart their rampage, Magneto employs his powers to lift an entire stadium, encircling the White House and deploying all but one Sentinel to pursue Wolverine and Beast. Engaging the Sentinel, Wolverine finds himself overpowered when Magneto reinforces it with steel, incapacitating him before submerging him in a nearby river. Despite his incapacitation, Wolverine's actions catalyze a chain of events that culminate in the past Charles Xavier successfully altering the future. In 2023, just as the Sentinels prepare to unleash devastation upon the X-Men, Shadowcat severs the connection, causing Wolverine's alterations to the timeline to take effect, resulting in the disappearance of the impending threat. Having successfully reshaped the timeline, Wolverine regains consciousness at the Xavier Institute in the altered future, precisely at the moment he was initially sent back into time. To his astonishment, he discovers Storm, Shadowcat, Rogue, Iceman, Colossus, Beast, Professor X, and to his shock, Cyclops and Jean Grey all alive once again. Seeking clarity, Wolverine approaches Professor X and admits to having just completed his journey through time, devoid of any recollection of the events in the new timeline. Delighted, Professor X informs him that they have much to discuss and catch up on, setting the stage for a new chapter in their shared history. Revised timeline. Changing the past. In 1973, after a night with the woman he's meant to protect, Wolverine's consciousness is overridden by his future self's mind, a result of Shadowcat's powers aimed at altering the future. In the altered timeline, back in the past, Wolverine remains submerged at the river's bottom until Mystique, disguised as Major William Stryker, orchestrates his rescue for unknown reasons, subsequently taking custody of him. Capture and escape. Through undisclosed methods, Wolverine is apprehended and subjected to the Weapon X program by the genuine Stryker at Alkali Lake, undergoing the process of having an adamantium skeleton bonded to his body. During this process, he is outfitted with a harness, headgear, and implanted cords, aimed at indoctrinating him into a controllable weapon for Stryker's purposes. However, the brainwashing backfires, plunging Wolverine into a feral and primal state, rendering him instinctually aggressive and berserk. As Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Nightcrawler embark on a mission to rescue their captured comrades from Stryker's facility, Jean discovers Wolverine's containment unit and telepathically discerns his condition. In an attempt to aid their escape, she employs her telekinesis to unlock the unit, inadvertently triggering a violent rampage from the seemingly mindless mutant. The rampage results in the merciless slaughter of numerous personnel within the facility. Upon reaching the exit, Cyclops, Jean, and Nightcrawler find themselves face to face with Wolverine. Tensions escalate, and it appears a confrontation between Wolverine and Cyclops is imminent. However, Jean intervenes, using her telepathic abilities to communicate with Wolverine and offer her assistance. Removing his helmet, Jean places her hands on Wolverine's head and initiates the process of partially restoring his memories. As fragments of his past flood back, Wolverine remembers his true identity, Logan. Without uttering a word, he sheds the additional gear of the Weapon X program and abruptly departs into the wilderness, his actions speaking volumes about his desire for freedom and independence. Joining the X-Men. Over the course of the next 4 decades, Logan embarks on a tumultuous journey, initially working as an assassin before retiring and transitioning into a career as a cage fighter, eventually falling victim to addiction to barbiturates. His path takes a transformative turn when Professor X locates him and extends a helping hand, leading Logan to undergo a profound personal reformation under the care of the X-Men. Embracing a newfound sense of purpose, Logan joins the ranks of the X-Men and accompanies them on various missions, including one to New York City. Prior to the events of 2023, he assumes the role of a history teacher at Xavier's school, contributing his knowledge and experience to the education and guidance of future generations of mutants. In 2023, the consciousness of Logan from the original timeline awakens within his body in the altered timeline. As he emerges from his room, he's greeted by the presence of friends who had perished in the original timeline, all alive and well at the school, signaling the success of the mission and the correction of the timeline. Making his way to Professor X's office, Logan briefly converses with him about the events that transpired, expressing the need to catch up on the events of the past 50 years. Westchester Incident. In 2028, Charles Xavier is afflicted with Alzheimer's disease, leading to a catastrophic seizure that results in the injury of 600 individuals and the tragic loss of several members of the X-Men. Recognizing the danger posed by Charles's deteriorating condition, Logan takes it upon himself to transport Charles to a remote location in Mexico near the US border, where they can find solace and safety away from populated areas. Understanding the challenges of caring for Charles alone, Logan enlists the help of Caliban, relying on his assistance to provide the necessary care and support for Charles during this tumultuous time. Together, they embark on a journey of companionship and resilience, navigating the complexities of Charles's illness while striving to ensure his well-being and protection. Death. In 2029, Logan has adopted the guise of James Howlett and works as a limo driver, ferrying passengers ranging from businessmen to high schoolers. His primary goal is to amass enough funds to purchase a boat, enabling him to escape with Charles and Caliban to the safety of the sea, where Charles's seizures won't pose a threat to others. One fateful day, Logan is approached by Gabriella, a nurse affiliated with Transigen, who seeks his assistance in escorting her and an 11-year-old girl named Laura to a sanctuary known as Eden in North Dakota. Soon after, he encounters Donald Pierce, Transigen's formidable chief of security, who offers him a job to locate Gabriella and Laura. Refusing Pierce's offer, Logan remains steadfast in his resolve to protect the innocent. After much deliberation, Logan reluctantly agrees to undertake Gabriella's job, only to tragically discover her lifeless body upon his return home. Determined to ensure Charles's safety, Logan prepares to depart with him when Donald Pierce reemerges, prompting a scuffle that leaves Logan unconscious. Laura, who had covertly stowed away in his vehicle, intervenes, rendering Pierce incapacitated. Recognizing the urgency of their situation, Logan entrusts Caliban with the task of disposing of Pierce, while he tends to Charles. However, their respite is short-lived as Pierce returns with his cybernetically enhanced enforcers, the Reavers, leading to Caliban's capture. Logan and Laura narrowly evade the Reavers, setting out on a perilous journey to escape their pursuers. Subsequently, Logan and Charles uncover the truth about Transigen's sinister agenda through a video found on Gabriella's phone. It's revealed that Transigen was conducting the X-23 project, breeding mutant children with DNA samples obtained from various mutants, including Logan himself. Gabriella had aided in the escape of several mutant children from the Transigen compound, including Laura, who was revealed to be Logan's daughter, genetically, conceived using his DNA obtained during his time at Alkali Lake in 1983. As the group settles in a hotel in Oklahoma City, Logan uncovers the devastating truth that Eden is merely a fictional place mentioned in an X-Men comic book Laura had brought with her. Meanwhile, the Reavers track down their location, leading to a chaotic confrontation. Xavier's seizure paralyzes everyone in the hotel with a powerful psychic blast, leaving Logan to navigate through the frozen chaos. Amidst the turmoil, Logan ascends through the hotel, dispatching numerous Reavers to reach Xavier's side. He administers a suppressant to quell Xavier's powers, allowing them to flee the city. However, the harrowing ordeal leaves a trail of destruction, with hundreds injured and dozens dead. Seeking refuge, the trio finds sanctuary with the Munson family, who offer them hospitality after a chance encounter on the highway. While assisting the Munsons with a burst pipe on their property, Logan confronts and repels harassers, demonstrating his protective instincts. Tragically, their respite is shattered when X-24, a feral clone of Wolverine, launches a brutal attack. Xavier is fatally wounded, and X-24 slaughters the Munsons, leaving Laura captured and Will mortally wounded. Logan returns to find Xavier on the brink of death, with his final moments marked by profound loss and sorrow. In a desperate bid to confront X-24, Logan engages in a fierce battle, but despite his efforts, he's unable to overcome the clone's savage onslaught. In a selfless act, Caliban sacrifices himself by detonating grenades to allow Laura and Logan to escape, while Will intervenes and fatally impales X-24 with his car. As they flee, Logan succumbs to exhaustion and emotional turmoil, awakening in a clinic where a doctor urges him to seek treatment for his deteriorating condition. Stubbornly refusing assistance, Logan remains adamant in his resolve to face his fate alone. Meanwhile, Laura persuades Logan to accompany her to Eden, despite his skepticism about its existence. Along the journey, tensions rise, culminating in a heated argument before Logan reluctantly agrees to indulge Laura's desire to seek out Eden. Eventually, exhaustion overtakes Logan, and Laura takes the reins, driving them to their destination. Despite Logan's initial skepticism, the journey to Eden symbolizes a newfound sense of hope and purpose, as they embark on a quest for redemption and salvation in a world filled with uncertainty and danger. At Eden, Logan and Laura find refuge among other Transigen escapees led by Richter. As Logan battles with his inner demons in a restless slumber, Laura shares her own nightmares with him, acknowledging the cruelty of humanity. In a poignant moment, Logan discovers a bullet made of adamantium lodged in Laura's possession, realizing it's the same material implanted in them, likely causing their deterioration. Driven by a sense of responsibility, Logan entrusts Laura with the bullet, symbolizing his commitment to her safety. The following day, the children, including Laura, playfully groom Logan's beard, evoking laughter and camaraderie. Despite his initial gruffness, Logan's bond with the children deepens as he learns of their plan to seek refuge across the Canadian border. However, their journey is interrupted when the Reavers capture the children, prompting Logan to make a fateful decision. Consumed by desperation, he administers a serum that restores his healing factor, enabling him to confront the Reavers and rescue the children. In a climactic showdown, Logan confronts Xander Rice, the architect of the Transigen project, and learns of the sinister plot to exterminate mutants using a lethal virus. In a final act of defiance, Logan dispatches Rice before facing off against X-24, the ruthless clone of himself. With the aid of Richter's seismic powers, Logan and Laura engage in a brutal battle, culminating in a decisive victory over their adversaries. Despite the toll exacted by the serum's side effects, Logan's sacrifice ensures the children's survival, reaffirming his legacy as a protector and a hero. In a tragic turn of events, X-24 delivers a fatal blow to Logan, impaling him on a tree stump. With his last ounce of strength, Logan imparts his final words of wisdom to Laura, urging her not to succumb to the weaponization Transigen intended for her. As Logan draws his last breath, he passes away in Laura's embrace, leaving behind a legacy of courage and sacrifice. Grieving the loss of their protector, Laura and the children honor Logan's memory by burying him in Canada, his birthplace. Laura pays tribute to Logan's spirit by quoting lines from the film Shane as she lays him to rest. As they bid farewell to Logan, Richter reminds the children of the necessity to keep moving forward in their quest for safety. With heavy hearts, Laura joins Richter and the children, their journey continuing as they strive to build a better future for themselves and their kind. In a poignant gesture, Laura adjusts the cross on Logan's grave, forming an X to commemorate his legacy as an X-Men and the Wolverine. His sacrifice ensures the survival of the mutant race, paving the way for a new era of hope and resilience. Deadpool kills alternate Weapon 11. News from Deadpool. In a bold move, the contemporary Deadpool ventures into the past to the 3 Mile Island incident, where he confronts and eliminates the alternate version of himself created by William Stryker. After dispatching this alternate Deadpool, Deadpool reaches out to Wolverine, urging him to reconsider his retirement and return to the battle if needed. Though initially bewildered by the unexpected encounter, Wolverine ultimately agrees to Deadpool's cryptic request, setting the stage for potential future exploits. Meet Charles Francis Xavier, Professor X to most, a mutant with a mind so powerful it's like Wi-Fi for thoughts. He's the founder and leader of the X-Men, and also the mastermind behind the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, where gifted is just a polite way of saying superpowered. You know, the kind of school where showing up late might mean teleporting across town or accidentally phasing through walls. Professor X isn't just any telepath. He's one of the most powerful in the world. His only serious competition, Jean Grey, and honestly, when someone can turn into a cosmic firebird, you just have to let them have that one. But Charles is no slouch. He's spent a lifetime using his powers to push for a peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans. That's been his dream, his mission, and the whole reason the X-Men exist in the first place. Back in 1962, while the rest of the world was figuring out rock and roll and space travel, Professor X was busy gathering a team of mutants to protect both humans and mutants from the dangers out there, and sometimes the dangers from within. With his telepathic powers and scientific genius, he's not just the brain behind the X-Men, he's the heart, always guiding his students and fellow mutants toward a better future. Welcome, true believers, to Stan Lee Presents, your go-to for epic comic character history. Want more stories of your favorite heroes and villains? Like, subscribe, and join us for weekly lessons on the legends of Marvel. X-Men First Class. Picture this, it's 1944 and young Charles, just 12 years old and already living the mansion life, bumps into a shape-shifting surprise named Raven. Now, instead of freaking out like most kids would if they caught someone rummaging through their snack stash, Charles does the unexpected. He's thrilled to meet someone else who's different, because let's face it, normal is overrated, and in true buddy movie fashion invites her to stick around. And so, Charles and Raven become best buds, thicker than thieves, and probably just as mischievous, but with more heart. Fast forward a few years, and Charles, the natural genius he is, seriously, kid's got brains on brains, heads off to Oxford University. Raven, now his foster sister and probably still winning at hide and seek, tags along. By age 30, Charles has not only gotten his PhD in genetics, because why not, but also has written a thesis on genetic mutation that probably had every professor reaching for a dictionary. Just as he's about to bask in the glow of his academic glory, the CIA shows up with an offer he can't refuse, because of course they need his help to stop a mutant named Sebastian Shaw, who's decided teaming up with the Soviet Union is a great way to spend his weekends. So Charles, Raven, and Moira McTaggart, the CIA agent who looks like she could be a character in her own right, head to the agency, where they meet John McCone. Unfortunately, John's not too thrilled with the whole mutants are real and one of them is about to cause a major international crisis spiel. But not to worry, enter the Man in Black. Because what's a CIA story without a mysterious guy in sunglasses backing you up? With him on board, things get rolling. Charles joins McTaggart and the MIB on a mission to capture Shaw aboard his fancy yacht, because of course the villain has a yacht. Things get dicey when telepathic blocking, courtesy of Emma Frost, throws a wrench in their plan. As if that's not enough, they bump into Eric Lensher, aka the guy who's been running his own personal revenge tour against Shaw. Things get a little chaotic, which could be an understatement, and when Shaw escapes in a submarine, because who doesn't have one of those, Charles pulls Eric out of a self-destructive spiral. They make it back to the CIA's top secret Division X facility where the plot thickens. There they meet Hank McCoy, a genius scientist who just so happens to have prehensile feet, a sentence no one ever expects to say. Charles, being the telepathic powerhouse that he is, immediately clocks Hank as a mutant. Together they fire up Cerebro, Hank's mutant-finding device, think Google Maps for superpowers, and start recruiting mutants to take down Shaw. They round up a colorful cast of characters: Angel Salvadore, the exotic dancer with wings, Armando Munoz, the adaptable taxi driver, Alex Summers, who's an army prisoner with an explosive temper, literally, and Sean Cassidy, a guy with sonic scream powers that could shatter glass or make you wish he had earplugs. At one point, they even try to recruit a certain Canadian mercenary named Wolverine, still going by Jimmy at this point, but let's just say that didn't go over so well. One growl from him, and Charles and Eric wisely decided to back off. Meanwhile, the team closes in on Shaw, but surprise! Instead of Shaw, they find Emma Frost schmoozing with a high-ranking Soviet general. Frost gets captured and spills the beans about Shaw's big plan to kickstart World War III and pave the way for a mutant-dominated future. You know, typical villain stuff. Meanwhile, Shaw's loyal Hellfire Club gang crashes Division X, turning Angel to their side and tragically offing Darwin in the process. Things are heating up, and it's clear that Shaw is not playing around. Time to save the world. No pressure or anything. With their facility turned into mutant confetti, Xavier does the only logical thing. He invites the whole gang to crash at his family mansion. Not exactly your typical house guests, but hey, it beats the local motel. While they're there, Xavier puts his telepathy to good use, helping Eric level up his magnetic mojo like he's prepping for a mutant talent show. He also gets the rest of the crew to tighten up their power control. After all, nobody wants a mutant accident before breakfast. The calm before the storm doesn't last too long. Shaw, ever the drama queen, orchestrates a tense standoff between the United States and Soviet naval forces because, you know, world domination plots and Cold War tension go together like PB&J. When the Hellfire Club hijacks a Soviet freighter and decides to crash the party by running the American blockade, Xavier's telepathic senses kick in. He dives into the minds of the Soviet fleet, trying to find Shaw, but to no luck. Shaw's sporting a stylish helmet that blocks telepathy, like tinfoil but way cooler. So in a moment of quick thinking and probably a little panic, Xavier mentally puppeteers a Soviet officer into blowing up the freighter, sidestepping a nuclear explosion big enough to turn the Cold War hot. Crisis averted for now. It's not over yet though. Enter Banshee, the team's resident scream machine who volunteers to use his sound powers as sonar. It's like whale communication, but louder. Xavier guides the Blackbird, because every superhero team needs a jet with a cool name, straight to Shaw's submarine. Eric, channeling his inner magnetic superhero, yanks the sub right out of the water. But because nothing goes smoothly in these kinds of adventures, both the sub and the Blackbird crash, leading to a mutant showdown that even the local news would struggle to report. While chaos ensues, Xavier stays behind with the jet, telepathically linked to Eric, who's on a solo mission to confront Shaw. And let's just say when Eric finds him, it's not gonna end with a friendly chat over coffee. Spoiler, Eric gets his revenge and Shaw gets, well, dead. But now there's a new problem. Both the US and Soviet fleets are spooked, and they start firing every missile and artillery piece they've got at the mutants. Talk about overreaction. Eric, not one to let a missile ruin his day, sends those missiles right back at him, giving new meaning to the phrase return to sender. This leads to a clash between Xavier and Eric, friends on opposite sides of a very explosive disagreement. Xavier tries to stop Eric from blowing the ship sky high, but just as things are reaching a tipping point, McTaggart tries to play hero and fires a gun at Eric. Big mistake. Eric deflects the bullet, naturally, but it ricochets right into Xavier's spine. The result? Xavier's legs are out of commission. Permanently. Ouch. A guilt-ridden Eric, realizing he's gone too far, leaves with Raven, Angel, and the rest of Shaw's ex-crew, including Riptide and Azazel, like a supervillain family on the run. Later, Xavier, now in a wheelchair but still full of determination, returns to his mansion. McTaggart, probably feeling a little bad about the, whole getting shot thing, promises to never reveal his location. They share a kiss, but Xavier, ever the gentleman and ever the telepath, wipes her memory of the whole ordeal. Smooth move, Professor X. With a heavy heart and a new mission in mind, Xavier sets his sights on the future. His plan? To open a school for mutants at the Westchester Mansion, a place to train the next generation of heroes, and thus the X-Men are born. Roll credits. Between X-Men First Class and X-Men Days of Future Past. In 1965, Professor Xavier finally opened the doors of the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, a dream realized. It was supposed to be a safe haven for young mutants, a place to learn, grow, and, well, hopefully not blow anything up while doing it. But just as the school was getting off the ground, the world decided it had other plans. The Vietnam War kicked into high gear, and like a bad plot twist, students and staff started getting drafted left and right. Before long, the school couldn't keep the lights on, let alone teach Intro to Telekinesis 101. By the early 1970s, Xavier had to shut the place down and turn his mansion back into a private residence. It didn't take long before the estate looked like something out of a haunted house movie, neglected, run down, and probably a bit spooky at night. As the years ticked by, from the late 1960s to early 1970s, Xavier became something of a recluse. Picture him in his big empty mansion, probably binge reading books or staring out windows in dramatic fashion. The only one who stuck around was McCoy, his ever-loyal friend who did his best to help Xavier maintain what was left of the estate. But things weren't looking too bright for the old professor. Between Eric Lensher, better known as Magneto, allegedly being involved in the Kennedy assassination, and Raven walking out on him after years of being his closest friend and foster sister, Xavier had enough emotional baggage to fill a jumbo jet. Bitterness set in, and honestly, who could blame him? Then came McCoy with a game-changing serum. It was like something straight out of a superhero lab. It regulated his own mutation and, more impressively, allowed Xavier to walk again. Suddenly, the professor was back on his feet, which was a major upgrade. The catch? There's always a catch. The serum, while making him mobile, took a serious toll on his telepathic powers. It was like trading your super brain for a pair of working legs. So there he was, walking again, but no longer the telepathic powerhouse he once was. Life's all about balance, right? Except in Xavier's case, it seemed like the scales were perpetually tipping in all the wrong directions. Prior to X-Men Origins Wolverine. In 1979, Professor Xavier decided to take matters into his own hands and personally rounded up a fresh group of mutants, like a superhero road trip, but with fewer snacks and more telepathy. This ragtag bunch included Scott Summers, Elizabeth Braddock, Emma Silverfox, and a few other escapees from the infamous Weapon X facility on 3 Mile Island. Who busted them out, you ask? None other than Logan, the very same guy Charles and Eric once tried to recruit for Division X. Guess he finally decided to play the hero after all. Using his telepathic GPS, because let's face it, Xavier never needs a map, he guided Summers and the others out of the facility, leading them straight to the exit where he was waiting, cool as ever, standing by a helicopter. Because when you're Professor X, you don't just show up in a regular car. He then flew them back to school like it was the most casual mutant rescue mission ever. Jump ahead to 1986, and Charles and Eric are out on another important recruitment mission, this time to the quiet suburban home of Jean Grey. Now, this isn't just any mutant visit. Jean is a Class 5, which is Xavier speak for very powerful, as in bend reality, rearrange your mind, and maybe levitate your furniture kind of powerful. As they pull up to her house in a peaceful neighborhood, Eric, always the impatient one, grumbles about meeting mutants in person. Xavier, knowing just how special Jean is, gives a calm, nope, not this time, Jean's different. Inside the Grey family's living room, Mr. and Mrs. Grey are eyeing the brochure for Xavier's school, probably thinking it's a fancy boarding school, while Eric sits there stewing. When Mrs. Grey calls Jean's powers an illness, Eric nearly flips the coffee table. He fires back, asking if they really think their daughter's sick. Xavier, knowing full well Eric's temper could turn this meet and greet into a disaster, steps in and coolly suggests they chat with Jean alone. Mrs. Grey, eager to avoid any mutant-sized tension, agrees and calls for Jean. Enter Jean Grey, a young redhead with more power than she knows what to do with. She takes a seat, but it doesn't take long before Xavier notices she's already poking around in their minds, no invitation necessary. Xavier, always the polite one, casually reminds Jean that reading thoughts without permission is a bit rude, even for a mutant. Eric, meanwhile, cuts to the chase, asking if Jean thought she was the only one like her. Charles jumps in to explain that they're all mutants, but Jean, being the sassy powerhouse she is, isn't convinced. Cue the impromptu mutant demonstration. Outside, a lawnmower goes flying out of some poor guy's hands, and another guy watches in shock as water from his hose decides to defy gravity. Eric, clearly impressed by the chaos, turns to Charles with a grin and says, "I like this one." Xavier, ever the mentor, calmly tells Jean that she's got more power than she can imagine, a statement that probably had Eric nodding in agreement. Just as if to punctuate the point, all of the cars floating midair drop back to the ground outside like nothing happened, because in Jean Grey's world, what goes up might just stay up. Prior to X-Men. Sometime after 1986, Charles and Eric, no surprise here, had yet another epic falling out. Apparently, being on the same team just wasn't in the cards for these two. Eric packed his bags, did the whole dramatic exit, and went off to reform the Brotherhood of Mutants, because naming your group after something ominous is always a good start. Meanwhile, Charles, ever the optimist, stuck around to keep running the school. It's hard to say which is tougher, dealing with teenagers learning to control their mutant powers, or keeping Eric from trying to start World War III every other Tuesday. Now, cut to the Capitol, where Dr. Jean Grey is about to take center stage in front of the Senate, talking about the latest hot topic, the mutant registration law. And who's sitting there front and center, watching on proudly? None other than Professor Charles Xavier, playing the supportive mentor role like a pro. Jean's explaining how mutant powers get triggered, probably hoping she doesn't accidentally trigger any powers while explaining. But before she can get too far into her speech, Senator Robert Kelly cuts in, playing the role of the classic, slightly paranoid politician. Educational, sure, Kelly says, but let's talk about the real issue here. Are mutants dangerous? Jean, probably resisting the urge to roll her eyes, fires back that it's an unfair question. I mean, put the wrong person behind the wheel of a car and they're dangerous, right? Kelly's not one to back down though, and quips that this is why people get licenses to drive. Jean, cool as a cucumber, shoots back, yes, but not to live, making a point that hits like one of Wolverine's punches. She argues that mutants already face enough hostility, and forcing them to out themselves would only make things worse. Kelly, doing his best to keep the pressure on, interrupts once again. He demands to know what the mutants have to hide, and why they're so afraid to identify themselves. Then, like he's reading from a comic book villain script, he pulls out a list of identified mutants living in the US and starts throwing around wild hypotheticals. There's a girl in Illinois who can walk through walls, he says, probably making everyone in the room double check their locks. What's to stop her from walking into a bank safe or even the White House? He's laying it on thick, and just when you think he's done, he goes full conspiracy theorist and brings up the mutants who can control minds. What about the ones who can take away our free will, he says, implying that some mutants are out there trying to rewrite the Constitution with their thoughts. By now, Xavier and Jean are cringing at every word. To their disappointment, the room bursts into applause, because apparently scaring the public works like a charm. Kelly keeps on pushing for the Mutant Registration Act, making his case like a seasoned showman, but Xavier's attention suddenly shifts as he notices a familiar face slipping out of the crowd. He knows this mysterious man all too well, and in true superhero style, wheels out of the Senate chamber to follow him. The man is Eric Lehnsherr, aka Magneto. Xavier asks his old ally what he's doing there. The two trade snipes, both attempting to figure out what the other is up to. Xavier desperately wants to see hope in Eric's mind, and Eric claims that mutants are the future, humans be damned. Eric departs, leaving Xavier disappointed. Afterwards, Xavier sends Storm and Cyclops to rescue Wolverine and Rogue from Sabretooth. When Wolverine arrives at the mansion, Xavier taps into his mind and telepathically guides him into a lecture he's giving. Logan has his first look at some of the mutant students here, and Xavier introduces himself. He tells Logan all about where he is and how he got there. Logan is mostly concerned about Rogue, and Xavier insists that she is safe and sound. That's when the mutant squad who rescued Logan arrives. They're introduced to Logan, Aurora Monroe, and Scott Summers, aka Storm and Cyclops. Logan is standoffish until Jean shows up. Xavier further explains the purpose of the school and how he and Rogue are now safe from Magneto. Indignant as always, Logan attempts to leave, but Xavier telepathically tells him that he can help him remember who he is. Xavier decides to lay it all out for Logan, explaining a bit more about the school. He convinces him that this place is the best shot Rogue's got. After all, it's not every day that you find a school that teaches algebra and how to control your mutant powers without accidentally blowing up a classroom. Then, with a knowing look, Xavier drops the big reveal. The school, well, it's just a cover. The real action happens downstairs, and by real action, we're talking secret hangars and supersonic jets. He takes Logan on a tour of the lower levels, showing off the X-Men's pride and joy, the Blackbird. Xavier shares a bit of his backstory too. Turns out when he was a kid, he discovered he could control other people's minds, which, let's face it, would make him the ultimate hide-and-seek champion. At 17, he met Eric Lehnsherr, who could control magnetism like some kind of human magnet. But while Xavier stayed optimistic about humanity, Eric went the opposite route and decided to declare himself an enemy of mankind. You know, classic friendship drama. Xavier offers Logan a deal. 48 hours to figure out why Magneto's so obsessed with him, and in return, Xavier will help dig into that big ol' mystery that is Logan's past. Fair trade, right? Later, Jean Grey fills the Professor, Cyclops, and Storm in on her findings about Wolverine. Apparently, his entire skeleton is covered in an indestructible metal called adamantium, which, let's be honest, sounds both awesome and terrible at the same time. Aurora, always practical, asks how anyone could survive a procedure like that without, well, dying. Jean explains that Logan's mutation includes a supercharged healing factor, which basically makes him the ultimate comeback king. As a result, his age is a total mystery. For all they know, Logan could be older than the Professor himself. Cue Xavier silently wondering if Logan's been hiding anti-aging tips. Xavier asks the big question: who did this to Logan? Jean tells him Logan doesn't remember a thing. It's all a big blank, like someone hit the delete button on his memories. Xavier, putting two and two together, muses that it sounds like some sort of shady mutant experimentation. Cyclops, still trying to piece the puzzle together, asks what Magneto could possibly want with Logan. Xavier, not entirely sure, admits that maybe Magneto isn't after Logan at all. Maybe it's something bigger. Later that night, disaster strikes. In a moment of panic, Logan accidentally stabs Rogue. Yikes. Triggering her mutant power, which lets her absorb the abilities of anyone she touches. Logan's healing factor kicks in for her, but it sends him into a full-on unconscious state. When he finally wakes up, Xavier's there, keeping him company like the world's calmest nurse. Logan's first question is Rogue okay? Xavier assures him that she'll be fine. Confused, Logan asks what the heck just happened, and Xavier explains the deal. Whenever Rogue touches someone, she absorbs their energy, and in the case of mutants, their powers. She got Logan's healing ability, which saved her life, but it also nearly put him 6 feet under. Logan, still a bit rattled, says it felt like she almost killed him. Xavier, not sugarcoating it, agrees. If she had held on any longer, she could have. Logan, probably thinking he's gonna have to start sleeping with gloves on, starts to process just how dangerous and powerful Rogue really is. Down in the underground part of the mansion, where all the really cool stuff is kept, Xavier and Cyclops are busy trying to figure out just what Magneto wants with Wolverine. Xavier picks up on the fact that Scott isn't exactly in the running for Logan's biggest fan club. Just as the tension is building, Logan and Ororo, aka Storm, walk in, with Logan doing what he does best, demanding answers. "Where's Rogue?" he asks, probably already planning to punch his way to a solution. Xavier, after a quick mind scan, because telepathy is just that handy, delivers the bad news. Rogue is gone. A few minutes later, the gang, Xavier, Scott, Jean, Ororo, and Logan, enter a secure room that looks like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. Xavier welcomes Logan to Cerebro, the X-Men's giant mind-amplifying machine. It's a big round room with a dramatic bridge leading to the machine. You almost expect some ominous music to play when Xavier walks in. He explains that Cerebro amplifies his telepathic powers, allowing him to track mutants across huge distances, like a mutant-powered GPS. His plan? To use it to find Rogue. Logan, ever the straightforward guy, asks why not just use it to find Magneto? Good question. Xavier reveals that Magneto has figured out a way to shield himself from Cerebro's powers. And how would Magneto know how to do that? Well, it turns out that Xavier helped them build it in the first place. Awkward. Xavier slips on the Cerebro helmet, ready to start his mutant tracking session, while the others exit the room. Outside, Logan asks Jean if she's ever used Cerebro. Jean, looking a little hesitant, admits she hasn't. Using Cerebro requires serious control, and for someone like her, it's a bit too dangerous. You know, with their whole potential to unleash world-ending powers thing. Meanwhile, inside the room, Xavier locates Rogue after a short search. She's at the train station. Classic Rogue, always on the move. Logan's ready to bolt out the door, but Xavier stops him with a telepathic "hold your horses." If Logan leaves, Magneto will snatch him up faster than a cloth swipe. Instead, Xavier sends Cyclops and Storm on the mission to rescue Rogue. Seems like Logan's gonna have to sit this one out, for now. Over at the train station, Magneto, Sabretooth, and Toad have already managed to capture Rogue. As it turns out, Magneto cannot resist a dramatic kidnapping. A police officer, clearly having no idea who he's dealing with, orders Magneto to stay put and raise his hands. Magneto, with a smirk, obliges, but with his hands he also raises the police cars. They hover in the air, and then in true Magneto fashion, he casually drops them on top of 2 other cars, like he's playing Mutant Tetris. Naturally, the officers aim their guns at him, but Magneto's got that covered too. Literally. With a flick of his power, the guns go flying out of their hands and point right back at the officers. Not looking too good for the police here. Just then, Sabretooth grabs Magneto's neck and growls, "That's enough, Eric," while Toad, ever loyal, chimes in with, "Let them go." Magneto's not fooled for a second, though. He's got Xavier's telepathic meddling figured out. "Why don't you come out where I can see you, Charles?" Magneto shouts, knowing his old friend is lurking nearby. Sure enough, Xavier is sitting in a car with Jean, doing his best not to sigh at Magneto's theatrics. Xavier, ever calm and collected, telepathically asks Magneto what he needs Rogue for. Magneto, always ready with a quip, shoots back, "Can't you read my mind?" He then launches into his classic villain speech, trying to convince Xavier that he's the one in the right. If they pass that law, he warns, they'll have all mutants chained up with numbers burned into their foreheads. Xavier, ever the optimist, insists that it won't come to that. Magneto isn't having it though. He throws down the gauntlet, telling Xavier just to kill him and find out for himself. Subtlety has never really been Magneto's style. When Xavier doesn't respond, Magneto takes things up a notch. He tells Xavier that if he's not going to answer, he should just release him. Still no response. So what does Magneto do? He casually points a gun at the nearby officer using his powers and fires. The crowd gasps like they're watching the season finale of a soap opera, but when they open their eyes, they find the bullet frozen in midair, just an inch away from the officer's shocked face. Talk about cutting it close. Not done with his dramatic display, Magneto then aims all the guns at the officers, making it very clear to Xavier that he can't stop them all. The tension builds, and with a heavy sigh, because it's always a sigh with Charles, Xavier looks at Jean and releases his telepathic grip on Sabretooth and Toad. Magneto, of course, takes this as his cue for another lecture. He tells Xavier that his weakness is his unwillingness to make sacrifices, something Magneto has become an expert in. Right on time, Mystique swoops in with a helicopter, and Magneto, Sabretooth, Toad, and a captured Rogue all board. As they take off, all the guns and the floating bullet drop to the ground like the show's over. And for now, it is. Back at the mansion, Logan is getting mad. He's scrubbing his face, frustrated with Xavier for saying that Magneto wanted him. Xavier, probably feeling a little sheepish, apologizes, admitting he made a big mistake. Logan, not in the mood for apologies, storms off, ready to find Rogue by himself. But just as he's about to make a dramatic exit, Storm steps in, trying to convince him to stay and fight with the team. Logan opens the door, ready to ignore her, and surprise, on the other side stands Senator Kelly, looking about as lost as a guy can get, asking for Dr. Jean Grey. Well, that's one way to stop Logan in his tracks. Later, underground at the mansion, Kelly is lying on a table, looking more than a little out of his element. Logan and Jean are there too, and soon Xavier arrives, introducing himself like this is some kind of mutant therapy session. Kelly, clearly shaken, explains that he was too afraid to go to a regular hospital. Xavier, ever the mind reader, finishes his sentence, saying Kelly was worried they'd treat him like a mutant. Turns out this is exactly what Kelly was afraid of. Xavier, doing his best to be the voice of reason, assures him that mutants aren't all what he thinks. But Kelly's not having it, snapping back with, "Tell that to the ones who did this to me." Xavier, always calm under pressure, asks Kelly to relax. Easier said than done when you're lying on a table in a mutant's underground bunker. Then Xavier begins to read Kelly's mind, diving into his memories. He relives the moment Magneto turned Kelly into a mutant, with Mystique by his side, helping Kelly out of that terrifying machine. And there's Magneto, looking drained and exhausted from the whole process, because turning a senator into a mutant is no easy feat, even for him. Xavier explains to the mutant squad what happened. Jean elaborates that the mutation in Kelly's body is unnatural and as such is being rejected. Xavier continues by saying that the radiation is harmless to mutants but could be super dangerous to humans. Logan wants to know what Magneto wants from Rogue, and the group soon realizes that the villain wants the young mutant to take his powers and use the mutant-making machine in his stead, killing her while allowing him to live. It's announced that Senator Kelly is dead, and Xavier hops back in Cerebro to find Rogue before it's too late. However, Mystique's secret green goop knocks him out cold. Jean takes a look at Cerebro and tries to fix it, and Scott gives an impassioned speech to the unconscious professor. While Xavier takes his unintentional nap, the X-Men, plus Wolverine, go out to rescue Rogue and stop Magneto. They succeed, and the professor recovers. He tells Logan that he should check out an abandoned military compound in the Rockies. Later, he catches up with Magneto, now restrained in a totally plastic jail cell. Talk about modern. They play chess while discussing the future of the mutant registration law, and of course, hope. Sure, they're on talking terms for now, but Magneto makes it very clear that he is still on the warpath. Xavier says that he'll always be ready to stop him. X2, X-Men United. In the middle of a New York museum, the students from Xavier's school are on what should have been a regular peaceful field trip. But of course, when you're dealing with mutants, things rarely go as planned. Pyro, Rogue, and Iceman somehow manage to get into a scuffle with a couple of young men because hey, what's a field trip without a little drama? Suddenly though, everything, and I mean everything, stops. People freeze mid-action like someone hit a pause button on reality. Rogue, assuming this is just another mutant shenanigan, asks Bobby, aka Iceman, what happened. But even he's confused. I didn't do this. Cue the entrance of Professor Xavier, wheeling in like the coolest headmaster ever. He gives John, or Pyro, a pointed look and says, the next time you feel like showing off, don't. Because nothing says calm down like a little telepathic freeze frame. As if things weren't tense enough, a news report flashes across the TV, covering the mutant attack on the White House. Cyclops, ever the serious leader, takes one look and says, I think it's time to leave. Xavier, nodding in agreement, unfreezes the room, and just like that, the students and X-Men disappear before anyone can say mutant trouble. Back at Xavier's Institute, the X-Men are gathered in the professor's study, discussing the White House attack like it's the world's most stressful group group project. Cyclops, always suspicious, thinks Magneto's pulling the strings, but Jean and Xavier aren't convinced. They point out that Magneto is in prison, and pulling off something like this would only hurt his grand villainous plans. Not to mention, organizing an attack from behind bars sounds more like something out of a bad action movie than Magneto's usual style. Storm, always practical, chimes in with her own concern. The government's probably going to use this as an excuse to bring back the dreaded Mutant Registration Act. Xavier, however, thinks it could be even worse. They might declare a state of emergency and round up every mutant in the country. Talk about a nightmare scenario. Jean brings up the big Q. Who's the attacker? Xavier knows they need to find him before the authorities do. He's been trying to track this rogue mutant using Cerebro, but the guy's movements are all over the place, like trying to catch lightning in a bottle. When Xavier finally pinpoints the exact location, he tells Jean and Aurora to suit up and go pick him up. Later in Cerebro, Xavier is prepping for another mutant search session. It's all high-tech, high-stakes stuff. Then in walks Wolverine, cigar in mouth. Xavier welcomes him back, but not before giving him the classic "put out that cigar" line. Logan, being Logan, looks around for somewhere to put it out, and when he comes up empty, decides to just put it out on his palm, because why not? Luckily, with that healing factor of his wound closes up faster than you can say ouchie. Logan asks Xavier if he wants him to leave, but Xavier tells him to stand still. This is about to get serious. The room goes dark, and then, like the stars in a mutant-powered galaxy, millions of dotted lights appear. Xavier explains that each light represents a living person on Earth. The white ones are humans, and the red ones are mutants. Through Cerebro, he's connected to them all, and them to him. Logan, never one to stay on topic, changes the subject and tells Xavier that he found a base at Alkali Lake. But here's the kicker, it's empty. Looks like Logan's still searching for answers, and maybe, just maybe, some peace of mind. Xavier seems to brush off Logan's presence as he focuses on the task at hand. He points out a broken line in Cerebro. It's the mutant who attacked the president, and Xavier's been having a tough time getting a solid lock on him. Logan suggests he just concentrate harder, because, you know, when in doubt, just focus more, right? But Xavier, with a bit more wisdom, replies that sure, he could do that, but it would probably kill the mutant they're trying to find. Logan, realizing this is a bit more delicate than claw fights, stays quiet. Suddenly, the mutant they're tracking stops running. His voice, praying in German, echoes through Cerebro. It's a strange moment, one that leaves Xavier stepping out of the machine. Logan asks Xavier to take another dive into his mind, hoping that this time will be the breakthrough. But Xavier reminds Logan that the mind isn't like a box you can just unlock and rummage through. He has no doubt that Logan's amnesia, adamantium skeleton, and those famous claws are all connected, but some things have to be discovered in their own time. Before he heads out, Xavier leaves Logan with a little responsibility. Watch the kids tonight. Logan might have a healing factor, but even he wasn't ready for babysitting duty. Xavier and Scott have an old friend to visit. Cut to the prison. Xavier and Cyclops arrive to pay a visit to none other than Magneto, their old frenemy. Scott, having to wait outside, watches as a guard wheels Xavier into the room on his plastic wheelchair, because anything metal is just asking for trouble. Magneto, always charming, welcomes Xavier with a sly, "come to rescue me?" But Xavier, all business today, simply replies, "Sorry Eric, not today." Magneto, curious now, asks why Xavier's there. And Xavier, ever direct, wants to know what Magneto knows about the assassination attempt on the president. Magneto plays coy, claiming he knows nothing. Xavier presses on, sensing something's off. He asks Magneto what happened to him. Magneto, dropping a major bombshell, reveals he's been having frequent visits from a certain William Stryker. This raises Xavier's eyebrows because he knows Stryker well. In fact, Stryker's son, Jason, was once a student at Xavier's school. Sadly, Xavier couldn't help him. Not in the way Stryker wanted anyway. Magneto, switching gears, brings up Wolverine. It's clear that both he and Xavier know something about Logan's mysterious past, and it all ties back to Stryker. But Xavier insists Logan needs to figure things out for himself. The tension builds, and Xavier starts to sense that things are even worse than they seem. He asks Magneto what he's done. Magneto, not exactly the picture of remorse, apologizes and says he couldn't help it. Uh-oh. Xavier, alarmed now, demands to know what Magneto told Stryker. Magneto's response? Everything. At that moment, a soft hissing sound fills the room. Through the tiny plastic holes, gas begins slipping in. Magneto delivers his next ominous line. The war has begun. Xavier, now horrified, realizes what's happening. He grabs the plastic doors and screams for Scott, desperately trying to warn him, but it's too late. As the gas fills the room, both Xavier and Magneto lose consciousness. Magneto, in his last moment of clarity, tells Xavier what could have been. You should have killed me while you had the chance. In the cold, isolated wilderness of Alkali Lake, Canada, we find Professor Xavier tied to a chair with the world's weirdest looking helmet strapped to his head. Not the best look for the world's most powerful telepath. As he regains consciousness, he spots none other than William Stryker sitting in front of him, with Yuriko Oyama, aka Lady Deathstrike, looming against the wall like the world's most intimidating wallpaper. That strange helmet, it's blocking Xavier from entering Stryker's mind. No psychic peeking today. Xavier asks where Scott is. Stryker, playing the role of smug villain, tells him not to worry. Scott's just getting a bit of re-education. Xavier quickly pieces together what's going on and realizes that this all ties back to Stryker's son. He reminds Stryker that he came to him wanting a cure for his son, but mutation isn't a disease. Of course, that's not what Stryker wants to hear. Eyes blazing with anger, Stryker accuses Xavier of lying. He reveals that when Jason returned from Xavier's school, he resented his parents, blaming them for his condition. Jason, a powerful telepath like his former teacher, started toying with their minds, projecting visions and nightmares until Mrs. Stryker, driven mad, took her own life. Dark stuff. Xavier, keeping his cool, glances at Lady Deathstrike and points out the irony. Stryker sure spends a lot of time with mutants for a guy who claims to hate them. Stryker, not missing a beat, shows off the device he uses to control Yuriko, stuck right on her back. Seems Stryker's got more control issues than just over his son. Xavier suddenly realizes Stryker was the one behind the attack on the president. Stryker, clearly pleased with himself, congratulates Xavier on figuring it out, without even needing to read his mind. Yuriko leaves the room and Stryker starts laying out his grand plan. He complains that no one knows how many mutants are out there, or how to find them. Except Xavier, of course. Unfortunately, Xavier's too powerful for simple mind control, so Stryker's decided to go straight to the source. And by source, he means introducing Xavier to Mutant 143, a young, sickly-looking mute man in a wheelchair, his head connected to a series of mind-controlling pipes. As the figure rolls into view, Xavier's heart sinks. He recognizes the young man immediately. Jason Stryker, William's son. Xavier, horrified, demands to know how Stryker could do this to his own child. With chilling indifference, Stryker replies, "No, Charles, my son is dead, just like the rest of you will be." And with that, he leaves Xavier alone with his twisted creation. Suddenly, in a strange turn of events, Xavier finds himself standing in his study at the Institute. Wait a minute, standing? He quickly realizes it's just an illusion and shouts, "Jason, stop it!" But Jason, under Stryker's mind control, does not respond. The illusion continues. Now Xavier's back in his wheelchair, still in his study, when he hears the sound of a little girl crying. He calls out to her, telling her it's safe to come out, and asks her where all the other students are. She doesn't know, but Xavier reassures her. They'll find the others using Cerebro. In this illusion, Xavier and the little girl move through the mansion's underground tunnels, heading towards Cerebro. After the eye scan, the doors open, and the girl, clearly frightened, asks him not to leave her alone. Xavier tells her she can come inside with him. They enter together, but in the real world, that little girl, well, she's not real. It's Jason, manipulating Xavier's mind while a soldier watches over the entire scene, unaware of the battle going on in the professor's head. The scene heats up as all the soldiers are set to defend Cerebro like it's the last stand of mutant kind. Stryker steps in, looking as smug as ever, entering the code to gain access. Inside, he spots his son, Jason, controlling Xavier's mind. Leaning down, Stryker whispers in Jason's ear, telling him it's time to go find their friends. All of them, all the mutants everywhere. In Xavier's illusion, the little girl, aka Jason's projection, echoes Stryker's words, asking if it's time to find all their mutant friends. Xavier, unknowingly caught in the trap, agrees. Stryker, proud of his twisted handiwork, tells Jason to make him proud and exit Cerebro. In the illusion, Xavier is now wearing the Cerebro helmet, preparing to search for every mutant on the planet. The girl tells him not to move, and outside, Stryker, ever the paranoid villain, orders the soldiers to shoot anyone who comes near, even if it's him. Xavier starts looking at the red lights, each representing a mutant, unaware he's about to unleash something terrible. Back in the illusion, the girl asks Xavier if he's found all the mutants yet. He replies that he's trying, but there are just so many of them. The girl tells him to focus, pushing Xavier closer to hurting every mutant out there. In the real world, soldiers suddenly hear footsteps approaching and immediately aim their guns, ready for trouble. But who strolls up? None other than Magneto and Mystique, cool as ever, making their way to Cerebro like it's just another day at the office. Magneto, always one step ahead, puts his helmet on to block Jason's illusions. Inside, Xavier is still concentrating on the mutant population, unaware of the chaos about to unfold. But Magneto, being the master of metal manipulation, succeeds in opening the doors, shutting down Cerebro in the process. Inside the illusion, Xavier is confused. Something's wrong. The little girl, now panicking, looks to him for answers. Magneto mocks Xavier's methods. "We're not playing by your rules anymore, Charles," he says with a sly grin. "Maybe it's time to play by ours." With a wave of his hand, Magneto starts moving the metal plates around Cerebro, revealing the room's inner workings. Mystique, watching him in awe, because let's be honest, the guy's got style, waits for his signal. Magneto lands, nods to her, and Mystique shifts into Stryker. Stepping inside, she mimics Stryker's voice perfectly and whispers into Jason's ear, telling him there's been a change of plans. Magneto, pleased with his manipulation, smiles and bids Xavier farewell as he and Mystique walk out, closing the doors behind them with an ominous finality. In Xavier's illusion, the little girl once again speaks up. "There's been a change of plans, Professor," she says, her tone now more sinister. "We're targeting the humans. All of them." Suddenly, white lights representing humans appear in Cerebro. The effect of this new target reaches the real world. Stryker, who's been so smug up until now, grabs his head in pain as Cerebro begins attacking the humans, his people. And it's not just him. Across the world, every white light in Cerebro feels the pain, including none other than President McKenna. The tables have turned, and the chaos Magneto set in motion is just beginning. Outside Cerebro 2, Nightcrawler's feeling a bit sentimental. He hugs Storm and starts praying, which, considering what they're about to face, isn't the worst idea. Then, in a poof of purple smoke, they teleport inside Cerebro. But something's off. Xavier's nowhere in sight. Instead, standing where the machine should be is a little girl. Or so it seems. She greets them with a eerie hello and asks who they're looking for. Storm, having zero patience for illusions, isn't falling for it. She calls out to the professor, telling him he's got to stop Cerebro. Now. The girl, still playing her creepy little game, asks who they're talking to, and Nightcrawler, the ever-innocent, starts walking toward her like she's just a lost child in need of a hug. Storm pulls a classic hold up and stops him. "Don't move," she warns. Nightcrawler, still seeing nothing but a harmless kid, says, "But she's just a little girl." Storm, all business, replies, "She's not." Cue dramatic tension. Storm gives Nightcrawler the heads up that things are about to get very chilly in there. His response, "I'm not going anywhere." Famous last words, because Storm's eyes begin to glow and her hair starts doing that wind-swept superhero thing. The girl, aka Jason, asks what she's doing, but Storm's already gone full-on goddess of weather. Her eyes glow white, and before you know it, a fierce wind is howling through Cerebro, and the temperature drops like a bad stock market crash. Nightcrawler, who by this point is regretting his "I'm not going anywhere" line, drops to his knees as the cold hits him like a ton of icy bricks. Inside Xavier's illusion, the girl keeps telling him to focus, find all the humans. But outside, in reality, Jason is freezing. The cold is breaking his concentration. The little girl screams at Storm to stop it, but it's too late. The freezing temperature is too much for Jason to handle, and just like that, Xavier snaps out of the illusion. He yanks off the Cerebro helmet, finally free. As he comes back to reality, he sees Jason, Storm, and Kurt. But in the real world, the ceiling of Cerebro starts collapsing around them. Thinking fast, Kurt teleports Aurora and Xavier out of there just in the nick of time. Unfortunately, Jason is beyond saving. With no time to mourn, all the mutants rush through the halls toward the spillway, thinking it's their only shot at escape. They make it to the doors, but before they can get caught in the flood, Logan shows up. Classic timing, popping out of a tunnel. He smashes into a fuse box, closing the door right before the water bursts through. "You don't want to go that way," Logan says, and as if on cue, water explodes through the cracks to confirm his point. Logan leads the crew through another way out, proving once again why he's the best at what he does. Outside, things go from bad to worse. The water that had been leaking through the dam suddenly stops. It's been redirected. The mutants rush out into the snow, but just as they think they've made it, Artie falls. In full Wolverine mode, Logan picks him up and carries him, but when they look around in shock and horror, they realize their ride is already gone. Magneto has taken off with their helicopter. Just when all hope seems to be lost, Rogue shows up in the jet, though it's spinning uncontrollably in the air. Turns out flying isn't as easy as it looks. With all the courage of a first-time pilot, Rogue manages to make an emergency landing, crashing into the snow. Everyone's alive, but they definitely won't be winning any awards for smooth landings. Kurt teleports Xavier inside the jet, and the team braces themselves for whatever comes next. In the jet, things are tense. Xavier turns to Scott and tells him they need to get to Washington, fast. Whatever's happening now is beyond even their usual superhero league. Scott and Aurora exchange panicked looks as they realize something's wrong. The jet won't take off. Rogue, noticing the vibe shift, asks if anyone's seen John, aka Pyro. Jean, after a quick telepathic scan, drops the bomb. John's with Magneto now. Cue the collective disappointment. To make matters worse, the jet suddenly loses power right as the dam bursts again, unable to handle the pressure. Things are about to go from bad to worse. Jean, sitting in the back, realizes it's all on her now. She's their last hope. She looks around at her friends, her family, and makes a decision. Without anyone noticing, she quietly leaves the jet. But it doesn't take long before Xavier realizes she's gone. He calls out her name, alarming both Scott and Logan. She's outside, Xavier says, and Scott, already panicking, rushes to the exit. But Jean, in true telekinetic fashion, slams the door shut, keeping him inside. She activates the jet from the outside, and Scott yells at Aurora not to take off, but it's too late. Jean's doing it for her. Meanwhile, outside, Stryker falls with the dam, and a massive wave of water surges toward the jet. Jean, showing off just how powerful she really is, uses one hand to keep the water at bay, and the other to free the jet from the snow. Scott watches helplessly, his heart breaking. Logan orders Kurt to teleport out and get her, but Kurt, looking devastated, says she's not letting him. And then Jean's final goodbye comes in the most heartbreaking way possible. She uses her telepathy to speak through Xavier's mouth, telling them all that she knows what she's doing. This is the only way. Scott, utterly wrecked, begs her not to do it, but Jean, ever the hero, says goodbye. Her body begins to glow orange, her eyes bright with the power of the Phoenix. She lifts the jet into the air, breaking it free from the snow. With one final push, she releases her telekinetic hold, allowing the water to crash over her. Jean Grey, their friend, their hero, is gone, and the entire team is left grieving in the aftermath. Scott falls apart, crying on Logan's shoulder, and even the tough-as-nails Wolverine is overwhelmed by the tragedy. The entire jet is filled with sorrow, their throats tight with grief as they fly above what is now a vast sea. Kurt, ever faithful, prays for Jean, for the loss they all feel so deeply. In Washington, the scene shifts to a very different kind of tension. President McKenna is making his way to a live television broadcast from his office. He starts his speech with all the gravitas of a world leader. My fellow Americans, in this time of adversity, we're being offered a moment to recognize a growing threat within our own population and take a unique role in shaping the course of human events. He's really getting into it, but before he can continue, all the cameras and lights in the room shut off. The room plunges into darkness and the staff freeze in place, not even able to blink. Suddenly, the sky outside turns ominously dark and lightning strikes, illuminating the room in quick, jagged flashes. The president, startled, looks up to see mutants standing before him, led by none other than Storm, her eyes glowing white with power. The only light in the room comes from the lightning, casting dramatic shadows over their faces. The president's fear hits a peak when he recognizes one of his attackers, Nightcrawler, the same mutant who'd been involved in the White House incident. It's clear the president wasn't expecting this kind of meeting. Professor Xavier greets the president with a calm good morning. With his usual reassuring tone, he tells the president that no one's here to harm him. The president, still on edge from this unexpected visit, asks, "Who are you?" Xavier replies, "We're mutants, and my name is Charles Xavier." Rogue, playing her part, steps forward and places some documents on the president's desk. These aren't just any papers. Xavier explains that they were taken from William Stryker's private office. The president, still trying to keep his composure, asks how they managed to get their hands on them. Xavier, always with a twinkle of humor, simply says, "I know a little girl who can walk through walls." The president, glancing at the documents, admits he's never seen this information before. Xavier says, "I know." The president tries to assert himself, saying that he doesn't respond well to threats, but Xavier corrects him. This is not a threat. This is an opportunity. Xavier lays it out. There are forces in this world, both human and mutant, who believe a war is brewing. As the president can see from the files, some have already tried to light that fuse, and there have been casualties on both sides. But this moment, Xavier says, is crucial. The president is about to address the world, and what he says will shape the future. It's a moment to either repeat the mistakes of the past or work together for a better tomorrow. The mutants aren't going anywhere. They're here to stay. The next move, it's his. And with that, Xavier gives one final warning. We'll be watching. As the words hang in the air, a flash of lightning illuminates their faces one last time before they disappear, leaving the president standing there, stunned as the lights flick back on. Silent, he's unsure of what to say to the waiting cameras. Back at Xavier's study, the mood is much more somber. Scott stands by the window, lost in thought. Xavier reflects on Jean, noting that even as a student, she was always hesitant about her powers. She looked to others, afraid that she might be left behind in some way. Scott, his voice thick with emotion, asks if they could have done more to save her. Xavier, with the wisdom of a man who's seen too much loss, says that in the past, Jean might have let them save her, but not this time. Logan can't understand why Jean left the plane at all. Xavier, resigned, answers simply, she made a choice. The scene shifts as students start entering the classroom, the familiar faces of Artie, Colossus, Jones, Bobby, Danielle Moonstar, and Jubilee among them. Logan and Scott leave the study together, but before they part ways, Logan turns to Scott. Jean made a choice, he says, offering some words of comfort, and that choice was you. But Scott, still grieving, walks away, the weight of those words offering little comfort now. Xavier stays behind, alone with his thoughts. One of the students asks him if everything's all right. The professor, always optimistic, answers with quiet reassurance. Yes, it will be. X-Men: The Last Stand. Professor Xavier, always the calm voice of reason, approaches Wolverine with a request. I need you to fill in for Scott during the Danger Room session, he says. Scott is still deep in despair over losing Jean Grey, and the professor knows Logan is the only one who can handle it. Wolverine, probably not thrilled at the idea of babysitting a bunch of mutant teens in a high-tech training room, grunts but agrees, because when the professor asks, you don't say no. Meanwhile, Professor X is in his element, teaching his ethics class with all the grace and wisdom of a seasoned Jedi Master. Today's topic, the use and misuse of power. He explains to his young students that power, especially mutant power, can be used for the greater good or can spiral into something destructive and selfish. This is a dilemma every mutant must face. Why? Because they're not just regular people, they're mutants. And for psychics, he adds, the challenge is even trickier. When is it okay to use their powers, and when do they cross that invisible line that turns them from protectors into tyrants over their fellow men? Heavy stuff. Then Shadowcat, because there's always that one student who loves to quote famous people, chimes in with a quote from Einstein. Ethics are an exclusive human concern without any superhuman authority behind it. Xavier, without missing a beat, smiles and quips, well, Einstein wasn't a mutant, as far as we know. The class giggles, the mood lightened for a moment, and then Xavier switches gears, bringing out a tape sent to him by Dr. Moira McTaggart. On the tape, Dr. McTaggart is standing beside a man lying in a hospital bed. She explains that the man was born with no higher level brain functions. His body works, his organs and nerves are fine, but there's no consciousness. He's an empty shell. Xavier turns off the video and with that professorly wisdom asks his students a loaded ethical question. What if they could transfer the consciousness of someone, say a father of 4 with terminal cancer, into the body of this man? Where does the ethical behavior begin and where does it cross the line? As they walk inside, Aurora, never one to hold back, turns to Xavier with a question that's been bothering her. I don't understand, she says, her voice full of frustration. Magneto's a fugitive. We've got a mutant in the cabinet and a president who gets us. Why are we still hiding? Xavier answers that they're not exactly hiding, but they do still have enemies out there. He must protect his students. Aurora, nodding but not fully satisfied, agrees, though she makes a valid point. But they can't be students forever. Xavier chuckles and says, Aurora, I haven't thought of you as my student in years. In fact, he adds, I thought you might just take my place someday. That catches Aurora off guard. She stops walking, surprised. I thought Scott would be the one to take your place, she says, still adjusting to the idea. Xavier, his tone more serious, explains that Scott is a changed man. Losing Jean hit him harder than anyone could have imagined. Things are better out there, Xavier says, but you, of all people, should know how quickly the weather can change. Storm, realizing there's more going on than Xavier's letting on, gives him a look, but he just sighs and wheels onward, keeping whatever it is to himself. Heard of Wolverine. Storm cuts in. Magneto will definitely come to get Mystique, but Beast, his expression serious, shakes his head. Magneto's not the problem, or at least not the most pressing one. The room falls quiet. Beast drops a bombshell. A major pharmaceutical company has developed a mutant antibody, a way to suppress the mutant X gene permanently. They're calling it a cure, Hank says. For a moment, everyone is stunned, the weight of the news sinking in. Storm, breaking the silence, is the first to react. Her voice filled with indignation, she says, that's ridiculous. You can't cure being a mutant. Since when have we become a disease? Xavier, sensing the gravity of the situation, quiets her, his eyes focused, knowing that they're likely announcing it now. Whatever hope they had for peace just got a lot more complicated. At Worthington Labs, and none other than Alcatraz, Warren Worthington Jr. Jr. is delivering a speech at a press conference, looking every bit the corporate mogul. He talks about mutants, but not in the way you'd hope. He calls them people, just like the rest of us, but with a catch. Their mutation, he says, is nothing more than a disease, a corruption of healthy cells. Ouch. He stands there, self-righteous, and announces to the world that there's hope for these so-called mutants. Alcatraz, which used to be the world's most notorious prison, will now be a source of freedom for mutants, at least for those who choose to take the cure. Not exactly the hero's speech we were all hoping for. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, things are spiraling out of control. Professor Xavier suddenly senses Cyclops' distress. Something is not right. Scott's name echoes telepathically through the halls of the school, and you can feel the panic rising. Sirius tells them the situation. They need to get to Alkali Lake. Fast. Later, in the school's infirmary, the scene is tense. Logan and Professor X stand beside Jean Grey's unconscious body, the air heavy with the weight of what's happened. Xavier, in full professor mode, explains that Jean should have been obliterated by the sheer mass of water that collapsed on top of her, but somehow she survived. The only explanation? Her powers created a telekinetic cocoon around her, protecting her from certain death. Wolverine, ever the practical one, asks the big question: will she be okay? Xavier, knowing just how complicated things are, explains that Jean Grey isn't just any mutant. She's the only Class 5 mutant he's ever encountered. Her potential is practically limitless, but that kind of power comes with a price. Her mutation is rooted deep in her unconscious mind, making it incredibly dangerous. When she was a child, Xavier built psychic barriers in her mind to keep her powers in check, isolating them from her conscious mind. But as a result, Jean developed a dual personality. There's the Jean they all know and love, the one who keeps her powers under control. And then there's the other side, the dormant personality, one that calls itself the Phoenix, a purely instinctual creature driven by power and desire. Logan, processing this revelation, realizes they're dealing with something far more dangerous than they ever imagined. The Phoenix isn't just a name, it's a force that's been waiting to emerge, and now that it's here, the stakes have never been higher. Taking all of this in, Wolverine asks Xavier, did Jean know all of this? The professor, with the weight of the world in his voice, replies that it's unclear how much Jean knew, but the bigger issue is whether the woman lying in front of them is the Jean Grey they know, or the Phoenix, furiously struggling to break free. Logan glances at Jean and says, she looks pretty peaceful to me. Xavier, shaking his head, says that's because he's keeping her that way, trying to restore the psychic blocks and cage the beast once more. Logan growls that this is too much. What have you done to her, he snaps. After all, they're talking about someone's mind here, not a dangerous animal. Xavier, trying to keep things calm, tells Logan to understand. Jean has to be controlled. But before, she's so strong, he mutters, the realization hitting him hard. It may be too late. Not long after, outside the Grey residence, the car pulls up. Out step the three X-Men, Xavier, Wolverine, and Storm. The tension is thick as Xavier turns to Logan and Aurora, telling them to wait outside. I need to see Jean alone, he says, the weight of the situation clear in his voice. But before he can enter, Magneto appears in front of them, making his entrance as dramatically as ever. You were right, Charles, he says with a hint of admiration. This one is special. Wolverine immediately demands to know what he's doing there. Magneto replies, same as the professor, visiting an old friend. Xavier, not in the mood for games, tells Eric that he doesn't want any trouble. Magneto, surprisingly agreeable, replies, neither do I. There's a brief moment of tension before Magneto extends an offer. Shall we? He gestures toward the house, and with that, Xavier and Magneto, the two old rivals, head inside together. As Xavier and Magneto make their way through the Grey house, Xavier turns to Eric with a serious tone. Please, Eric, don't interfere. I came to bring Jean home. Magneto, never one to miss an opportunity for a quip, chuckles. Just like old times, he says, but Xavier cuts through the joke, stating plainly, she's not well, she needs help. Magneto, unfazed, replies with a jab. You sound just like her parents did all those years ago. On the front lawn, Magneto's followers stand ready, a silent but menacing backdrop to the tension building inside. On their way in, Magneto gives Juggernaut a command. Don't let anyone else inside. With that, the doors creak open and the two old friends turned foes step into the house. As they walk through, the house seems to come alive. Furniture floats eerily in the air, hinting at the power swirling around them. They finally reach the living room where Jean stands, waiting. She locks eyes with Xavier and says coldly, I knew you'd come. Xavier, ever the mentor, replies, I came to bring you home. But Jean, her voice ice cold, tells him she has no home. Xavier insists she does indeed. She has a home and a family. Magneto takes a step forward, his voice soft but dangerous. He implies that Xavier thinks her power is too great for her to control. Xavier, alarmed, warns Eric to stay out of this, but Magneto doesn't back down. Jean, caught between the two, turns to Xavier and asks a question. Do you want to control me? Xavier, desperate to reach her, says no, but Magneto jumps in, twisting the moment. Yes, he does, Eric says, fanning the flames. Xavier, still trying to calm her, insists, I want to help you. But Jean, confused and angry, asks, what's wrong with me? Magneto, ever manipulative, leans in. There's nothing wrong with you, he says, but before he can keep pushing, Xavier, fed up, yells, stop this, Eric. Magneto claims that Xavier's always held her back, but Xavier, knowing the stakes, explains that it was for her own good. Jean has enough though. With a flick of her hand, a lamp is smashed telekinetically against the wall. Stay out of my head, she demands, her powers flaring with anger. Suddenly, all the doors and windows of the house slam shut with a deafening thud as her mind begins to rage. Xavier, still composed despite the chaos, pleads with her. Jean, look at me. I can help you. But Jean, now furious, repeats her demand. Get out of my head. Her powers push Xavier's wheelchair back as Magneto, standing to the side, smugly suggests that he should listen to her. Xavier refuses to give up. He asks for her to trust him, and he says that she's a danger to everyone and herself. Magneto, instigating, says, you sound just like the humans wanting to give her the cure. Xavier, undeterred, keeps his focus on Jean. He brings up Scott, telling her, look at what happened to Scott. You killed the man you love because you can't control your powers. Hearing this, something inside her snaps. Her powers explode in a massive telekinetic blast, shattering windows and sending Magneto flying into the kitchen. In the center of it all, Jean, the Phoenix, is unleashing her full power. The entire living room becomes a swirling storm of telekinetic fury. Furniture, debris, and everything in between flies around in a chaotic whirlwind. Xavier, locked in a mental struggle with Jean, pleads one more time. Let me into your mind. But Jean's not listening anymore. She's too far gone. Xavier is suddenly lifted from his wheelchair, floating upright in the air, his face calm despite the immense strain on his body. Magneto, watching in awe from the kitchen, realizes that things are spiraling out of control. Not only is Xavier floating, but the entire house begins to lift off the ground, suspended by Jean's power. Even Logan, somewhere in the chaos, is hurled upward, slamming into the ceiling. Xavier's body tenses, every muscle straining under the weight of Jean's mental assault, but his expression remains unchanged. Focused, determined. Magneto, now realizing this is going much further than he ever intended, yells from the kitchen, Jean, stop. Please don't do this. But Jean, the Phoenix, won't listen. Her power, raw and uncontainable, surges throughout the house, as if she's lost to it completely. Wolverine starts using his claws to get around. Sticking them into the ceiling as if he's scaling a mountain, he struggles against Jean's telekinetic force, which is keeping him glued to the ceiling. Every pull is a battle, but he's not giving up. He claws his way toward the living room, pushing through the storm of debris flying around like a telekinetic tornado. Finally, he reaches the door and pulls it open, arriving just in time to witness something he could have never prepared for. In the living room, Xavier's entire body starts to move, really move. His skin ripples like it's caught in a wild windstorm, waves of energy rolling across him as Jean's powers surge uncontrollably. Logan and Magneto, standing on opposite sides of the room, can only watch in helpless disbelief. Jean Grey, their Jean, is using her power on the very man who was once her mentor. In the middle of the chaos, something extraordinary happens. For just a moment, a profound silence cuts through the noise, the flying objects, and the devastation. Time seems to slow down, and only Jean and Xavier exist in this quiet space. In those few seconds, Xavier, knowing these are likely his last moments, smiles gently at Jean. He speaks softly, his voice calm, almost peaceful. Don't let it control you. And then, before anyone can react, the unthinkable happens. In front of Wolverine and Magneto's astonished, horrified eyes, Professor Charles Xavier, the heart and soul of the X-Men, vanishes. His body, consumed by the Phoenix's power, blows apart and disappears into thin air, leaving nothing behind but the empty space where he once stood. Logan and Aurora rush into the living room, what's left of it, but all that's left is Xavier's empty wheelchair. They stand there, breaths heavy, eyes wide, trying to make sense of the impossible. Logan drops to his knees, the weight of the loss crashing down on him like a tidal wave. No, he yells, his voice raw with pain and helplessness. Aurora, overwhelmed by the grief, falls onto Logan's back, hugging him tightly as sobs rack her body. The two of them, two of the most powerful X-Men, are left utterly broken, kneeling in the ruins of the home, mourning their fallen leader. The next day, Xavier's mansion feels emptier than it ever has. In his study, the wheelchair sits alone, as if waiting for its owner to return. But it's clear now. he's never returning. Outside on the front lawn, the entire school is gathered. Ororo stands in front of them, eulogizing the man who shaped all of their lives. "We live in an age of darkness," she says, her voice heavy with emotion. "A world full of fear, hate, and intolerance. But in every age, there are those who fight against it." She pauses, eyes glistening with tears. Charles Xavier was born into a world divided, a world he tried to heal, a mission he never saw accomplished. It seems the destiny of great men to see their goals unfulfilled. Her words hang in the air, a tribute to the man who gave everything to protect and guide them. The students, staff, and friends stand in silence, their hearts heavy with loss, but their spirits lifted by the legacy Xavier left behind. His dream of peace, of unity, now rests in their hands. In the crowd, we see familiar faces: Rogue, Bobby Drake, Kitty Pryde, Peter Rasputin, Hank McCoy, and many other students who loved and admired Xavier. They sit together, united in their grief, but Logan, the lone wolf, stands apart, listening on from a distance. Rogue catches sight of him, watching quietly, while Ororo's voice carries on, full of emotion. "Charles was more than a leader," Ororo says, her words heavy with the weight of loss. "More than a teacher. He was a friend. When we were afraid, he gave us strength. When we were alone, he gave us a family." As she speaks, Kitty's eyes fill with tears, the sadness overwhelming her. Sitting next to her, Bobby gently places his hand over hers, offering silent comfort. Ororo's voice grows even more determined as she concludes the eulogy. "He may be gone, but his teachings live on through us, his students. Wherever we may go, we must carry on his vision. A vision of a world united." Logan starts to walk away as Ororo finishes, retreating into his own world. Behind him, the rest of the crowd stands up at one, honoring Xavier's memory. One by one, they walk to his memorial and place flowers, a gesture of love and respect for the man who gave them so much. But the story doesn't end there. After the battle at Alcatraz, Moira McTaggart returns to Moyer Island to check on her comatose patient, the very same man from the video Xavier showed his students lying in a hospital bed silent and still. Moira, as always, enters the room with a soft "good morning" before glancing at the monitors to check the patient's vital signs. It's all routine. But then, something extraordinary happens. The man, silent for so long, slowly turns his head toward her. Moira freezes, eyes wide with shock. And then, in a voice that sends a shiver down her spine, he speaks, "Good morning, Moira." It's Charles's voice. Moira stares in disbelief. It can't be, but there's no mistaking it. She looks toward the man, her mind racing, and whispers, "Charles?" The patient looks back at her, and in that moment, Moira realizes the impossible. Charles Xavier's consciousness has survived his physical death. Somehow, some way, the professor lives on. The Wolverine. Years after the battle at Alcatraz, a miracle, or rather mutant miracle, unfolds. Professor Xavier returns, but in a new form, the body of his twin brother. Unfortunately, after decades in a coma, his brother's body has developed muscle atrophy, and so even in this new body, he still needs his iconic wheelchair to move around. Alongside Magneto, Xavier seeks out Logan for help against dark forces that are once again threatening to destroy mutant kind. Logan, skeptical, can't help but ask the obvious. "How are you even alive, Charles?" Xavier, with that trademark calm and mystery, just smiles and replies, "You're not the only one with gifts." X-Men, Days of Future Past. With that, the stage is set. Xavier, Magneto, Wolverine, and Storm head to China to meet with mutants in hiding, preparing a plan that could change everything. The mission? Send Professor X back to 1973 to stop Mystique from killing Bolivar Trask, a murder that set off the chain reaction leading to the creation of the deadly Sentinel program. But they quickly learn that while Shadowcat has the ability to project someone's mind into the past, the process is incredibly dangerous. She's never sent anyone back more than a month before, and even Xavier, with all his power, wouldn't survive a trip that far. Realizing the answer, Wolverine steps forward. With his healing factor, he can survive the strain of being sent back to 1973. Logan volunteers to take Xavier's place, understanding that the mission rests on his shoulders. As the X-Men hide in a monastery preparing for the mission, Shadowcat gets ready to send Wolverine back in time. But before the leap into the past, both Xavier and Magneto ask Wolverine for one more favor. In 1973, Xavier wasn't the man we know today. He was uncertain, broken, unsure of his path. This time, Wolverine has to be the mentor, to guide the younger Professor X the way Xavier once guided him. It's a tall order, but Logan agrees. When Wolverine arrives in the past, the younger Professor X, far from the calm leader we know, tells him outright, "I'm the wrong man for this job." but Logan, gruff as always, explains that he's the only one who can do it. The key moment comes when Wolverine convinces a young Xavier to enter his mind and connect with his future self. And in an incredible moment, the present and future collide. Future Professor X reaches out to his past self. He reminds him not to give up on peace between mutants and humans, inspiring him to regain his hope and embrace his powers. With renewed purpose, young Xavier agrees to use Cerebro to locate Mystique, knowing that everything depends on what happens next. But while the past is being rewritten, the present, now the future, faces a deadly threat. At the monastery, the battle is fierce. Storm, Bishop, Colossus, Warpath, Sunspot, Iceman, and Blink fight bravely, but one by one they fall. The Sentinels are relentless, and their deadly mission seems inevitable. As they breach the monastery, they set their sights on the last of the X-Men: Shadowcat, Wolverine, Magneto, and Professor X. The Sentinels fire, and everything seems lost. Shadowcat, struggling to keep her grip on Wolverine's mind, finally lets go. And like that, the future changes in an instant. The world, their fate, is rewritten. Logan. In the year 2029, Charles Xavier, the once mighty leader of the X-Men, is now a shadow of his former self. A frail, senile old man battling a degenerative brain condition that's far more dangerous than it sounds. The man who once controlled the most powerful mind on the planet now suffers from uncontrollable psychic seizures, and these seizures are no small matter. A year before the events of the story, one such seizure tragically claimed the lives of several X-Men. Now, Charles lives in an abandoned smelting plant just across the Mexican border, where Logan and Caliban search for him in his fading years. It's a far cry from the grand halls of the Xavier Institute. Even with his declining mind and physical health, Charles Xavier's powers are still formidable. His mind may be slipping, but make no mistake, when his telepathy flares, it's still a force to be reckoned with. Take the incident at the hotel for instance. A particularly violent seizure sends out a psychic blast so powerful it freezes everyone around him in place. No one can move. No one except Logan, who has to step in to stop it. It's a terrifying reminder that while Xavier's body may be fragile, his psychic power still burns bright, sometimes too bright. Yet in the middle of all this chaos, there are still moments of clarity, like when Charles, traveling with Logan and Laura, uses his telepathy to calm a group of runaway horses, guiding them safely back to their owners. Even in his old age, there's a glimpse of the man he once was, a reminder of the greatness that still lingers. But then comes the tragedy no one saw coming. Xavier, one of the last remaining X-Men, meets his end at the hands of X-24, a genetically engineered clone of Logan. In a cruel twist of fate, while staying with a kind family who had offered them shelter, X-24 brutally murders Charles in cold blood. It's a moment that marks the end of an era. Xavier's death doesn't just signal the loss of a mentor or a friend, it signifies the closing chapter of the X-Men's legacy. Logan, left with the crushing weight of guilt and grief, now faces the harsh reality of a world without Charles Xavier. And as he continues on his journey with Laura, Logan carries the knowledge that the X-Men, his family, are truly gone. In this unforgiving world, it's just him and Laura now, alone and struggling to survive in a world that feels so much darker without the light of Professor Xavier. Hey, who's that dude in the funny helmet over there? Seems like a nice enough guy, right? Surely he'd be friendly towards me, a normal human being with no mutant abilities whatsoever. Uh-oh. Today we're going to talk about the life of Magneto, originally named Eric Magnus Lensher. He's a mutant with the powerful ability to control magnetic fields and manipulate metal at will. Initially, he was one of the founding members of the X-Men, but he later parted ways to establish the Brotherhood of Mutants, a group that ultimately became the X-Men's primary rival. Magneto's core belief was that mutants should actively resist human oppression, using force if necessary. This stance was at odds with the philosophy of his close friend Charles Xavier, who preferred a more peaceful path toward mutant rights. As a result, Magneto frequently found himself in opposition to the X-Men, though he would occasionally join forces with them when faced with a common threat. Welcome, true believers, to Stan Lee Presents, your go-to for epic comic character history. Want more stories of your favorite heroes and villains? Like, subscribe, and join us for weekly lessons on the legends of Marvel. X-Men Prologue. Erich Lenscher was born into a Jewish family in Germany, mentioning in X-Men First Class that his parents came from Dusseldorf. In 1944, Nazi SS soldiers forcibly separated Erich from his parents in German-occupied Poland at the Auschwitz concentration camp. This intense trauma triggered the first signs of Erich's powers. As he struggled against several guards pulling him back, he managed to force open a heavy metal gate that kept him from his parents, until another guard knocked him unconscious. X-Men First Class. During his time at Auschwitz, Erich encounters a Nazi collaborator named Sebastian Shaw, who initially poses as Dr. Klaus Schmidt. Shaw treats Erich in a deceptively friendly way, offering him chocolate and asking him to move a Reichsmark coin using his power. When Erich cannot do so, Shaw counts to 3 and then fatally shoots Erich's mother in front of him, believing that intense anger will activate Erich's powers. Overcome with grief and fury, Erich's magnetic abilities manifest, causing him to kill 2 SS soldiers and destroy an entire lab room. Pleased with this outcome, Shaw subjects Erich to further experimentation, aiming to enhance his magnetic abilities. After World War II ends in 1945, Erich is freed and begins his quest for revenge, tracking down Shaw and eliminating other Nazis associated with him. In 1949, Erich briefly emigrates to America, where he sees the Statue of Liberty for the first time and imagines America as a land of peace and acceptance. Disillusioned by the reality he encounters, Erich eventually returns to Europe to continue his pursuit of Shaw. In 1962, Erich goes to Switzerland to question a Swiss banker about Sebastian Shaw's location. He's led to Villa Gesell, where he encounters 2 Nazi officers enjoying drinks at the bar. Recognizing Shaw in an old photograph with the officers, Erich kills them before heading to Miami to confront Shaw. Erich ultimately locates Shaw on a small yacht off the American coast. However, his revenge attempt fails when he's overpowered by Shaw's Hellfire Club allies, whose mutant abilities prove too strong for him. During this encounter, he meets Charles Xavier, Raven Darkholme, and Moira McTaggart, who are involved in a failed US Coast Guard operation to apprehend Shaw. With CIA backing, Xavier and Lenscher assemble a team of young mutants to fight against the Hellfire Club, who are plotting to instigate a nuclear war between the Soviet Union and the United States in order to eliminate non-mutants and establish a new world order ruled by mutants. Xavier teaches the teens, including Erich, to harness their powers at his mansion, and during this time, Erich and Xavier develop a strong friendship. Despite their bond, Erich remains consumed by his hatred for Shaw and fears a potential mutant holocaust, even as Xavier encourages him to release that anger. Erich also inspires Raven to embrace her true appearance, arguing that her wish to change it is misguided. While on a CIA mission in the Soviet Union, Erich and Xavier manage to capture Emma Frost from the Hellfire Club and extract crucial information about Shaw's intentions. In the end, the team decides to take decisive action to avert the Cuban Missile Crisis and prevent World War III. The Hellfire Club attempts to thwart the CIA-backed mutant team, but is ultimately defeated. During the confrontation, Erich faces Shaw, who tries to persuade him to join his vision of a new world order for mutants. Though Shaw initially overpowers Erich with his superior control over his abilities, Erich cleverly tricks him into lowering his defenses and removes Shaw's telepathy-resistant helmet, allowing Charles to seize control of his mind and immobilize him. To block Charles from stopping him, Erich puts on the helmet himself. While he claims to align with Shaw's objectives, he cannot forgive him for the murder of his mother or for the countless innocent lives lost. Despite Xavier's urgent warnings that Shaw could still create further chaos if allowed to live, Erich kills him by using his powers to drive the Reichsmark coin from Auschwitz through Shaw's brain. When the United States and the Soviet Union unexpectedly team up to eliminate the mutants, Erich uses his magnetic powers to deflect their missiles and redirect them back at their fleets. Charles urges him to take the high road, but inadvertently mentions that the soldiers on the ships are just following orders, which triggers painful memories of Erich's past under the Nazis and prompts him to launch the missiles. In response, Xavier tackles him, leading to a fistfight that distracts Erich long enough to prevent the missiles from hitting those at sea. During a later confrontation, when Moira McTaggart attempts to shoot Erich, one of the deflected bullets accidentally hits Xavier in the lower back, leaving him permanently disabled. Stricken by what has occurred, Erich bids farewell to his dear friend and leaves with Mystique and the remaining members of the Hellfire Club, vowing to fight against humanity to protect mutants. He later frees the White Queen, adopts the name Magneto, and forms the first Brotherhood of Mutants. X-Men: Days of Future Past Prologue. In 1963, Magneto was accused of assassinating John F. Kennedy and was subsequently imprisoned by Trask Industries beneath the Pentagon's central courtyard. On February 4, 1964, a trial commenced against Lenscher, during which President Johnson informed the Warren Commission in a private meeting that their main suspect, Lenscher, was in custody. His closed trial started the following week. Recently declassified court documents reveal that while Lensher acknowledged his presence at the grassy knoll in Dealey Plaza, he maintained that he did not kill the president. When the court ordered him to demonstrate his mutant abilities, Lensher bent a metal crowbar, causing the court to take 5 minutes to regain its composure. He then claimed to know who truly killed the president, stating that she was hiding in plain sight. The court convicted Lensher of first-degree murder and conspiracy in the assassination of Kennedy. He received 2 consecutive life sentences in a federal correctional facility without the possibility of parole. During the 1960s, Lensher managed to destroy 3 holding cells, but in 1971, Trask Industries constructed an escape-proof cell that successfully contained him. Unbeknownst to the authorities, Eric had been attempting to save Kennedy from the true assassin, as Kennedy was secretly a mutant. He had tried to deflect the bullet, but when the police apprehended him, they interrupted his focus, resulting in the shot hitting Kennedy and killing him. Eric later shared this with Charles, who expressed regret for having doubted him. X-Men: Days of Future Past. In 1973, Magneto was still confined in the specialized prison built for him by Trask Industries, located deep beneath the central courtyard of the Pentagon, where he was accused of assassinating John F. Kennedy. While Magneto was imprisoned, his follower Mystique traveled to Paris and killed Bolivar Trask, the inventor of the Sentinels, who became a martyr for the anti-mutant movement. According to the older Magneto, Mystique soon reached out to Eric again, guiding her down a darker path. X-Men: The Last Stand Prologue. By 1986, Magneto had somehow managed to secure his release from prison, possibly by proving he was innocent of JFK's assassination, and reconciled with Xavier. They visited the Greys' home, where they encountered a young Jean Grey. Her abilities were astounding, and while Lensher saw potential in them, Xavier was apprehensive and chose to establish psychic barriers to contain her powers. Throughout her sessions with Professor X, Jean developed a dual personality, her regular self who could manage her abilities, and a more powerful, uncontrolled side that identified as the Phoenix. This side would fully emerge 2 decades later when she lost control of her powers. Eventually, Magneto and Xavier had another falling out, prompting him to leave the school and re-establish the Brotherhood of Mutants. X-Men. Years later, Magneto and Mystique led the Brotherhood of Mutants and, utilizing a sophisticated machine, planned to mutate the world's leaders, unaware that this would cause humans to lose their molecular integrity, as demonstrated by Senator Kelly. However, Magneto understands that using the machine could be fatal for the operator, which is why he needs a substitute. He sends Mystique to lure Rogue into captivity for this purpose. Mystique shapeshifts into Iceman and persuades Rogue to leave with her. This ultimately results in Rogue's capture by the Brotherhood. While Jean Grey and Storm caution Magneto about the risks associated with the machine, he dismisses their concerns and decides to proceed with its use. However, before it can impact the humans on Ellis Island, Wolverine and Cyclops manage to destroy the machine. Subsequently, the government captures Magneto and confines him in a plastic prison. There, he plays chess with Charles as they discuss the future. X2: X-Men United. After several months, Magneto remains confined in his plastic prison, watched over by his security guard Mitchell Lario. During a visit, Colonel William Stryker brainwashes Magneto, compelling him to reveal details about Cerebro and the X-Mansion. Xavier comes to see him regarding the attack on the president, but Magneto has no answers. Both are incapacitated by gas, and Charles is taken by Stryker. Later, Magneto manages to escape from prison by using iron particles extracted from Lario's bloodstream, which Mystique had injected earlier. He then kills the remaining guards before making his getaway. After rescuing the X-Men from a potential crash of the X-Jet, Magneto and Mystique form a temporary alliance with them to prevent Stryker from exterminating all the world's mutants. Stryker plans to use his own version of Cerebro at Alkali Lake to achieve this goal. During this encounter, Magneto meets Pyro and captivates the young mutant with his words of wisdom. Wolverine wants to be the first to infiltrate the base, but Eric points out that he cannot activate the spillway mechanism, so he sends Mystique in instead. To utilize his version of Cerebro, Stryker manipulates his son Jason to control Xavier, who is now a hostage, with the intent to eliminate all mutants. Magneto and the others breach the underground base after Mystique disables the security systems. They make their way to the Cerebro chamber, where Magneto opens the doors and interrupts Xavier's mental assault. Although he saves the mutant race, Magneto feels unfulfilled. He levitates and begins to modify the machine. With Cerebro reversed, he forces Xavier through Mastermind to attempt to eliminate all humans. He bids a brief farewell to Charles before sealing the chamber again. Xavier soon launches his attack on the humans, incapacitating Stryker. Magneto finds Stryker as he struggles under Xavier's mental influence. Magneto binds Stryker to a rock where he is presumably swept away by the flood from the dam. He then departs from Alkali Lake in a helicopter, shortly joined by Pyro. The X-Men arrive just in time to stop Magneto's reprogramming from being completed. X-Men: The Last Stand. In 2006, following his departure from Alkali Lake, Magneto seeks to grow the Brotherhood of Mutants to fight against the new mutant cure developed by Worthington Labs. Despite this, Callisto warns him that Jean's powers are highly unstable, but he insists they are safe from her anger since they're not trying to control her as Charles did. While Magneto is addressing his fellow mutants, Wolverine sneaks into the base to talk to Jean. Before he can say anything, Magneto throws him against a tree. Despite Wolverine's concerns about Jean, Magneto asserts that he witnessed what happened to Charles. He also reminds Wolverine that it isn't possible to force Jean to stay against her will. With the tree, after discovering that the cure is being used as a weapon, Magneto and the Brotherhood plan an assault on the Worthington facility on Alcatraz Island, where the cure is produced using DNA from a young mutant named Leech. Magneto's goal is to eliminate Leech to prevent the cure from being replicated. The Brotherhood arrives at the Golden Gate Bridge, where Magneto uses his powers to tear the entire bridge free and transport it to the island. Once there, he sends his mutants to confront the humans. The humans are quickly overwhelmed until the X-Men arrive. Teaming up with the armed forces stationed on Alcatraz, the X-Men defend the facility against the Brotherhood. Magneto then instructs Juggernaut to enter the lab and kill Leech. Eventually, Magneto joins the fight himself. He starts launching abandoned vehicles from the Golden Gate Bridge ignited by Pyro, using them as lethal projectiles. The X-Men are forced to seek cover until Iceman manages to stop one of the burning vehicles. Magneto then sends Pyro to confront him. During the skirmish, Wolverine and Beast team up to confront Magneto. Wolverine charges at him, but Magneto pins him down. Powers. Feeling defeated by the loss of his abilities and becoming human, Magneto warns Jean that this is what humans want for all mutants. He then retreats from Alcatraz with the other mutants and humans as Phoenix goes on a rampage, unleashing her powers. Sometime after the attack, Magneto, now despondent and stripped of his great powers, is found sitting in a park in San Francisco in front of a metal chess set. It's implied that he once played chess with Charles and now he is alone, visibly mourning the loss of his friend. He reaches out to a metal chess piece and manages to move it slightly, hinting that the cure might not be permanent or that he hasn't been completely stripped of his abilities. Eventually, his powers would fully return. The Wolverine. Now fully restored to his incredible mutant prowess, Magneto encounters Logan at an airport. He restrains Logan and requests his assistance in combating dark forces intent on annihilating mutants. When Logan questions why he should trust Magneto, the latter candidly responds that he wouldn't either. Just then, Charles Xavier arrives to reassure Logan. X-Men: Days of Future Past. In a dystopian future, Magneto teams up with Charles Xavier and the other mutants. Eric and Charles have apparently considered sending someone further back in time to change the timeline. However, Xavier learns from Kitty Pryde that the human mind can only stretch so far before breaking. Logan, however, offers to go in his place as his mind heals more quickly. Magneto is less confident about this choice compared to sending Charles back. When it's decided that Logan would travel back in time, Magneto insists that Wolverine must also find his younger self, much to Logan's discomfort. Notably, Magneto doesn't specify where he's held in the past. With Shadowcat's help, Wolverine travels back in time to rescue a young Eric from a zero-metal facility beneath the Pentagon, alongside his possible son, Quicksilver. It's revealed that Eric tried to save John F. Kennedy by curbing the bullet, but was prevented from doing so because he was one of them. Wolverine and young Magneto recognize that they will be enemies in the future, but Wolverine observes their similarities, remarking, "You're a survivor." A younger Magneto tries to kill Mystique because her actions lead to the apocalyptic future that the older versions of Magneto and Charles inhabit. However, he is stopped in his tracks. Meanwhile, during Wolverine's confrontation with William Stryker, his future self reacts violently, injuring Shadowcat. In response, older Magneto uses his powers to restrain him and prevent any further harm. Much later in the dystopian future, older Magneto prepares to defend their hideout against the approaching Sentinels. Rising into the air, he lifts the X-Jet and launches it at the Sentinel carriers, using his powers to activate the jet's power core. Storm then strikes the jet with lightning, causing a massive explosion that destroys many of the attacking Sentinels, but also sends debris flying in all directions. While Magneto manages to halt the metal fragments mid-air, he is pierced by a stray piece from a Sentinel. The remaining Sentinels then turn their attention to the group, systematically eliminating the mutants. With his last bit of strength, Magneto gathers the metal fragments to barricade the entrance of a monastery. Blink opens a portal into the building, allowing Magneto to retreat inside. In the rogue cut, it's Kitty that helps him through the wall. The others are shocked to see him injured, and Eric expresses regret to Charles for all the wasted years spent in conflict. Charles forgives him and takes his hand. He's last seen as the Sentinels break into the monastery, watching them advance towards Charles. Just before Eric can be killed, the future is wiped from existence. There's a certain appeal to someone who can shapeshift into anyone they like. It's like a mysterious charm, a special something, a je ne sais quoi. There's gotta be a word for this. Ah, yes, a mystique. Today, we're going to delve deep into the lore of movie Mystique. Try not to get tricked. Welcome, true believers, to Stan Lee Presents, your go-to for epic comic character history. Want more stories of your favorite heroes and villains? Like, subscribe, and join us for weekly lessons on the legends of Marvel. Early life. Very little is known about Raven's life before she broke into Xavier's mansion. However, from what she shares in X-Men and X-Men The Last Stand, her early years were quite tragic. As a child, her mutation was so unusual that she was afraid to attend school. Moreover, her parents, also scared of her abilities, once attempted to kill her. After enduring years of abuse, Raven ultimately decided to run away. X-Men First Class. One night in 1944, at a mansion in Westchester County, New York, Raven Darkholme first encountered Charles Xavier when he caught her rummaging through the kitchen cupboards in search of food. Disguised as his mother, she was confronted by young Charles, who accused her of being an imposter and demanded to know what she had done with his real mother. He demonstrated his telepathic abilities, pointing out that his mother wouldn't make him hot chocolate, insisting that the maid handled it instead. At that moment, Mystique transformed back into her true blue-skinned form, and the two mutants introduced themselves. Delighted to meet someone else who was different, Charles invited Raven to stay with him and his family, assuring her she would never go hungry again. This marked the beginning of their friendship, and they became like adoptive siblings. 18 years later, in 1962, Charles Xavier, now an Oxford University graduate, is publishing his thesis on mutation, while Raven, his foster sister and a waitress, lives with him. One evening at a restaurant, Charles meets and flirts with a woman named Amy, referring to her heterochromia as a mutation. Offended, Amy challenges him until Charles elaborates that mutation has played a key role in evolution, transforming single-celled organisms into the dominant life forms on Earth. She then proudly declares herself mutant and proud. Observing from a nearby table, Raven interjects, asking if she needs to buy her own drink. Charles introduces the two women, but frustrated with his antics, Raven pretends to have heterochromia by using her shape-shifting powers. After they leave, Raven expresses her anger at her brother for jeopardizing his chances with Amy, later echoing Amy's statement. Raven continues to live with Charles after his graduation from Oxford. That night, Moira McTaggart seeks Charles's counsel on mutation and takes both him and Raven to the CIA, aiming to convince the chief that Shaw poses a threat. Together, Raven and Charles showcase their abilities to a group of CIA agents, including the Man in Black and Moira, to prove the existence of mutants. Raven demonstrates her shape-shifting skills, ultimately persuading the government of their reality. After this, they're sent to be taken to a covert facility, but first, Xavier decides to track down Shaw. During a failed attempt to capture Sebastian Shaw, Raven and Xavier encountered Eric Lensher. Lensher joined them at the CIA facility, where they also met Hank McCoy, another mutant whom Xavier accidentally revealed. Hank was instantly smitten with Raven, and a mutual attraction developed between them. He disclosed that he'd been working on a serum aimed at curing his physical mutation while preserving his abilities. Hank believed that Raven's power to change her appearance could be crucial in perfecting the serum. He requested a sample of her blood, and during this exchange, they expressed their shared desire to appear normal, culminating in a kiss. Soon after, Xavier and Lensher set out to find more mutants, who were later sent to Division X. Among them were Angel Salvador, Sean Cassidy, Alex Summers, Armando Munoz, and Hank McCoy, forming the original X-Men team. Their facility was attacked by Azazel, Riptide, and Shaw, resulting in the deaths of all the guards. Shaw successfully recruited Angel, while Darwin pretended to join him. As Havoc attempted to attack Shaw, everyone took cover, but Shaw absorbed Havoc's energy blast and killed Darwin by forcing him to consume a massive amount of energy. When Lensher and Xavier returned, they began training the mutants, but Raven felt conflicted about hiding her true appearance. Eric's consistent affirmation of her inherent beauty changed her perspective, and when Hank completed the serum, she decided against taking it. Hank then injected himself, leading to a drastic transformation that gave him a more bestial look. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, Hank arrived before their departure to explain that the serum had had the opposite effect he intended, enhancing rather than diminishing his mutation. Initially embarrassed, Raven reassured Hank that it was all right. He was now his authentic self and had nothing to be ashamed of. Hank nodded in agreement, just as Eric remarked that Hank had never looked better. Hank misinterpreted this as an insult and nearly choked Eric in anger, but Charles intervened, urging him to let go, which he did. Eric clarified that he was not mocking Hank. Meanwhile, Havoc suggested a new name for Hank, Beast. The X-Men then departed in the Blackbird, designed by Beast, with him piloting and McTaggart as his co-pilot. The X-Men arrive at the battle site, but after a crash landing caused by Riptide, the team quickly takes their positions. Havoc defeats Riptide while Magneto searches for Shaw, and Beast engages Azazel. Charles instructs Mystique to remain in the ship to guard the entrance, which she reluctantly agrees to do. During the confrontation with the enemy mutants, after a fierce struggle between Beast and Azazel, Mystique, disguised as Shaw, commands Azazel to stand down. This distraction allows Beast to finally subdue Azazel with Mystique's assistance. The team plays a crucial role in stopping the Cuban Missile Crisis and thwarting the Hellfire Club's plans for world domination. However, they eventually part ways when Lensher declares that humans will never accept mutants and decides to take control rather than wait for their inevitable persecution and execution. After McTaggart's bullets struck Charles in the spine, Mystique rushed to his side, exchanging farewells and asking McTaggart to look after him. Raven, having become a sort of protege to Magneto, chose to join him and played a key role in establishing the Brotherhood of Mutants with his new team from the Hellfire Club. As the remaining mutants set off to join Lensher, who now called himself Magneto, Raven urged a sorrowful Hank to take pride in his identity as a mutant before she was teleported away. She later assisted in rescuing Emma Frost alongside Magneto, Angel, Azazel, and Riptide. Original timeline: X-Men: Days of Future Past. In 1973, following Magneto's imprisonment at the hands of the Pentagon after the murder of John F. Kennedy, Mystique was left on her own to carry out his agenda. She traveled to Saigon, Vietnam, disguised as a general, and ordered her way into a bunker where Havoc, Mortimer Toynbee, Eric Gitter, Daniels, and other mutant GIs were being quarantined under Major William Stryker's supervision. When Stryker and his men arrived to transport them to Trask Industries for testing, the general revealed her true identity as Mystique and launched an attack. The mutant soldiers joined in to help subdue Stryker's men. Afterward, Mystique, still in her general disguise, arranged for the mutants to board a plane to return safely to America. When Havoc asked if she would be joining them, she responded that she needed to fight a bigger battle. Later, Mystique disguised herself as Bolivar Trask and infiltrated Trask Industries, successfully breaking into his office. There, she discovered autopsy files that detailed his experiments and murders of mutants, including Azazel, Angel, and several unidentified subjects, which deeply upset her and fueled her desire for revenge. The night before the summit, Mystique traveled to Paris, posing as a North Vietnamese general with the intent to intercept a meeting with Trask at the Paris Peace Conference and eliminate him. The following morning, Bolivar Trask, joined by Stryker, prepared to present the X-gene detector to Vietnamese officials. The device triggered a strong response from one of the generals, revealing him to be Mystique in disguise. She then reverted to her true form and incapacitated everyone except Trask. At the Paris Peace Conference, Mystique unveiled her true identity, taking down the guards and shooting Trask. However, William Stryker quickly overpowered her, using a taser to subdue her before taking her in for experimentation. She endured numerous torturous experiments during this time. The murder sparked global fear of mutants, leading governments to launch the Sentinel program. Eventually, Mystique's DNA was replicated and integrated into the latest Sentinels, allowing them to adapt and counter mutant abilities. Following Trask's death, he became a martyr for the anti-mutant cause. This tragic event transformed Raven completely, driving her down an irreversible path from victim to aggressor in the fight for mutant rights. X-Men. Years later, Raven, now known as Mystique, disguised herself as Harry Girich, an aide to Senator Kelly, as a part of a scheme to kidnap Kelly and transform him into a mutant, aiming to end his support for the Mutant Registration Act. One day, an anti-mutant crowd cheered for Senator Kelly as he exited his limousine and boarded a helicopter. Inside, he discussed the upcoming vote on the Mutant Registration Act with Girich, who inquired whether Kelly would address the UN summit, where the entire world would be watching. Kelly expressed that he was only concerned about America and would prefer to lock all mutants away, declaring it a war and asserting that people like him were necessary. As he looked out the window, puzzled about their location, Girich suddenly transformed into her true form, a blue-skinned woman, revealing herself as Mystique, one of Magneto's allies. Terrified, Kelly shouted for the pilot, but Mystique subdued him, telling him that people like him were the reason she had feared going to school as a child. After knocking him out with a kick, she took a seat beside the pilot, who was revealed to be Toad, and they flew off to Magneto's island base. Inside Magneto's base, Kelly is strapped to a metal chair while Mystique, Sabretooth, and Toad loom in the shadows around him, barely moving. Suddenly, a bird flies by, and Toad swiftly shoots out his long tongue to catch it, much to Kelly's disgust. Magneto then enters, joking to the senator that Toad has a wicked tongue, just like his own. When Kelly asks who they are and where Henry is, Magneto replies that Mr. Girich has been dead for some time, and that Mystique has been impersonating him in the meantime. Kelly warns them that if they harm him, they'll only validate his beliefs, but Magneto appears unfazed. Mystique watches as Magneto activates his machine on the Senator. Meanwhile, Professor X delves into Kelly's mind, accessing his memory of Magneto transforming him into a mutant and Mystique assisting him out of the machine. Magneto, visibly tired and weakened from the process, observes the scene. One morning in Xavier's schoolyard, Rogue sits on a bench watching the others play. Iceman approaches and sits beside her, expressing anger over her altercation with Wolverine. He tells her that mutants should never use their powers against each other. Rogue tries to defend her actions, insisting she had no choice, but he harshly advises her that if he were in her position, he'd leave. Confused, she asks what he means, and he explains that the students are unsettled and Professor Xavier is furious. Callously, he tells her that she should just go, prompting her to stand up and walk away, nearly in tears. As she leaves, Bobby smirks and his eyes briefly glow yellow, revealing that it was actually Mystique manipulating the situation to make Rogue feel unwelcome after the previous night's incident. Meanwhile, the real Bobby walks through the mansion with his friends. When one of them asks when he last saw Rogue, Bobby replies that she was supposed to meet him for lunch. As they continue on, an elevator opens, revealing the fake Bobby with a sinister smile. Mystique, disguised as Bobby, moves into the sub-basement area of the mansion and kneels in front of Cerebro's door, altering her eyes to resemble Xavier's. The computer recognizes her as Professor X, granting her access. Once inside, she morphs back to her true form, Mystique, and inserts a device into Cerebro. A tank of blue liquid shifts ominously to green. When Professor X attempts to use Cerebro again, the green liquid knocks him unconscious, causing him to faint and tumble from his wheelchair. As a boat nears Liberty Island and the Statue of Liberty, Mystique walks into a room where Magneto and Rogue are present. Magneto admires the statue's grandeur, while Rogue mentions that she has seen it before. He recalls first seeing it in 1949 and mockingly quotes the idea that America was meant to be a land of tolerance and peace. Rogue then asks if he intends to kill her, to which he simply responds, yes. When she presses for a reason, he explains that there is no tolerance or peace, neither there or anywhere else. He plans to transform world leaders into mutants like them, compelling them to advocate for mutant kind. He claims that Rogue's sacrifice will guarantee the survival of the mutant race and instructs Mystique to put her in the machine so he can display her atop the statue. The X-Men arrive at Liberty Island and cautiously make their way through the hall, unaware that Toad and Mystique are already lying in wait. Logan senses something amiss and alerts the others, noting that someone is nearby but he can't pinpoint their location. He jokes, "Keep your eye open," poking fun at Cyclops. Suddenly, another Wolverine appears and engages Logan in battle, leaving the team confused about who is real and who is Mystique. Both Wolverines unsheath their claws and begin slashing at everything around them, while Toad leaps onto the other X-Men, knocking them to the ground. Mystique engages in an extended fight with Wolverine, shifting back to her true form and skillfully evading his attacks with her agility. However, she isn't done with him yet. She attempts to distract Wolverine by disguising herself as Storm. Approaching him, she asks if it's really him, but he quickly silences her, using his senses to indicate that the real Storm isn't far away. Mystique suggests that they regroup, but Wolverine retorts that there's a problem. She isn't a part of their team. He then unsheaths his claws and drives them into her stomach. As she morphs back into Mystique and collapses, Wolverine sees through her deception, having recognized that she couldn't mask her scent. Magneto tries to reach out to Mystique, but she doesn't respond. Despite this, she survives and transforms into the appearance of a fallen police officer, allowing her to slip past the police as they swarm the building. At the end of the film, she appears on television impersonating Senator Kelly in an effort to withdraw his support for the Mutant Registration Act. Cyclops pauses the screen at a critical moment, revealing his glowing yellow eyes, indicating that it is indeed Mystique. X2, X-Men United. Mystique has been using her powers to impersonate Senator Robert Kelly in an attempt to gain access to Magneto's plastic prison, but hasn't had any luck. To gather more information, she infiltrates Colonel William Stryker's office by posing as his aide, Lady Deathstrike, allowing her to learn about the prison and the plans for a new Cerebro, dubbed Dark Cerebro. She eventually manages to seduce one of the prison's security guards. She drugs him and injects him with the substance. Later, when the guard arrives at the prison, Magneto extracts what Mystique injected. She had given him enough liquid iron for Magneto to manipulate. With this, he creates small metal spheres, which he uses to destroy this prison and make his escape. After aiding his escape from prison, she becomes part of his brief alliance with the X-Men. Before this, Nightcrawler approaches her and asks why she doesn't use her shape-shifting abilities to fit in with normal people. She responds, "Because we shouldn't have to." While camping in an unfamiliar forest, she learns that Jean has chosen Scott over Logan and decides to tease Wolverine by disguising herself as Jean Grey. She kisses him several times and leans him back onto the ground, but the scar from their previous battle ultimately gives her away. Following that, she shifts into various forms, including Storm and Rogue, before transforming into Stryker and asking Wolverine what he truly wants. However, Wolverine tells her to leave the tent, not wanting to be disturbed. Magneto, Mystique, and the remaining X-Men launch their assault on the facility, with Mystique disguising herself as Wolverine to gain entry to Alkali Lake. Stryker orders his guards to let Wolverine in, thinking his experiment has finally returned. Although Mystique's disguise initially deceives Stryker, he somehow sees through it. She swiftly incapacitates the soldiers, gains access, and takes control of the control room, opening the main gates to allow the X-Men entry into the Alkali Lake facility. Once inside, she assists in rescuing several captured mutants and leads the group to Dark Cerebro. Together, Magneto and Mystique eliminate Stryker's remaining men, while Magneto intervenes to stop Jason and Xavier from using Cerebro to kill any mutants. Disguised as Stryker, Mystique manipulates Jason into convincing Xavier to eliminate all humans, but this plan is ultimately thwarted. Mystique and Magneto escape Alkali Lake in Stryker's helicopter, chaining Stryker to some concrete rubble before taking off. As they lift off, Raven spots Pyro and allows him to board the helicopter and escape with them. X-Men: The Last Stand. Sometime after the events at Alkali Lake, Mystique is captured by the newly established Department of Mutant Affairs. During a meeting, the president hands Beast some documents and informs him that Homeland Security has been tracking Magneto. Secretary Bolivar Trask adds that they had leads in several cities but lost him. However, they captured a consolation prize, Mystique. He reveals that they apprehended her while she was attempting to break into the FDA of all places. He activates a screen showing two interrogators questioning her. The president notes that she was impersonating Secretary Trask, to which Hank replies that she had that capability. Trask asserts that not anymore, as they have her in custody. McCoy expresses doubt about their ability to hold her, but Trask insists they will keep her on the move. On the screen, the interrogator asks Raven a question, but she responds that she doesn't recognize that name. He insists that her true identity is Raven Darkholm, or has Magneto made her believe she no longer has a family? Mystique replies that her family attempted to kill her, and he concedes to call her Mystique and then asks where Magneto is. Instead of answering, Mystique transforms into Magneto and says, "In here with us." Irritated, the interrogator states that he doesn't want to engage in games, but Mystique morphs into his likeness once again. Now angry, he commands her to stop and demands that she reveal Magneto's location. In a swift move, Mystique headbutts her opponent, throws her chair at another adversary, and leaps onto the table to kick both of them. She then lands behind the first man, pulling her handcuffs against his neck to restrain him. Meanwhile, the other man manages to recover and launches a counterattack. Later on, a convoy travels down a road, transporting a large truck. Inside, a man resembling the president is chained behind bars, insisting he be released. Ignoring him, a guard tells him to be quiet. Suddenly, the president transforms into a frightened young girl, pleading to know why they're holding her and begging for freedom. The guard warns that if she doesn't stop, he'll spray her in the face. The girl threatens that once she's free, she'll take her revenge, making him laugh, until she shifts back to her true form as Mystique. As the convoy transporting the truck with Mystique continues down the road, Magneto and his Brotherhood of Mutants arrive on the scene. Using his powers, Magneto immobilizes the convoy and surrounding vehicles, leaving only the truck holding Mystique intact. Inside, the guard who had threatened her earlier falls and crashes against the bars confining her. As he struggles to get up, Mystique thrusts her legs between the bars, slamming his head against them and twisting his neck, seemingly killing him. With remarkable flexibility, she then uses her toes to retrieve his keys, freeing her arms. When Magneto and Pyro enter the convoy, Mystique has already fully escaped her cell. She tells Magneto it's about time they rescued her, to which he replies that he's been busy, and inquires if she found what she needed. She reveals that the source of the cure is a mutant, a child held at Worthington Labs in Alcatraz, stating that without him that they have nothing. Magneto then uses his powers to levitate a list from the floor into Pyro's hands, commanding his young follower to read the guest list. Pyro reads from the list. Cell 41205, James Madrox. Mystique explains that Jamie pulled off 7 bank robberies. Magneto blasts open Madrox's cell, only to be surprised by not 1, but 6 identical Jamies stepping out. Mystique finishes her thought, noting that Mystique warns them to proceed with caution as Pyro continues reading. Kane Marco, solitary confinement. Prisoner must be restrained at all times. If he gains any momentum, no object can stop him. Intrigued, Magneto tears the cell door open to find Kane confined in every possible way. He asks what Kane goes by, and Kane replies, Juggernaut. Juggernaut demands to be released, and Magneto removes all of Kane's restraints. Juggernaut then leaps out of his cell. The guard, seemingly not dead, regains consciousness just in time to hear Juggernaut discussing his helmet. As Magneto declares that Juggernaut will be a valuable addition to his army, the guard readies a gun with a mutant cured dart, aiming it at Eric's back. Mystique spots the threat and steps in front of Magneto, and the dart strikes her in the chest, causing her to collapse to the floor. Magneto uses his powers to pull the gun away, while Pyro hurls a massive flamethrower at the guard, finally ending his life. They then turn their attention back to Mystique, who is trembling on the floor. Gradually, her back and shoulders take on a normal human skin tone, followed by her face, and finally her fingers lose their blue hue and become human. Mystique has vanished, leaving only Raven Darkholm. Magneto sighs heavily, disheartened as he watches his once loyal and skilled ally convulsing on the floor, naked and human, covering her chest with one hand while staring in disbelief at the other. "You saved me," she whispers as she looks up at him, but he turns away and starts to leave. She calls out his name, prompting him to pause and apologize, explaining that she is no longer one of them. As the mutants exit the truck, leaving behind the betrayed Raven, Magneto tells Pyro it's a pity. She truly was beautiful. Bitter from her betrayal, Mystique goes to the government and reveals the location of Magneto's base. One night at the White House, the President and Trask prepare to watch Magneto's capture via satellite feed from the forest where his camp is located. The screen displays a view of the camp, showing numerous white dots that represent every life form, indicating the presence of mutants. Confused, the President asks Trask how they discovered the base, to which Trask replies that Raven Darkholm provided them with all the information they needed. "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned," the President comments. However, when they raid the camp, they find it entirely filled with duplicates of multiple men. It's likely that the cure wore off and Mystique's powers returned, similar to how it suggested that Magneto regained his abilities at the film's conclusion, hinted at when he seemed to move a metallic chess piece without touching it, and later confirmed when he fully regained his powers. Revised timeline. X-Men: Days of Future Past. After Mystique reveals her true identity and dispatches the guards, she picks up a gun and was about to shoot when Logan, Charles, Eric, and Hank interrupt as they've arrived to stop her. This gives Stryker the opportunity to tase Mystique. Magneto, however, redirects the taser gun pins onto Stryker. Magneto understands that Mystique could be a danger to all mutants, and he tries to kill her with the gun as he's convinced her death will safeguard the future of mutant kind. Mystique urges Charles to stop Eric, but Eric explains that Charles is unable to use his powers due to the serum Hank created for him. Although Eric attempts to kill Mystique, she escapes by jumping out the window, and Eric manages to bend the bullet, hitting her in the leg. A fight ensues on the street outside, and eventually Beast joins in. However, when the police arrive, they're forced to flee. Mystique goes to a hospital in Paris for surgery and leaves even more determined to kill Trask. While Magneto's searching for his helmet, he encounters Mystique, who is furious with him for attempting to kill her and threatens him with a knife. Despite Eric's attempts to explain that he and Charles received a message from the future regarding the Sentinels using her DNA, she doesn't believe him and walks away. Mystique then travels to Washington, D.C., where Trask and Nixon plan to unveil the Sentinels as the solution to the perceived threat from mutants. Xavier uses Cerebro to track her movements and aims to intercept her. He finds her at an airport and tries to communicate through the people around her, but she refuses to listen. During the Sentinels' unveiling, Mystique, disguised as a Secret Service agent, attempts to shoot Trask, but is stopped by Charles, who mentally intervenes. In the aftermath of Magneto's actions, Mystique successfully infiltrates the President's bunker beneath the White House. Trask's mutant detector activates, exposing Mystique, who assaults Stryker and grabs his plastic gun. Meanwhile, Magneto tears the bunker apart and directs the cameras toward himself, drawing the attention of onlookers, including Ink, Toad, and Quicksilver. He then takes their guns and aims them at the men inside. Nixon steps forward, urging Magneto to spare everyone else and to take his life instead. Magneto, however, disagrees, as the Sentinels were designed to kill all mutants, sparing no mutant. The President then transforms into Mystique, showing the real President behind her. She pulls a plastic gun and shoots Magneto in the side of the neck, not to kill him, but to stun and graze him before proceeding to knock him out. Mystique then aims the gun at Trask, but just as she's about to pull the trigger, Charles reaches out to her telepathically, urging her to reconsider. He tells her that by sparing Trask, she can give humanity a chance to properly understand mutants. Pleading with her to make the right choice, he ultimately leaves the decision in her hands. Realizing the gravity of her actions, Mystique opts not to kill Trask and drops the weapon, leading to the erasure of the dystopian future. In the ensuing shock, she kicks off Magneto's helmet, allowing Charles to gain control over him. Using Magneto's powers, he removes the surrounding metal debris and sends Magneto away, bidding farewell to both Mystique and Magneto, proving that a mutant saved the President. Her actions alter the future, resulting in the cancellation of the Sentinel program and Trask being handed over to authorities for selling military secrets. Later, she's seen rescuing Wolverine from the Potomac River while disguised as William Stryker. Mystique then rises to fame as a celebrated hero and icon for many, especially young mutants. She becomes a symbol of peace between humans and mutants, shifting the narrative away from being the catalyst for the war that nearly led to the extinction of all mutants. X-Men Apocalypse. 10 years later, in 1983, Raven is still fighting for mutant rights, rescuing young mutants. In Berlin, she saves a young Kurt Wagner known as Nightcrawler from a fight club where he's forced to battle the champion, Angel. After freeing Kurt, Raven takes in a mutant tracker and broker Caliban to secure a new ID for him. Caliban informs her that Eric has recently lost his family and appears to be on a rampage. The following day, Raven and Kurt arrive at the X-Mansion, where she reunites with Hank. He shows her the Blackbird and shares his plans to reform the X-Men, but Raven reveals that she's there to discuss discuss Eric, much to Hank's disappointment. Later, Charles returns to the mansion with Moira, who doesn't remember Raven due to Charles erasing her memories. In a private conversation, they talk about the treatment of mutants. While Charles insists that the world has improved, Raven argues that mutants are still feared and persecuted. While she expresses more militant views, Charles points out that her rhetoric resembles Eric's. This prompts Raven to reveal Eric's resurfacing and the loss of his wife and child, asking Charles for help in locating him so they can assist. Using Cerebro, Charles locates Eric, but soon Apocalypse takes control of him, leveraging Charles's powers amplified by Cerebro to disarm the world's nuclear arsenal. In a desperate bid to stop Apocalypse, Charles orders Alex to destroy Cerebro, which knocks him out in the process. As Raven, Moira, Hank, and Alex carry the unconscious Charles out of the room, Apocalypse and his 4 horsemen, including Eric, kidnap Xavier. Alex tries to intervene by firing an energy blast, but he misses and accidentally hits the Blackbird's engine, causing a devastating explosion. While Alex is killed instantly, Raven and the others are rescued by Quicksilver, who helps them and the other students reach safety. However, they're soon captured by William Stryker and imprisoned at Alkali Lake. While in captivity, Peter reveals to Raven that Magneto is his father. During an interrogation by Stryker, a psychic message from Xavier reaches everyone on Earth. Suddenly, Wolverine, who has escaped thanks to Scott, Jean, and Kurt, begins to wreak havoc in the facility, forcing Stryker to flee. Scott blasts a hole in their cell, allowing the group to steal a jet and head to Cairo to confront Apocalypse and rescue Charles. On the way, a nervous Jean asks Raven if she felt scared back in 1973 when she confronted Eric. Mystique responds that she wasn't, but then starts recounting her fear during her first mission in 1962, when the X-Men were formed. Upon arriving in Cairo, Mystique instructs the others to rescue Charles while she and Quicksilver go to stop Magneto from manipulating the Earth's magnetic poles and potentially causing mass casualties. Before they part ways, Scott warns Raven that not everyone can control their powers. In response, Raven encourages them to embrace their abilities, and for the first time in a decade, she willingly sheds her human form. Accompanied by Quicksilver, Mystique reaches Eric's location and reminds him that he still has a family before they set off to assist the others. Quicksilver confronts Apocalypse but is quickly overpowered, suffering a broken leg. Mystique then takes on the guise of Psylocke in an attempt to stop Apocalypse, but is unsuccessful. Meanwhile, Charles penetrates Apocalypse's mind, which causes him to release Mystique. Cyclops and Beast then manage to get everyone to safety, aided by the combined powers of Jean, Eric, who heeded Raven's advice, and Storm, who admired Raven. After their victory over Apocalypse, Mystique is appointed as the field commander of the X-Men. She begins training the new recruits, Quicksilver, Cyclops, Storm, Nightcrawler, and Jean, alongside Beast in the Danger Room, all while Charles observes. X-Men: Dark Phoenix. 9 years later, in 1992, Professor X serves as an advisor to the President of the United States, with the X-Men celebrated as global heroes. Raven continues to lead the X-Men in the field. While watching the space shuttle Endeavour face difficulties in orbit, Xavier receives a call from the President requesting his assistance for the astronauts. He quickly sends Beast, Mystique, Quicksilver, Storm, Nightcrawler, Jean Grey, and Cyclops into space aboard the X-Jet, while he connects with NASA scientists through Cerebro. After successfully rescuing the astronauts and returning them to Earth, Mystique confronts Xavier, frustrated that he sent them on such a perilous mission, arguing that they shouldn't risk mutant lives for human lives just to gain favorable publicity. Xavier counters, insisting that the mission is essential for maintaining positive public perception of mutants, contrasting their previous vilification. Mystique then seeks out Hank to express her concerns, urging him to leave as she believes Xavier's lost his way, but Hank refuses to abandon his friend. Shortly afterward, they notice that Jean is distressed, resulting in a psychic attack on the X-Mansion. Mystique becomes enraged when she discovers that Xavier altered Jean's mind during her childhood. After Jean departs from the X-Mansion in search of her father, Mystique joins the X-Men on their mission to Red Hook. When Jean becomes aggressive, Storm and Beast try to subdue her, but Cyclops intervenes and knocks Storm away, while Professor X immobilizes Beast mentally. Quicksilver is quickly neutralized by Jean as well. Rather than fighting Jean, Mystique chooses to approach her in an attempt to calm her down. However, when Jean warns Mystique to stay away, she accidentally unleashes a psychic wave that sends Mystique crashing into nearby damaged buildings, impaling her on wooden debris. Beast rushes to her side as she lies dying, and Mystique manages to whisper that she loves him, but he doesn't hear her. She tries to repeat it, but tragically succumbs to her injuries before she can finish. At the X-Mansion, Xavier delivers a eulogy as they bury Mystique. Afterward, Beast informs Magneto of Mystique's death at Jean's hands, and together they plot to assassinate her. Following Jean's apparent demise, Beast takes over as headmaster of the school and keeps a picture of Mystique on his desk as a tribute.